This podcast is a proud member of Pod Nation Media Network.
Flicker of reels, the shadows crawl. Curtains rise, a ghostly sprawl. The frames are whispers, the stories call. The tractors hum in a hollow tune. Moonlight cuts through velvet gloom. Is it a dream or a real too soon? Step into the screen where the dark turns keen. Journey with the cinephile, unseen, unseen. The tales twist and turn as the silent light burns. A world unknown where the shadows yearn.
Hello and welcome, listeners, to Journey with a Cinephile, a horror movie podcast, where we take a deep dive into the world of horror cinema, from the eerie classics to the latest spine-chilling releases. Join me as I explore the history, themes, and artistry of horror one film at a time. Whether you're a seasoned horror fan or just stepping into the shadows, this journey is for you. So dim the lights, embrace the fear, and let's talk horror. And let's do that here on episode 322. I am your tour guide of David Garrett Jr., recording out of Columbus, Ohio. So for this episode here, this is going to be my top 100 horror films from 2025. Now, I'm also going to be doing my bottom 10. I'm going to do some stats and everything like that. And then there's actually everything that is between the bottom 10 and the top 100 is going to be just my honorable mentions. I'll include all of those in there as well. But then for mini reviews here, I have quite a few because of just the nature of this episode. So some of the rewatches that I did, well, one of the rewatches is going to be VHS Halloween. And then I got to check out Cannibal Mukbang. That is going to be one of the last ones I got to watch. But I also did a rewatch of Keeper. And then also the last one technically was KPop Demon Hunters for 2025. And then starting off this new year, the randomizer selected Run, Hide, Fight. I checked that out. And then I also gave a rewatch for my Scouring Through the Sixes. That's the new one that I'm doing here with 1936 or 26, all that stuff. Yeah. But then I also have the final episode of Welcome to Derry. Welcome to Derry. And then I also had the last episode of Stranger Things, 5, Chapter 8. The right side up, the whole thing to end that series. But then before I get actually over to doing all my mini reviews and everything, I do have to do my
monthly review.
And let's go ahead and do my monthly review for December 2025. I'll also do kind of a little bit of like a yearly recap and everything like that as well. But for the month of December, I did 45 films total. And that actually is tied as the most I've ever done with last year. And then in 2018, I also did that. And then I also have 28 horror films. This one's going to kind of be a little bit on the lower end because I had like 38 last year, 30 before that, 33. And then 37 back in 2018. So kind of fell a little bit short there. I did some more stuff with the family and everything, but then my 11 new horror releases for the year, for that year, I did 11. So that one is kind of on the lower end. 9 was the lowest I've ever done. I've always done double digits outside of that one time. This one's, like I said, kind of hovering there at the end. And then for the horror movies I watched in the month of December, I watched Match, Howling New Moon Rising, Dangerous Animals, Strange Harvest, Night of the Reaper, The Chill Factor, The Fear, Him, Evidence of the Boogeyman, Sinners, Better Watch Out, Silent Night, Deadly Night, that is the one from here in 2025, Hosts from 2020, The Day of the Beast, Weapons, The Parenting, Yoga Hosers, Good Boy, The Carpenter's Son, Bloody New Year, Piranha 1995, Black Phone 2, Marshmallow, For God's Sake, Wake Her Up, VHS Halloween, Cannibal Mukbang, Keeper, and then the last one was K-Pop Demon Hunters. That one was stretching a little bit there. But so I had 8 countries represented. I had United States, South Africa, United Kingdom, Australia, Canada, Spain, Italy, France, and Japan. So then the oldest watch that I did actually is going to be, this is one of the ones that I didn't expect it to be this kind of modern for me, is that it was 1998 was the oldest film that I watched. 1987, sorry, my year of my birth, Bloody New Year. So the average year was 2013, and this actually is by far, well, not by far, this is the newest I've ever done. 2023, I did 2012, and then 2019, I did 2011. The oldest would have been last year at 1999. So then my highest rated is going to be Sinners at a 10 out of 10. My lowest rated is Halloween New Moon Rising at a 2.5. My average rating was a 6.6. This by far is the lowest I've ever done. The lowest prior to this would have been last year at a 7.2. And then the highest I've ever done was 2022 where I did a 7.8. So kind of crazy there. And then actually I didn't do my December numbers across the board here. I've watched 325 movies in the months of December. 252 of those are horror movies. 106 of those are new films. Then my average rating right now, I'm bringing it down. It was a 7.4. The average year is a 2007, so I'm actually bringing that up. And then my percentage of horror, this is the lowest that I've ever done in a December at 62.22%. The highest would have been in 2019 where I did 93.1%. And my other lowest was 2022 where I did 62.79%. But in the months of December, I watched 78.42% of horror. So then I didn't do any other things for any other podcasts. I've been just so busy. But 2025 watches, my goal is 100. If you kind of break it down just by months and everything, I should have been at 99.6. I was at 130, so crush that record. And then for horror movies, I should be, if I want to do 365, when I do the kind of math that I was using here, it's 364.8. I was at 389, so I got to, I watch at least one horror movie every day for the year. You know, I kind of works out how everything does there. So then my goal of 500, I came short of this one. My numbers give me 500.4 is what I should be at. I end up doing 479, so we'll kind of curious to see now that my children are getting a little bit older, see how I'll be able to do there for total films. And then the average year is for this year, like I said, was 2002. Well, sorry, I did not say that. 2002 is what it was across the board. And then 1999 is my normal thing, so I'm actually slightly trying to bring that up. And then the average rating, I had a 7 for this year. This is actually my lowest I've ever done. It's kind of been trending that way, but 7.3 is my average rating across everything that I watch. Percentage of horror, I'm actually bringing it up. For the year, I had 81.21%, and then 80.24% of everything that I watch falls in like that. So I don't know if there's anything. Let me just make sure that I'm doing everything here. So let's start doing some stats. First, let's do my 2025. So according to this, if you include short films and everything, I had 494, and then I did 496 reviews somehow. But I'm assuming that's probably from something from, years. I created 116 lists, but that was because I was going through and doing a little project there. I had 1,210 likes according to Letterboxd. I had 22 comments, and I watched 760.2 hours worth of films alone. And then kind of just running through here for some of the things that I had. I logged 494, which comes out to be 41.2 per month and 9.5 per week. And kind of scrolling down, let me go jump to my top genre that's not horror is going to be thriller at 140. Outside of the United States, UK was my second highest at 61 films, and Italian, Japanese are my two most watched languages outside of English. And then running away with it, horror, the undead, and monster classics was my top theme. And then nano genres, animation, adorable animals at 27 films. So I'm going to have to blame my family for that one, and I love them dearly. And then let's go ahead and do my most seen actors. Johnny Depp ran away with it thanks to our other podcast with Jamie. We had 26 films for him. Bela Lugosi was at 9 films for second. Helena Bonham Carter is coming in at third with 7 films, and then tied for fourth is going to be Boris Karloff and Christopher Lee at 6 films. And then we had a tie at sixth with Alfred Molina and Paul Whitehouse with 5 films. Then Jeffrey Rush is tied with Timothy Spall at 8th for 4 films. And then tied at 10th is going to be John Carradine, Lynn Acton McPherson, Libby Higgins, Justina Armstead, Madison Pullins, Haley Steinfeld, Philip Fillmore, Bill Nighy, Valerie Hobson, Tony Todd, Jason Brooks, Robert Englund, Lily Taylor, Stephen Root, Giovanni Ribisi, Sarah Nicklin, John Steiner, and Monica Evans all had 3 films. And then my most seen directors here, Seth Breedlove. I watched so many of his documentaries. He has 9 films. He is running away with this one. Timothy Burton is going to be second at 5 films. Tied for third is going to be Jeffrey Herberger, Gore Verbinski, and Mario Bava. Then William Butler and Dario Argento are tied at 6th with 3 films. And then tied at 8th with 2 films, Thomas Edward Seymour, Zach Lubopinski, Frank Henenlotter, J.R. Bookwalter, Flying Lotus, Stuart Walker, Kiyoshi Kurosawa, Wes Craven, Stephen Cognetti, Scott Derrickson, Don Siegel, Steve Gonsalves, Kendall Welpton, Osgood Perkins, Lucio Fulci, and Brandon Christensen are going to be the other directors that are kind of bringing up the rear there. So then, according to Letterboxd, my life in film, I've watched 5,168 films according to that. I have 8,740 hours of stuff that you kind of just go across the board there. 3,215 directors I've seen, 76 countries. I have a longest streak here of 388 weeks. That's kind of crazy. And then my 2+ films days, I have 832 of those. And I'm going to kind of scroll down here real quick just to see if there's any other fun little stats that I want to kind of include. For this one, my thriller is still second at 1,794. UK is at 691 films. And then Japanese is my second most seen language at 125. Again, the horror undead monster classics run away with that one, 1,563 films. Eerie, victim, horrific, and gruesome, terrifying, imaginative are the two nano genres that are at 114 films apiece. And then there's some stuff here that I'm not going to include because it's going to be hard to kind of relay that. My most seen actor now is Johnny Depp at 57 films, Samuel L. Jackson behind him at 51, Christopher Lee at 45, Bela Lugosi at 39, and William Dafoe at 35. Top seen director still is going to be Alfred Hitchcock at 49 films, Dario Argento 25 films, Seth Breedlove now at 21 films, Steven Spielberg 20 films, and Lucio Fulci and Wes Craven and John Carpenter all tied at 18 films. And I think that's all I'm going to do then here for all these stats and everything that I'm giving to you. I'm going to go ahead and say thank you so much for listening, and I hope you enjoy coming on this journey with me as we jump into 2026. And in the outro, I will say what that little moniker is going to be going forward.
Hello, I'm Mark, host of the Project Football podcast. If you're into your football, even just a little bit, and don't mind a decent slice of football-related randomness and some new music thrown in on the side, then this may well be the podcast for you. My guests discuss their history with the team they support, pick their best 11 in a trip here through time, and pick out moments in football history they'd like to have experienced from a particular individual's point of view in 4-4-U. As well as that, there's a few other guest segments that deliver on the aforementioned randomness in copious amounts. If this sounds like your sort of thing, check out the podcast on all the usual audio platforms, as well as on Twitter/X at proj_foot, Instagram at Project Football Podcast, and on Facebook, if you just search for Project Football Podcast, you'll find us there. Give it a listen, you might even like it.
And for my first mini review here is going to be one that I've already covered on the episode or on the podcast, and I'll come back to that, but it's going to be VHS Halloween. This is from 2025. Now, this is done by a group of filmmakers here because everybody does shorts in this, and that is going to be our directors are Brian M. Ferguson, Casper Kelly, R.H. Norman, Alex Ross Perry, Michelin Pitt, Paco Plaza, and Anna Slokovic. And then Ferguson, Slokovic, Alberto Marini, Plaza, Kelly, Perry, Pitt, and Norman all did the writing here. Now, the stars, this is going to be just very brief here because I'm only going to give 3 people, but it's going to be David Hayden, Anna McKelvey, and Adam James Johnston. This is a body horror, dark comedy, folk, found footage, monster, psychological, splatter, horror, supernatural, all that good stuff. And this is from the United States. Currently sitting on a 5.7 on IMDb and a 2.9 on Letterboxd, with the synopsis being a collection of Halloween-themed videotapes unleashes a series of twisted, blood-soaked tales, turning trick-or-treat into a struggle for survival. So if you'd like to hear a feature review, it's going to be episode 312, which was my Halloween episode. This was the 2025 film that I did over there. I got to see at the Nightmares Film Festival. Then a mini review here, of course, that you're now listening to on this episode. And what I'm kind of just run through here real quick is that this is a sequel to the long-running found footage anthology series delivering Halloween-themed cinematic experience. Got to see this on the last day of Nightmares Film Festival, is the one that kicked it off. So I'm going to go through the segments here real quick. So our wraparound is Diet Phantasma, a corporation, and we're going to see this experiment being led by Blaine Rothschild, who's portrayed by Hayden, is trying out a diet version of their most popular drink, which is supposedly made with real ghost extract, having dangerous consequences for the test groups. So this one has themes of like corporate greed and hazardous products. Then segment 2 is Coochie Coochie Coo. 2 teens, Lacey, portrayed by Samantha Cochran, and Kaylee by Natalia Montgomery Fernandez, go trick-or-treating for one last hurrah before college and encounter a local legend, which is a entity played by Alina Musser, who has a connection to the disappearance of young people in the area. So this one has themes of like clinging to childhood and motherhood. And then for segment 2 is going to be Ut Supra Sic Infra. This jumps between the past and present, focusing on a group of teens who enter a room where a medium held seances using this like phone. Now the only survivor is Heinrich, portrayed by Teo Planell. Reads a phrase on the wall, causing a black phone to appear. The police later force him to reenact what happened. So this has themes of like seeing things that humans aren't meant to, with like the victim's eyes being removed. Then segment 3 is Fun Size, my favorite of all of them. An older group of trick-or-treaters who are Haley, portrayed by Jenna Hogan, and her boyfriend Josh, portrayed by Riley Nottingham, along with a newly engaged couple of Lauren, portrayed by Lawson Grayson, and Austin by Jake Ellsworth, face severe punishments from Fun Size, portrayed by Michael J. Sliloff, and his sidekick, played by Joey B, after ignoring a sign to take one from a candy bowl. So this has themes of like violating the mortal sin of gluttony and not hiding your feelings. This also is whimsical and mean-spirited with some surreal body horror. Then segment 4 is Kid Print. This is Tim Kaplan, portrayed by Steven Gruwitz, runs a local service called KidPrint that creates up-to-date videos of children in case they go missing during a string of disappearances that has authorities considering canceling Halloween. So this is themes like child safety and suburban paranoia, highlighting like the stranger danger aspect of predator hiding in plain sight type thing there. Then the last one's going to be Home Haunt. This one has Keith, portrayed by Jeff Harms, takes a strange record from an antique shop to set up one last haunted house in the backyard with his son Zach, portrayed by Noah Diamond, who is now older and is mocked in school, which creates the most realistic but potentially lethal iteration yet. So themes here: nostalgia of losing a family activity and fading rituals as like a horror basis. So if this one really kind of solidified itself, I really enjoyed this. This is on the upper end for the franchise for me. I actually gave VHS Halloween an 8 out of 10, and that, like I said, has stayed pat after the second watch that I did here on Shudder. Then up next, I have Cannibal Mukbang from 2023, getting its wide release here in 2025. Written and directed by Amy Kug. This is starring April Consalo, Nate Wise, and Clay Von Karlowitz. This is a comedy horror film that is from the United States and is currently sitting on a 5.8 on IMDb and a 3.1 on Letterboxd, with a synopsis being an exploration of one's relationship with food, sexuality, and revenge. It asks, how far would you go in the name of love? So this is one I learned about through podcasts. I'm not sure if I first heard about it or like which one. I do know that Moods from the 22 Shots of Moods in Horror was a fan. That was enough for it to slide up my list of films to check out for my end-of-year roundup as I finish up my list for 2025. So this does look to have been doing its festival rounds, like I was saying, in 2023 before getting its wide release here this year. So I'm going to start is that this begins like a romantic comedy. It's interesting because it feels like another movie and it would make a great double feature with one that came out a few years ago. I don't want to spoil which one that is, but they're dealing with a very similar premise and reveal. The meeting and development of the relationship between Ash and Mark was fun until it went dark, so I did appreciate that as well, as Ash is being portrayed by Consalo and Mark by Wise. So now that's set up, let's kind of delve, because this is more like a character study. Mark's early life is marked by parental loss and foster care with his brother Maverick, who is portrayed by Von Karlowitz. This has led to some deep-seated feelings of inadequacy. I could connect with certain elements. When this beautiful Ash shows up and gives him attention, he's immediately drawn to her. However, his fear of ruining the relationship causes him to self-sabotage as they grow closer. Now, Wise is good-looking in my opinion, which works in the portrayal of somebody who lacks confidence. So then on the other side, we have Ash. She seems like she wants to spend more time with Mark, and then what we learn about her kind of led to her being to where she is. She's from Louisiana originally. Her life had tragedy of its own, losing somebody close to her. She's also abused by an older man. This led her to the current pursuit that she has. She also has her looks and charisma to her advantage, so I give her credit there. It's interesting that she's into mukbang. It does fit the concept that we get. Consuelo is good here, and using her looks and adding to it just adds enough craziness to the role, so that works as well. I've given more of like an overview, so I'm going to try to avoid spoilers. I do like the idea that they play with here, how ingesting human meat can change you. This causes changes to come over a person. I found this to be interesting. It's also fitting that Mark is into zombie movies, since it isn't that much different from becoming a cannibal. I do love that people watching her videos have no idea. How Ash targets her victims makes sense, especially with the story that frames what she does. It fits for what happens as a climax to bring everything together as well. So then there's some other themes I want to bring up here, would be like subverting the trope of women being the target. You could see that she's, doing, or what she's doing is like eating the patriarchy, especially with the people that she chooses. Roles have been reversed, with Mark being the one with low self-esteem guy as he becomes codependent and obsessed. The mukbang concept brings in the voyeur angle due to watching videos anonymously. There's a dark question about what we consume on a daily basis from food to media. I can also see moral decay, losing oneself, and conflict of loyalty. That will be enough for the story, so shifting then to finish out with the acting performances. I've already said that Consuelo and Wise are good as our leads. Both hold their own with their interactions that carry this. Von Karlowitz is interesting. He is a scumbag in how he views women. He's a good guy towards his brother due to their shared trauma. We also have Randall Bowlin and the rest of the cast kind of round this off for what was needed to push our characters to where they end up. All that's left then be filmmaking aspects. I do think this is well made. The cinematography and framing were good. It does help to hide the seams. The blood and gore that we got was also right up there with that. What is interesting here is it isn't over the top. What we get looks real. real, which adds to the creepiness because it makes what they're doing mundane. Playing with taboo like that was good. This also works well here for the sound design. It's notable what they're eating. There's a gross factor that I appreciate. So in conclusion, this is a well-crafted, effective horror film that blends romantic comedy conventions with dark, thought-provoking themes. Director Amy Kueg succeeds in using the central cannibalistic premise not only for shock value but as a vehicle for exploring character study, trauma, gender roles, and the nature of consumption in the digital age. The strong performances from Consuelo and Wise ground the narrative, while the deliberate filmmaking choices, particularly the sound design and practical gore, enhance the unsettling, mundane reality of the horror. This is a compelling watch that deserves attention, especially for viewers looking for genre-bending films that offer something deeper than simple thrills. So my rating here for Cannibal Mukbang, I gave this a 7.5 out of 10 and would recommend give this one a watch. I saw it on Prime, but I believe it's on like Tubi as well. Then another one I've covered previously is going to be Keeper from 25. This is directed by Osgood Perkins, written by Nick Leopard. This stars Tatiana Maslany, Rossif Sutherland, and Burkett Turton. This is a body horror, folk, monster, psychological, supernatural tragedy, horror film that is, I believe this is a co-production of Canada and the United States. Currently sitting on a 5.5 on IMDb. And a 2.6 on Letterboxd, with a synopsis being: a romantic anniversary trip to a secluded cabin turns sinister when a dark presence reveals itself, forcing a couple to confront the property's haunting past. So this one, if you'd like to hear a featured review, was going to be episode 317. Of course, doing the mini review here. And what I will say is that let's start with some of the plots and themes. The couple. The story centers on Liz, portrayed by Maslany, and Malcolm Westbridge, portrayed by Sutherland. Liz is going on a trip with Malcolm despite her friend's concern that there's still many unknowns in their year-long relationship, such as, does Malcolm want children? So some key events here. They arrive at the cabin where there's a chocolate cake, which Liz dislikes and has been left for them, and Malcolm doesn't remember that she doesn't like chocolate. So their night is interrupted by Malcolm's cousin Darren, portrayed by Turton, and his companion Minka, portrayed by Eden Weiss. Now Malcolm insists to try the cake. Later that night, Liz wakes up and she eats the rest of it. Minka is attacked the next morning by something in the woods when she's trying to leave. Malcolm then leaves, claiming that he must return to the city to care for a patient, and this makes Liz very upset. So we have some things here with like flashbacks and dreams. We have flashes of these women from different eras. Julia, portrayed by Erin Boyes. We have Frances by Gina Vantalaggio. Ada by Claire Friesen, Leslie by Christian Park, and a peasant girl portrayed by Evelyn Burt, which appear in nightmares and grow clearer as the story progresses. Liz's initial fear is that Malcolm is married, but the flashes eventually connect to a deeper story. So we have some themes here of like horrors of the gender roles, with Liz being expected to play nice and ignore clear red flags. It also explicitly addresses toxic masculinity, gaslighting, and male entitlement. And I appreciate that as Liz fights back to reclaim her independence. So I think this is effectively crafted horror film with an ending that is satisfying and the revelations impactful. This is building on dread through the slow burn script, isolated setting, and excellent cinematography, which skillfully uses light and shadow to create a genuinely haunted atmosphere. The acting is something I also praise, with Maslany and Sutherland delivering strong performances. The technical aspects, including special effects, functional CGI, and non-cheesy jump scares, were also effective. So my rating here, I actually give Keeper, I give this one a 9 out of 10 and would recommend giving this one a watch. And actually, the last film that I watched on New Year's Eve is going to be K-Pop Demon Hunters from 2025. This is directed by Chris Applehans and Maggie Kang. This is written by Danya Jimenez, Hannah McMenchen, Kang, and Applehans. This is featuring the voices of Arden Cho, Mei Hung, and Ji Young Yu. This is there's a lot of stuff here in all of this. Animation, action, adventure, comedy, fantasy, family, musical. That's a co-production of the United States and Canada. You could also kind of throw this in here with some of these other ones like computer animation, pop musical, superhero, supernatural, fantasy. This is sitting on a 7.5 on IMDb and a 3.6 on Letterboxd, or synopsis being: a world-renowned K-pop girl group balances their lives in the spotlight with their secret identities as demon hunters. So this is a film that I saw being shown to the theaters, and I'll be honest, I didn't have much interest. I did hear some friends in the podcast community checking it out, and I decided to go ahead and make it the last film to round out my 2025 horror film list. It technically is a horror, no, but it's an animated action adventure film. Since they're hunting demons, it felt enough to kind of include it. So let's go ahead and say that girl group is made up of Rumi, who is voiced by Cho, Mira by Hong, and Zoe by Yu. So this one is fun. I will say that. I'm not the biggest fan of the animation style, but it looks crisp. What I thought thought was funny is that it takes elements that I know from anime and incorporates it into here. There were things like facial expressions changing to be over the top. It takes full advantage of the medium for the action scenes, which was solid. So I also appreciate the well-developed folklore. Whether real or invented for the film, the concept of the ancient demon fighting order is familiar. I've seen similar ideas used, whether it's fighting a specific villain or just having a group that is trained to protect something. Incorporating that in as they use music does set this apart. Making them a popular K-pop group modernizes the idea and effectively sets the film apart as well. Then to shift over to the villains, using demons is just an easy idea. It is ingrained in the fabric of our upbringing and transcends whatever religion you follow. I do like the demon lord that doesn't have a form, making it almost the exact opposite of an omnipresent god. It's depicted as a sacred flame. Now, the concept of this Antichrist being a boy band is something else that's fun to play. Use an idea like a popular music as a corrupting force, especially when it's catchy. Then something to shift gears here is that I'm not necessarily into K-pop music. I do find that it sounds pleasant and they tend to be catchy. It just doesn't normally fit the tone of what I'm doing when I'm listening to music. I'll say that Cho, Hong, and Yu all have amazing singing voices, so when they're showcasing it, I was impressed. Now, the other side, I would say the same for An Ho Seop, as well as Joel, Kim Booster, Alan Lee, and Sung Won Cho. Their singing voices also fit what was needed. That was something that impressed me here since it's such a focus they did great. Now moving over to the story, I like the idea that music is inspiring people to get stronger. As the boy band, the Sanja Boys, who are these demons that are posing as a boy band, they start to gain popularity, that the barrier that Huntrix, which is the girl group, are protecting is starting to falter. That's the main thing here, is that Huntrix is trying to seal this gate where the demons can no longer come up to Earth, and then this boy band is trying to just destroy it. So the idea of corruption and us praising our own demise is a bleak look. How it's presented, though, is done in a fun way that help alleviate. So the other thing to touch on here would be Rumi. She is hiding her true nature, which is manifested as internalized shame. She needs self-acceptance before they can succeed. It's an intriguing idea since she wants to close this barrier. She isn't able to get her full potential until she does. Celine is the lady who is doing her training, and she's kind of like her adopted mother since the real mother passed away. She is voiced by Yoo Jin Kim. She wanted Rumi to hide that part, and it just kind of shows like intergenerational trauma. There's also this tradition that of the duties of this group. The last bit here would be with the demon itself, the demon lord that is, of Guima, portrayed by the voice is Lee Byung-hun. I love his voice. As he gains power, he does it by pointing out past failures. Now, coming to terms with these can lead to strength. Let's then go to the rest of the filmmaking. Since this is animated, what they do here is impressive. It looks great, especially in 4K. The voices sync up and bring the characters to life, so credit there. I do love, again, that they take full advantage of the medium to make this more cinematic. It's a feast for the eyes. Now, since I've already touched on most of the actors, I did want to credit that Byung-hun has an excellent voice as the Demon Lord. We also have Ken Jeong as Bobby, the Huntrix manager. Inclusion is a highly enjoyable, energetic, and visually stunning animated adventure that uses its unique premise to explore relatable themes of self-acceptance, generational pressure, and the power of unity. While it might stretch the definition of horror, it delivers on its action fantasy elements with panache, boasting solid voice acting and truly memorable music performances. The film successfully modernizes an ancient conflict, making it feel fresh and relevant. I would highly recommend this if you're looking for a fun, action-packed film with a great soundtrack. It is a surprisingly good way to end my 2025 watches. So my rating here for KPop Demon Hunters, I gave this an 8 out of 10, and this is streaming on Netflix. And then, thanks to the randomizer, I watched Run, Hide, Fight from 2020, written and directed by Kyle Rankin. The stars Isabel May, Rhoda Mitchell, and Thomas Jane. This is a psychological thriller, teen drama, action, crime film that it's not necessarily horror, but I think I'll get into why I'm actually including it and why I did a full review here. But this is from the United States. It is currently sitting on a 6.3 on IMDb and 2.7 on Letterboxd, with our synopsis being Zoe Hull uses her wit, survival skills, and compassion to fight for her life and the lives of her classmates against a group of live streaming school shooters. So this one here is, I'll go ahead and say Zoe is portrayed by May. And this is one that I remember getting recommended via podcast. Now, I'll go ahead and just point out that this is divisive when it came out due to, I believe, being funded by Daily Wire. So when I was looking for it to watch, I saw people celebrate it for not being woke. Regardless, I wanted to watch it for myself. It was selected thanks to the randomizer here as a new year, new movie segment that I like to do in January. And then I'll go ahead and just kind of say that This isn't a horror movie in the traditional sense. I debated what type of review I was going to do, but I elected to include it due to being real life horror. The effects of what we get here are brutal at times. How it depicts a school shooting adds to it. I like how far it went, so I figured that it would be adjacent. So now that I've got out of the way, let's look at the scenario itself. It's definitely inspired by like Columbine and any of the well-planned school shootings. The film offers a commentary on bureaucracy. So the main villain here is Tristan Voy, portrayed by Eli Brown, and he highlights how the school boards voted in protocol requiring incident verification, which the perpetrators exploit. This delay allows teachers to have students hide in place, enabling the attackers to round them up, a terrifying element. Now, something else they're using here is the news, because we live in a 24-hour news cycle. Blood in situations like this lead. So Tristan has one of his guys who are helping him of Kip Quaid, portrayed by Cyrus Arnold, to monitor the news. Then when they're using this as a way to slow down the police from stopping them. They even allow students to call home, and one of them being Lewis Washington, who is the best friend of Zoe. He is portrayed by Ali Solatan. They're having him, since he has the most followers, and by running the school's website, that he gets the word out by live streaming everything they're doing, and they're using him as like a cameraman. So we have Sheriff Tarsi, portrayed by Treat Williams, shows up later and then pleads to reporters to change their angle in order to get students out. The shocking reality there is great in a depressing way. Now, with that overview and the story flesh out, let's look at our lead. It sounds like, from what we learn, talking to one of her teachers here, Mrs. Crawford, played by the lovely Barbara Crampton, things her father says to her interactions with her mother, she was a normal teenage girl. So her mother is Jennifer, portrayed by Rhoda Mitchell, and she passed away to cancer. This caused our character here of Zoe to internalize and put walls up. Her father is concerned, as well as her teacher. I think May does a good portrayal there. When these incidents start to happen, it forces her to look inward and reconcile to save herself as well as others, and I did appreciate that. And I should also say that Jennifer appears to her throughout, where she's like talking to her, and it's kind of an interesting thing that happens with the character of Kip, but I'll leave that there. Now, something I'll include as well is that this feels like it took a bit from the blueprint of Die Hard. We have someone who is trained to an extent, freeing the school and sabotaging the villains. It does its own thing from there. I will say that I just noticed correlations with some of the things that kind of go down. Then just some other themes that I noticed, and start with our villains. There is the desire for infamy through social media. They are having Lewis film what they're doing on live stream. It is performative with the violence as well. I've already brought up this, but we're also seeing the failure of procedure, which presents inactivity. I don't love that it tries to build up the idea of like the good guy with a gun with something later on in this one with Todd, who is portrayed by Thomas Jane. That's the father to Zoe, as he is a former military sniper. Now, what is interesting though is what happens and what they do from there with that. So I do actually kind of applaud the realism for that. We also have nihilism of Tristan versus the purpose of Zoe to overcome similar feelings. Because you kind of think about it, both of them are having their own issues, and you need to overcome it to kind of succeed. Let's move to the acting. May's performance has good growth for like their hero's journey. A duality exists between the protagonist and Brown's Tristan, who share backgrounds but respond differently. Mitchell and Jane were good as Zoe's parents. Mitchell is like a specter, providing somebody for Zoe to talk to when she's alone. Solatan was adequate. I'd also give credit here to Arnold, Britton Shear, and Catherine Davis. They're the other villains that are helping out Tristan in this one. And the roles for veterans like Williams and Crampton were appreciated. The rest of the cast filled their necessary parts. All else other than be filmmaking. I do think the cinematography and framing were solid. How it subtly introduces the setup for Tristan's plan was good. How they enacted from there was something else that works. As a parent, it made me anxious. The effects that we got were brutal with how realistic they look. They don't linger on it, so credit to the editing. The framing also helped there. The soundtrack also fits what was needed without standing out. If I have an issue, this ran a little bit too long. Trimming closer to 90 minutes would definitely help. In conclusion, this is a difficult yet compelling watch that tackles the real-life horror of a school shooting with intensity and a focus on one character's survival. While the underlying political funding and some thematic choices may be divisive, the film succeeds in building suspense through its Die Hard-esque structure and exploring themes of media spectacle, bureaucratic failure, and nihilism versus purpose. Strong performances, particularly from May and Brown, alongside solid technical filmmaking, help deliver a brutal and emotionally charged experience that, despite its length, leaves a significant impact and provokes thought on a commentary societal tragedy. So my rating here for Run, Hide, Fight, I actually give this one a 7.5 out of 10. It was better than I was kind of expecting there. And then my first Scouring the Six rewatches is going to be Dracula's Daughter from 1936, directed by Lambert Hillier. This was written by Garrett Fort. The story was done by John L. Ball, based on the work from Bram Stoker. There's some suggestions here done by Dave Zelnick. And then we have some uncredited contributing writers of Charles Belden, Finn Peter Dunn, and R.C. Sheriff. And then Kurt Newman did the uncredited work for The Treatment. And then this is starring Otto Kruger, Gloria Holden, and Marguerite Churchill. This is a dark fantasy, supernatural, vampire, drama, fantasy, horror film. This is from the United States. This is, of course, a Universal classic from that early run, but this is sitting on a 6.3 on IMDb and a 3.2 on Letterboxd, or a synopsis being. When Countess Myra Zaleska appears in London, mysterious events occur that lead Dr. Von Helsing believes there still is a vampire at large. So the Countess is being portrayed by Holden, and then Von Helsing by Edward von Sloan. And then, so this is one that I learned about when I was seeking out the Universal Classic line of Dracula films. Originally, got this from the library, and then I sought out a DVD. It would have been right after college that I first saw this one, so I'm giving it a rewatch here with a critical eye for the first time. So I'm going to go ahead and start is that this original screenplay concept was kind of used because Bela Lugosi demanded more money. This was leading to a screenplay that we get here. Now, the shift is logically sound given that Dracula's death in the first film and how this one begins. The film introduces some interesting elements from the novel. Something like here, Mina can be cured if she avoids her first feeding, and then Dracula is killed. This explores whether the curse can be lifted by somebody afflicted for like a century. Now that is set up, let's kind of delve into our titular character. Maria is a tragic figure who is desiring a curse for her affliction, which proves impossible. Now the film's short runtime limits character development. Despite the success of like Dracula and Frankenstein, I would guess it didn't a lot larger budgets just yet from Universal. I appreciate the introduction of modern science and Maria's attempt to use it. Holden effectively portrays her as a stoic, striving for humanity, yet a product of her nature. So then the main character here that she interacts with is going to be Jeffrey Garth, and he is Otto Kruger. And he's the next one I'm going to focus on. While I don't particularly like him, I did enjoy his banter with his assistant here of Janet Blake, portrayed by Churchill, especially as his true feelings emerged. His infatuation with Maria, the beautiful, mysterious foreign royalty, is unsurprising. I like that the more he learns about her, the more it reveals his previously unrealized feelings. The character's arrogance didn't resonate, but Kruger's performance was good. The issue likely lies with the screenplay and the era. Then another element of the story I do like is showing the consequences of what is done in Dracula. Von Helsing killing Dracula is a wrap-up that the story makes sense with. The issue there is that since the police found the body, the logic is that they saw a crime, or there's a crime here. I like that we don't have the convenience factor. It's something that's nice to give a subplot and build tension. Other themes to bring up, even though I've kind of slightly touched on some of these, would include that Maria is a reluctant monster. She becomes more of a villain as she realizes science cannot help. We do get the idea of like science versus superstition, using the former to try to explain it. I do like how the latter cannot necessarily disprove. Then there's also the idea here of addiction. Jeffrey brings up helping people with alcoholism, and that sparks Maria's wonder if it could cure her compulsion. You can also see her giving up as relapsing. There's also the burden of name and generational trauma. Then another theme that I needed to have its own section here would be the major writings about how this is like a queer subtext. There is some toned down stuff due to the censorship from the Hays Code. I clearly picked up on this painting scene with the character of Lily, who is portrayed by Non Gray. Maria is having her model in a risque way that was done strategically to avoid getting cut completely. Something I didn't necessarily pick up on until looking more into this would be that during the 1930s, and I mean even closed-minded people today would look at homosexuality as a mental illness or something that cannot be controlled, and I'll just kind of leave that concept there. Let's then go over to the acting performances. I've already said that despite not liking the character, Kruger is fine as our lead. Holden works as his tragic villain who gives into her darker nature. Churchill works as Jeffrey's assistant who banters back with him. I like Von Sloan here as being back as Von Helsing. His role is much smaller, and it's more of like a framing story to get all the main characters together. Then we also here have Irving Pitchell, who is taking on the character of Sander, who is Maria's servant. Emery and the rest of the cast round this off for what was needed. I also thought there would be filmmaking aspects. I thought the cinematography and framing were fine. This would be limited by the era, which is how early into cinema we were. No major issues, though. It captures what was needed. This is more like a movie than its predecessor, which felt like a play that was just kind of being filmed, but the limited effects that we got were fun. Other than that, I thought the sound design and music were working for what was. In conclusion, this is a compelling, if limited, follow-up successfully shifts focus to the tragic Countess Zaleska. The film introduces rich themes, science versus superstition, addiction, and notably some queer subtext. While hindered by a short runtime and a grating lead in Jeffrey, Holden's strong performance elevates the material. The inventive framework of Von Helsing's legal troubles provides tension and explores the first film's direct consequences. Ultimately, Dracula's Daughter is a well-shot, thematically rich, universal monster entry, remembered for its elegant villain and mythology expansion beyond simple bloodlust. So my rating here for Dracula's Daughter, I enjoyed what I watched here, and I give this one an 8 out of 10 this time around. Then up next, I got to check out the final episode of It Welcome to Derry, which is going to be episode 8, Winter Fire. This was directed by Andy Muschietti, and the synopsis here is as a dense fog engulfs the town and General Shaw pushes ahead with his mission, the Hanlons, Rose, Dick, and the kids must work together to save Dick. Go ahead and say here that James Remar plays that general. Then the parents here are going to end up being Leroy Hanlon, portrayed by Jovan Apido, and then Charlotte, portrayed by Taylor Page, and then her son, or their son, is actually Will, portrayed by Blake Cameron James. He actually gets taken. He sees the deadlights and is pulled into everything. It's kind of a really cool thing here is that we see once everything kind of happens in the previous episode, then the creature, which is supposed to be asleep, ends up waking up and going into town and everything. And it's actually this really cool thing where it goes to the school, and then we get this like Pied Piper with the kids are being led by Pennywise, of course, being portrayed by Bill Skarsgård. So the whole thing here is that they need to get this dagger to this tree before Pennywise gets there, because if that happens, then he should be free to kind of roam wherever he needs to. We see the military kind of messing up with everything, and there's actually something where an adult ends up seeing the deadlights, which we've seen in the actual movie and everything like that. And then it's actually kind of weird is we get some like ethereal thing happen with Rich Santos, portrayed by Arian S. Cartaya. I think how this season ends up and everything is kind of interesting is I had a buddy who kind of said something, and it made me actually wonder if he's correct here, because the character of Marge Truman, portrayed by Matilda Lawler, she hears something about the present of when the movies previously, and it actually kind of drove home something that I thought was actually going to be revealed. Don't necessarily know if we need that, but it's actually kind of interesting is that we end up learning that Pennywise might experience time differently than we do. Kind of a cool thing that they're playing with here. I actually rather enjoyed that. So this final episode here, I end up giving this one, I believe, an 8. And then the whole series, this first season, I gave an 8 to. Rather enjoyed it. Would be curious to kind of watch. It does look like it has been greenlit for at least a season 2, maybe even a season 3. So kind of curious to see where they go from there. I would recommend this on HBO Max, especially if you're a fan of like Stephen King and everything, because we get some cool stuff here with Dick Hanlon, who in this is being portrayed by Chris Chalk. They do some really cool things there with his character, and it kind of leads into everything. And there's even a cameo at the very end that I wasn't expecting. Very cool thing. And then I also have Stranger Things 5, Chapter 8, The Right Side Up. So since this is actually listed on Letterboxd as being a movie because it is over 2 hours long, I decided to go ahead and do like a review of the final episode with a little bit more to it. And then, like I said, this is Chapter 8, The Right Side Up. The synopsis being, as Vecna prepares to destroy the world as we know it, the party must put everything on the line to defeat him once and for all. Vecna being portrayed by Jamie Campbell Bower. So the first thing, well, actually go ahead and say here, the Duffer Brothers are the directors of this one. This is a dark fantasy, monster horror, sci-fi epic, supernatural, horror, drama, fantasy, mystery, sci-fi, all that good stuff in there. So the first thing I'll say is that I was taught in a screenwriting class that if it goes too in-depth into a plan, you know it's going to fail. So the plan to defeat Vecna was laid out in the previous episode, and it's very elaborate. There are multiple groups that are doing different things in order to save Hawkins, the lost children in the world. There's this forward planet that the Mind Flayer is from, and Vecna is using the children to bring it closer. So since this runs 2 hours long, the episode is really 2 in 1. The finale structure, battle first and full character resolution, makes sense. Though generally happy, uplifting endings for most of the characters are less ideal for what I look for. However, the emotional impact is undeniable. My wife, Jamie, and I cried multiple times, feeling for the children's turmoil and seeing it from a parent's perspective. Given their struggles, the characters earn their outcome. So this is well made, and so that's a lot of it. With how much money was spent, it was well used. Going to the planet that Dustin, who is portrayed by Gaten Matarazano, dubs the Abyss, was good. There's the Upside Down, and that's all clearly green screen. It doesn't take me out of it, though. Bringing Vecna to life as well as the actual Mind Flayer, those were all good. This even goes brutal, which I appreciate. No issues with the effects. I also want to have to give credit here to the soundtrack. The combination of real songs with like the excellent original synthwave score is on point. Credit all around there. The acting is also great. We've watched these kids mature into adults, though the show probably could have been made a little bit quicker, but like Winona Ryder and David Harbour's, their wrap-up was great. They're both being like Joyce Byers and Jim Hopper. I would also say that Millie Bobby Brown as Eleven, Finn Wolfhard as Mike Wheeler, Montrezaro as Dustin Henderson, we have Caleb McLaughlin as Lucas Sinclair, Noah Schnapp as Will Byers, and Sadie Sink as Max Mayfield. They're all excellent as the main group. I appreciate the development as well for Natalia Dyer, who is Nancy Wheeler. There is Charlie Heaton, who's portraying Jonathan Byers, who is the brother to Will, and then Nancy, of course, to Mike. You also have Steve the Hare Harrington by Joe Keery and Robin Buckley as Maya Hawke. I like how they all kind of factor into everything. I also like the cameo performances by Brett Gelman, who is Murray Bauman, and then Karen Wheeler is Cara Buono. And you also have Erica Sinclair, Lucas's little sister, of Pariah Ferguson. And then Nell Fisher stepping in here this season is Holly Wheeler. And then Bauer and Linda Hamilton, they're just great villains as well from everything that, they kind of do, one being like the government, one being Vecna. In conclusion, this finale serves as a spectacular, emotionally resonant, and visually impressive capstone to the series. Despite its predictable structural flaw, the over-engineered plan leading to inevitable chaos, the execution is flawless. The episode delivers on its promise of a massive confrontation, leveraging its substantial budget for top-tier visual effects and an exceptional soundscape. Ultimately, the finale succeeds most by celebrating the journey of its core ensemble, giving their long-fought struggles a meaningful, albeit uplifting resolution that sparks the power of earned emotional payoff. And so my rating here, for Stranger Things, this final episode, I gave it an 8.5 out of 10. The series itself, I think I give it an 8 just because there was some ups and downs and everything like that. Overall, it's very enjoyable. Like, I am kind of interested to see if my kids ever want to rewatch it, because that would be how I would, run through this journey again, and that'd be the only way I'll probably update this final review here. But yeah, definitely worth a watch if some of the stuff here works for you and you wanted to see kind of why this show got as popular as it did. That's all I have here then for mini reviews. Let me go ahead then take a quick break before I get over into the main event here, my top horror films from 2025.
Listen, here's the truth. If it's not something you love to do, automation is mandatory. You didn't start your podcast to spend hours editing clips. You started it to create, connect, and grow your audience. But here's the problem. Every other platform works with video podcasts, and manual editing eats up your most valuable asset, your time. That's where Opus Clip changes everything. Upload your video, and Opus Clip will automatically find the gold nugget moments, auto-clip the captions for the best parts, perfect for TikTok, Reels, and Shorts. 1 hour-long episode becomes 10, 20, even 30 viral-ready clips in minutes. The tool even predicts each clip's viral potential, so you know exactly what to post. No more tenuous editing, no more wasted hours, just you staying in the place that you love to be, creating content that matters. Head to podnationopus.com for your free trial and get back to doing what you do best. Stop editing and start creating now.
And welcome to the main event here. So this is going to be my top horror films that were wide release in 2025, or at least I got to see them at a film festival here in 2025. So I'm going to first start off doing here is going to be some stats. I watched 133 films that are being contributed to this list, 213.8 hours worth of things, 144 directors, 30 countries, 11 languages. So some of these are spread between 2024 and 2023, just depending on when they got released. But the highest other genre is going to be thriller at 48 films. The most films that are not United States is going to be UK at 16. And then I had 3 films that are in Japanese on here. And then the themes and nano-genres, the most popular theme on this one is going to be horror, the undead, and monster classics. The nano-genre is going to be creepy, twisted, inventive as the top one there. So then just some of the people here that are going to be reoccurring actors is the top people here that are all tied are going to be Sarah Nicklin, Jason Brooks, Alan Constangia, and Jeff Strom all had 3 films. And then Lily Taylor, Ba Ling, Justin Long, Sarah Canning, Catherine Loge Hogquist, Tony Todd, Jack O'Connell, Tatiana Maslany, Keegan Connor Tracy, Sharon Bezier, Marina Stephenson Keir, Tony Reimer, Julia Garner, Maddie Fanocci, Wynn Reichart, James Durham, Rohan Campbell, Darren Ross, Adam Bucci, Mikel O'Glaine, Jean-Jacques Javier, Anna Lore, Christian Schwarzgy, Christian Convery, Crystal Snow, BJ Varro, Robert Borges, Tess Digenstein, Jeanette McDonald, Riley Nottingham, Anders Strom, Gigi Gustin, Ava Durak Gangan, Julia Fox, Bree Peters, Carson Minier, Ji Young Yu, Chloe Cherry, Tyreek Withers, Tim Shelburne, Angel Prater, Jaslyn Wong Lee, Ella Rubin, and Roderick Aldenton. And I do apologize, I didn't realize it was going to go on for that long, but those all have 2 films. And then 3 directors had double films on here: Osgood Perkins, Scott Derrickson, and Brandon Christensen. And then doing the top kind of highs and lows here, the most popular and highest average is going to be Sinners. The lowest average is going to be Piglet. The most obscure is Lonely Legend. The newest is going to be Stranger Things, the finale at December 31st, 2025. Oldest is Bird Eater because this came back out in 2023. Longest is Dewey Shaw at 158 minutes. And the shortest is going to be White Guilt at 62 minutes. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to run through my bottom 10, and I'm going to go from 10 down to 1. And I do apologize, but this is kind of just how things had to happen here. But A Hard Place, 5.5. That was a mini review on 290. Delicate Arch, 5.5. Mini review on episode 275. Zombie Con Volume 1, I gave a 5.5. Mini review on 299. Piglet, 5.5, mini review on 292. Lilith, a J. Crimson film, 5.5, mini review on 315. Lonely Legend, 5.5, mini review on 317. Werewolf Game at a 5 as a mini review on 273. Rufus, a 5 on mini review on 316. Thou Shalt Kill, a 5 on mini review on episode 270. And then the lowest one's going to actually be a documentary, The Dark Side of Society, 4.5 mini review on 288. So then the honorable mentions that did not make my list, I have 2 of them tied at 5.5, which was Eye for an Eye and Livestream. So Eye for an Eye was on mini review on 297, Livestream on 281, and then Fuck My Son is actually all these are going to be tied at 6 here. That was a featured review from Nightmares Film Festival. The Demoness, mini review on 306. Revenge of the Boogeyman, mini review on 280. Bury Me When I'm Dead, mini review on 300. Blood Barn is going to be on episode, it was another one, Nightmares Film Festival one. 311. The Woman in the Yard, featured review on 286. Anything That Moves, Nightmares Film Festival, so episode 311. Manor of Darkness, mini review on 317. Evidence of the Boogeyman, mini review on 319. The Hem, mini review on 309. Hell House LLC Lineage, a featured review on 304. And then For God's Sake, Wake Her Up. That was going to be a mini review on episode 321. Then The Conjuring Last Rites is going to be a featured review on episode 306. The Carpenter's Son, a featured review on episode 321. Dirty Boy, mini review on 299. Brute 1976, mini review on 308. The Last Cabin, a mini review on 288. And then I also have, these ones just missed out on making the list, though. So these ones, I have a few all tied at 6.5, which is going to be Lizzie Lazarus, a mini review on 271. Round the Decay, mini review on 274. The Death of Snow White, mini review on 296. And then No Seums is going to be a mini review on 304. So that's what I'm going to do here for this opening section. This one a little quicker than I expected. I am kind of more prepared than I normally am, and I'm kind of enjoying it so far. So let me go ahead. I'm going to break away, and then I'm going to start doing my 100 through 76 portion of the list.
Hey, it's Travis from the Bar Banter Podcast, where friends, drinks, and dumb debates collide. Ever argue, what's the best cereal milk? Or could you fight 100 duck-sized horses? How about, is Die Hard a Christmas movie? Spoiler alert, we're still fighting about that one. New episodes drop every Wednesday because your midweek needs more chaos. Find us on YouTube, Instagram, and all your favorite podcast apps. Be sure to hit the link tree at _Bar Banter Podcast. And when you do join us, be prepared to grab a drink, take a side, and banter responsibly.
And welcome back. So, welcome now to the top 100. So, I'm going to start here, like I said, at the end of that last section. This is going to be 100 through 76. So for the first one coming in at 100 is going to be Forgive Us All. This was a mini review on episode 310. Now the plot here was we have Rory contemplating suicide when her daughter Maddie dies from a sickness and attacks. It jumps 2 years to where we have Noah, who has stolen an antidote from a camp run by the GMA and is being chased by a trio led by Logan. Rory finds Noah and hides him, seeing a chance at redemption. A central theme is Rory dealing with grief and guilt over losing her family. So this is an intriguing blend of Western and zombie horror in a post-apocalyptic setting. Lily Sullivan gives a strong performance as the grieving mother of Rory. Richard Roxburgh, who is Otto, and Callan Mulvaney is the villain Logan, gave some solid acting performances as well. Now, the cinematography and framing, there's a washed-out, bleak look, are effective. The effects for the zombies in this one are called howlers were good. It suffers from underutilized world-building elements and meandering pace after initial setup. The camp dynamics in the howlers' threat lack depth, and then the main issue is slow pacing, causing interest to wane despite a good runtime. So for this one here, I gave this one, as this what our list is going to be starting at, is I gave Forgive Us All a 6.5 out of 10. And then position number 99 is going to be Project MK Hex. This one, I did 2 mini reviews. One's going to be 285, the other one's going to be 300. So the synopsis here is about an inspiring filmmaker who returns home after his younger brother's suicide. He discovers his brother's obsession with a malevolent conspiracy theory that threatens to destroy reality. So the lead character here is Tim, portrayed by Ignacio Montaigne, makes a documentary to explore what drove his younger brother Sean, who is portrayed by Will Andro, to suicide. Now, Sean was a happy college freshman descended into madness about 100 days before his death. Sean believed he stumbled upon proof of a secret government mind control project, a sister program to Project MK Ultra known as Project MK Hex. So Tim seeks out Sean's friend Nicole, portrayed by Jordan Knapp, who encourages him to make the documentary. Their investigation pushes their limits of beliefs, borders on the supernatural, makes you wonder if they are going crazy or not. So this is described as an interesting and well-executed entry into the found footage horror subgenre. It successfully blends elements of cosmic horror, including the vibes similar to H.P. Lovecraft's The Call of Cthulhu, with characters driven mad by entities. So the filming style here is a commitment to realism and uses limited information effectively, drawing parallels to the Blair Witch Project. Now, the found footage style is justified by the characters documenting Sean's descent for a documentary, and then the title plays on Cold War era government secret projects like Project Paperclip. Project MK Hex appears to be a sister project to MK Ultra, like I was saying, involving subliminal messaging and mind control broadcasts late at night in the Midwest. This successfully presents both a logical and supernatural angle to explain things, leaving the final decision up to the viewer. It also allows an unreliable narrator added to the mystique. Now, the acting is strong, particularly from Montaigne as the lead and Andro in the videos. I think that Knapp's character is somebody that the audience can't fully trust, which is effective. So for me, I think this loses some of its mystique on a second viewing. Some minor flaws I've noticed both times with some of the CGI. Still rather enjoyed Project MK Hex, and I gave it a 6.5 out of 10. Then at position number 98 is We Put the World to Sleep. This was a featured review that I got to see at Nightmares Film Festival, so episode 311. And this is a meta-commentary on acting insanity filmed in a found footage style. The characters Adrian, portrayed by Adrian Toffe, and Duru, portrayed by Duro Yusel, are actors who get lost in the roles they play in an apocalyptic film. They embark on a secret mission to end the world for real. The setup is that they are making a film about ending the world, but become so lost in their characters they decide to truly make it happen. They receive information from Andrea, who is portrayed by Andrea Insiu, who believes that she has discovered CIA information. Duro begins to believe she's a robot that could wipe out humanity if she achieves singularity, leading to an existential crisis. Adrian, who doesn't want to end life, believes helping Duro could fulfill what he thinks is best for the people. This also includes a layer where Adrian wonders if he is truly a psychopath that he played in his previous film, Be My Cat. So Adrian goes far to create a room that is a shrine to Richard Ramirez, which Duro finds disturbing and for good reason. So some of the strengths here, it's an intense character study powered by convincing manic performances by Toffe and Yusel. Toffe and Yusel have excellent manic chemistry, constantly shifting perspective, which enhances their dynamic as a married couple. This film successfully blends a descent into madness and struggle to comprehend reality, blending elements of 2001: A Space Odyssey and the Blair Witch Project, which it lacks the philosophical depth of the Kubrick film, in my opinion. The found footage style creates a dangerous and surreal descent into madness where the line between character and actor is blurred. The editing and sound design are solid, helping with the realism of the found footage format. So this is some weaknesses. This is challenging and may not appeal to all viewers due to the deliberate lack of action. I think Toffe's previous work, the more straightforward Be My Cat, a film for Anne, I like that one better. And this starts with somebody getting on Letterboxd and uses title cards to provide more information. That I don't necessarily think is a weakness, but just something I wanted to include here. But my rating for We Put the World to Sleep, I gave a 6.5 out of 10 to. And then at position number 97 is The Gorge, which was a featured review on episode 282. So this one, we have two highly trained operatives are sent to protect opposite sides of a mysterious gorge and become close. When evil emerges from the gorge, they must work together to survive. So we have one operative, Drasa, portrayed by Anya Taylor-Joy, is an assassin who is completely isolated in a bunker. She is to report to Moscow for a similar position. And then the other operative is Levi, portrayed by Miles Teller, is a rare talent as a sniper who has discharged from the Marines and now does freelance, highly classified work for 1 year. He meets Bartholomew, portrayed by Sigourney Weaver. So the gorge is split between World War II allies and countries that replace the Soviet Union. Now, the operatives are not supposed to have contact, they break the rules and communicate via writing and binoculars. The evil that emerged from the gorge are humanoid creatures, and the experiment is a secret that was being kept by a company called Black Lake. So this feels like a solid little popcorn action horror film in the style of like the later Resident Evil films. I think that, I know I enjoyed my time, but I think that they do well with classifying this as more like an action romance film with horror elements. I found the idea of the gorge split between the two sides intriguing, comparing it to like the Berlin Wall after World War II. So the acting from Teller and Taylor-Joy was good. I think that they have some good chemistry, and it feels a little bit of an intentional use of attractive people for romance was a little bit cheesy. But like I said, I enjoyed my time here. It's not a horrible watch by any stretch, and I gave The Gorge a 6.5 out of 10. Then coming in at number 96 is going to be I Know What You Did Last Summer, this requel. This is a featured review on episode 299, and we have a group of friends terrorized by a stalker who knows about the gruesome incident from their past. I don't know if I would go that far, but this begins at an engagement party for Danica Richards, portrayed by Madeline Klein, and Teddy Spencer, portrayed by Tyreek Withers. So the friends, including Ava Brooks, portrayed by Chase Suey Wonders, and Milo Griffin, portrayed by Jonah Howard King, invite their other friend Stevie Ward, portrayed by Sarah Pigeon, to join them to watch fireworks at their old spot. Danica, who is the only one sober and is driving, gets into a tragic accident because they are messing around. Milo pushes Teddy out of the way of a car, and then another one crashes before they can leave. Instead of going to the police, Teddy's powerful father, Grant, portrayed by Billy Campbell, takes care of the situation, and the friends go their separate ways. A year later, they reunite to Danica's second engagement party. She's now getting married to Wyatt, portrayed by Joshua Orpin. So Danica receives an unmarked card at her bridal shower with a note saying that they know what she did last summer. The friends seek out help from Julie James, portrayed by Jennifer Love Hewitt, now a professor, and Ray Bronson, Freddie Prinze Jr., who is still in town. Now the film explores the lore of the town of Southport, where Grant has invested heavily to clear the town's name for business, which upsets Ray. So some praises here. This feels like a basic premise with like the group dynamics matched for the first film, and then appreciated how the story kind of integrated the town's lore. There are some kills here that I thought were pretty brutal, actually, utilizing fishing items like a spear gun, a trap for lobsters and crabs, and like ropes, in addition to the iconic hook, the cinematography, framing, soundtrack, and design, especially attack scenes where the character couldn't hear due to headphones. All things I give credit. Now, some criticism I have here is, like many requels, has a tough time of a balancing act. The biggest issue is that this is a slow burn and ran for almost 2 hours, suggesting I think it should be trimmed to like 100 minutes. Issues that also I had were dialogue, which caters to teens and young adults. I did love the cameos here by Sarah Michelle Gellar, Freddie Prinze Jr., Jennifer Love Hewitt, and there's one other one that I'm going to keep close to the vest. It's competently crafted slasher that pays clever homage to its predecessor. Slasher fans with a nostalgic soft spot for the original will likely enjoy this one, but maybe not. So my rating, though, for I Know What You Did Last Summer, I gave a 6.5 out of 10. Then at position number 95, I have the Lizzie Borden Game. This is a mini review on episode 301. So the synopsis is, after the unexplained death of her parents, Emily, who is portrayed by Aricia Duran, joins a group of friends for a secluded trip to the woods. Now they discover an old Erie's children's game known as a Lizzie Borden Game. They don't really discover it, but they figure out they're going to start playing it. So the film starts with two little girls, Sophie, portrayed by Sophia Claire Thompson, and Lily by Daphne Kelly, playing a game similar to Bloody Mary, but using the film's title, and they're attacked by a woman with an axe, played by China Ray Schertz. So then Emily, who is staying with her cousin Shelby, portrayed by Charlie Day, is invited to a Friendsgiving party hosted at a nearby castle. So the group, which includes Emily's boyfriend Kyle, portrayed by Jason Brooks, another couple of Rupert, portrayed by Steve Larkin, and Amelia, portrayed by Laura Ellen Wilson, decide to play a game. So they see Lizzie Borden, once again Schertz, in the mirror and forget to close the portal, which results in the group being stalked by a malevolent force. So this includes flashbacks showing the truth about Lizzie's crime against her parents, who are, in this one, portrayed by Andrew portrayed by Doug Sellers, and Abby by Dawn Sellers. So this is like a supernatural slasher with a variation of like Bloody Mary or Candyman. I think that the acting performances, this cast, they bring enough life to the characters. I think that for filmmaking, it captured the isolated location and framing the kill sequences to hide the seams. The practical effects were impressive, making the death scenes brutal and Lizzie looking so creepy. Then this also has some real character, like there is really obviously a Lizzie Borden, and incorporates her story with, Schertz doing well as that Spectre. So I think that this is, if you're a fan of low budget slasher movies, I think you'll enjoy this well enough. And I give this one a 6.5 out of 10. And then at 94 is going to be If It Bleeds, which was an anthology film that was shown at Nightmares Film Festival, so episode 311. So this is one that utilizes a news report wraparound structure, playing with the adage, if it bleeds, it leads. The story follows Diane Winters, portrayed by Catherine Corcoran. I think that's how you say it. If I don't know how, I'm apologizing there. An ambitious young news reporter and her cameraman Simon, portrayed by Justin Miles, as they chase down a series of gruesome murders and supernatural events during one chaotic day. So Diane buys a police scanner to find hard-hitting stories and convinces Simon to help her by promising him a drink. So Diane has a rival reporter who is Elijah Enoch, portrayed by Andy Davoli, who is shown bribing police officers. So then just kind of break down a little bit of the tales here just a little bit. First one revolves around a group of two couples. There's Tristan, portrayed by Kilo Thomas, with Monica, portrayed by Gigi Gustin. And then we also have Billy, who's Adam Bucci, with Tiffany, who is Marin Altman. At a house belonging to Leanne Vamp, they play a new game with wooden cards that, when picked and following, you knock on the lid 3 times, and it brings an entity, so it's almost like a Ouija board. So then the puppet tale focuses on Evelyn Winthrop, portrayed by Constance Forsland, who had a successful television show with a puppet named Chipped, who is voiced by the great John Cassier, the Crypt Keeper himself. After Evelyn's death, the puppet goes to her niece Grace, and Chip has plans for her, suggesting the show be more real than known. This one feels like the creepy puppet story and being inspired by, Dead of Night, but going a different direction, similar to like Lamb Chop's Play Along. So then we also have Botched. This revolves around an actress of Dana Goodwin, portrayed by Kiersey Fox, in Los Angeles, whose agent Kelly, portrayed by the great Dee Wallace, offers a part that requires plastic surgery. Dana's mother, Melinda, who I believe is voiced by Bonnie Aarons, is unhappy, and the surgery is performed by Dr. Charles, portrayed by Doug Jones. He has a poor reputation and is considered this was the most grounded of the shorts. It's a body horror story about plastic surgery gone wrong. So co-writer and director Matthew Hirsch, he actually mentioned at the Q&A after watching this that he chose to do an anthology because it allowed him to film things, use actors he wanted, and then return later to make more. Hirsch filmed the movie in segment process, similar to like Night of the Living Dead, filming when he had money and then coming back later. I think that Corcoran's performance as Diane Winters was one of the best. This has solid practical effects with some minor CGI flaws, and like I said, this played at day 2 of Nightmares Film Festival. So for If It Bleeds, I gave this one a 6.5 out of 10. Then at spot 93, I have Until Dawn, featured review on episode 305. So this one here opens with a woman who is Melanie Paul, portrayed by Maya Mitchell, being chased in a tunnel and then met by somebody with a long scythe. So 1 year later, Melanie's sister, Clover, portrayed by Ella Rubin, is searching for her and her ex-boyfriend, Max, who is portrayed by Michael Cimino. And then you also have Nina, portrayed by Odessa A. Zion, and her boyfriend, Abe, portrayed by Belmont Cameli. And then Megan, portrayed by Ji Young Yu. Now, she claims to be a psychic. So their search leads them to a gas station where the attendant, Alan, portrayed by Peter Stormer, recognizes Clover and mentions many missing people in the nearby Glory Valley. So they head to an old hotel there. Inside, Abe finds a wall of missing persons posters, including one for Melanie, and Nina finds a guest book where it was signed by Melanie. They're attacked and killed by a masked figure, but a mysterious hourglass resets the night, allowing them to remember and try to escape their deaths. So I think it's an intriguing concept by blending the slasher narrative with a time loop mechanic, likening it to something like Groundhog Day. So I appreciate the injuries, such as like Max's black eye, are cumulative, that the longer you go on, the more it kind of changes you. So the acting, it's fine. It fits a slasher genre. Rubin shines as the lead, and Simonio, A. Zion, and Yu, and Kamali all provide strong supporting performances. The cinematography, framing, and practical effects were commendable. It creates an eerie atmosphere, is what you're looking for. So I just think there's some narrative struggles here with underdeveloped ideas, such as Alan's character and the town's history. It has an excessive runtime, and they could have been a better modern slasher with just a little bit tighter of a runtime. So my rating, though, for Until Dawn, I thought it was fine. I gave it a 6.5 out of 10. And then at position number 92 is going to be Siege of Ape Canyon. This was a mini review on episode 314. This is a documentary. So this explores the infamous 1924 incident in Washington where gold prospectors led by Fred Beck claimed that they were attacked by ape-like creatures believed to be Sasquatches potentially while staying in a cabin. So this uses interviews, analysis, and footage to investigate the truth behind the encounter. So this is another one from Small Town Monsters, but this is actually directed by Eli Watson instead of Seth Breedlove. Focuses more on like a local expert of Mark Myrosol. who is interviewed along with others about the incident and the evidence of the cryptid. Marosol's research includes using contemporary newspaper accounts and presenting his findings objectively. He searches for survivors' relatives and found a daughter and grandchild of Fred Beck, who are now helping his search for the mine. Marosel found the site of the historic cabin in 2013, which was previously thought to be lost. He is still searching for that mine's location, though, at least as of late as when this came out. So Marosel, I give him credit for keeping the story alive and prevent it from becoming just a tall tale. I think there's some slightly different stuff here, a more grounded approach than other small town monsters documentaries, but still well made with good cinematography and editing. The incident was reportedly refuted as a hoax by children who encountered the miners. There seems to be a little bit something up with there, though, and it also doesn't help that this ordeal was written by Beck's son Ronald, but there is speculation that he sensationalized the story since the interviews took place so long after the incident did. So rather enjoyed this one, and I actually have a bump up in rating here. So I gave The Siege of Ape Canyon a 7 out of 10. And then at position number 91, just missing on the top 90, is going to be The Cramps, a period piece. This was a featured review from Nightmares Film Festival, so 311. And this one here is about Agnes, portrayed by Laura Kitchen, who defies her strict family to work at a salon. Her newfound independence is challenged when her menstrual cramps turn into actual monsters, merging her real and nightmare worlds. So this one was part of the Midnight Mindfuck section of Nightmares Film Festival. I think that it's a great genre mashup that is more of like a John Waters-esque comedy, but incorporates horror elements. Now the horror is a blend of body, like The Brood, and like creature feature chaos of The Blob. So this is wonderfully cheeky and uses puns and play on words. It delivers an empowering message about menstruation and female identity, dealing with subjects that were and can still be taboo to discuss. I think this is a timeless feel. It is potentially set between like the 1950s and early 1970s. It features strong performances, especially from Kitchen, excellent practical effects for the monsters, a killer soundtrack, a grainy feel, and some good cinematography. So I'll actually go ahead and just introduce some of the other characters. We have Agnes, who is Kitchen. She's the protagonist. Now her mother is Applewhite, who is portrayed by Brooklyn Woods. We also have Liberty, who is Agnes's sister, portrayed by Harley Madison. There's Laverne Lancaster, portrayed by Martini Bear. He's a salon owner. We have Teddy T-Berry, portrayed by Wiccan Taylor, a Satanist working at the salon. We also have Holiday Hitchcocker, who is Michelle Malentina, who works at the salon as well. There is Falcon Fireshaft, who is Gabriel Steven Perez, a cute guy who asks Agnes out. Dr. Feckless, who is Jared Bankins, the doctor who dismisses Agnes's concern. And then Dr. Dolly, who is Penny Lelou, a character who appears to be more like a witch than an actual doctor, but this is all played for fun and comedy for the most part, and while still having a good message. But my rating here for The Cramps, a period piece, I gave this one a 7 out of 10 as well. And then starting off that top 90, I have Fear Street Prom Queen. This was a featured review on episode 293, and this is when the It Girls competing for prom queen at Shady Side High starts to disappear. A gutsy outsider discovers she's in for one hell of a prom night. This also takes place in 1988. So I found this to be solid. It's one that has some good themes. One is like bullying. It's very kind of in your face there. We have some minor themes, including like the curses in Shady Side and class differences, as the main character Lori is working class. She's part of like Lori Granger, that's who that is, portrayed by India Fowler. And the idea of high school drama is also prevalent. So our main character is an outsider competing for prom queen. I feel bad for how much she's bullied. But we also have Tiffany Falconer, portrayed by Fina Straza, the leader of the Mean Girls and a solid villainish. Her motivation is partly driven by pressure from her mother Nancy, portrayed by Catherine Waterston. Then we also have Megan Rogers, who's portrayed by Susanna Sohn, Lori's best friend and a horror film fan, who she's the only character that I really actually liked in this one, to be honest. So this is like a modern teen slasher that pays homage to the 1980s and 90s. The kills were creative enough and varied, including one with like an axe, one by electrocution, and a paper cutter for one. I think that the practical blood effects are solid. There's some CGI blood spray I don't love. You can clearly see that there's some inspirations here from like Scream and What You Did Last Summer, Prom Night. And there's like a poster for Demons, the Italian film, and homages to Halloween and Rosemary's Baby. Soundtrack, I like it. It feels very inspired when you're not doing the music or like the songs that are actually real songs, but we're getting some like Phantasm and 28 Days Later. And I don't have the nostalgia for the Fear Street series. I never read them growing up. This was well made, at least enough. There's some creative kills and solid acting, and this is actually be a not bad, good like gateway into slasher genre for some of the younger fans, I would say. But my rating here for Fear Street Prom Queen, I also give a 7 out of 10 too. Then at number 89, I have Somnium. That was a mini review on episode 305. This one here is an interesting blend of sci-fi and character study. So we're following our main character of Gemma, portrayed by Chloe Levine, who moves from Georgia to Los Angeles to try and become an actor. She is short on money and feels lonely, so she ends up getting hired at a trial shift at the Somnium Clinic after inquiring about a hiring sign. So this clinic is a main program, puts subjects to sleep and displays images to reinforce their determination and build confidence. Using AI to create visuals, it feels a lot like a subdued Total Recall. So there's also a darker program here called Cloud9 for people with issues like being in a coma or detached from reality. So Gemma struggles in LA, including audition rejections and loneliness, causing her to sink deeper in depression. She's really kind of worried about what her friends back home are kind of doing because she doesn't have that connection here. She begins to see an odd creature that is tall, slender, and hairless, which gains strength as her depression grows. So this follows her character development using diary flashbacks that contrast her current spiraling life with past happiness, like I said, from her high school boyfriend Hunter, portrayed by Peter Vack. So I don't necessarily know if this is a horror film. I consider it to be adjacent because of some of the elements. I do think Levine's skillful performance as Gemma was solid. Now, the filmmaking is described as effective, using lighting to reflect her journey and building tension with framing and dark scenes. The creature design, I think, is creepy and good there. I do think that this struggle to stardom narrative feels generic and doesn't do enough to set itself apart. And I was sent this as a screener, so thanks to Justin Cook there. But my rating for Somnium, I gave this one a 7 out of 10. Then at position number 88, I have Our Happy Place. This was a mini review on episode 296. Got to see this thanks to Rain Dance Film Festival. And just kind of give you some of the plot here and whatnot. We have Raya, portrayed by Raya Miles, is a lonely woman caring for her bedridden husband of Paul, portrayed by Paul Bickle, at their cabin near the woods, seemingly, during a pandemic. She is haunted by terrifying nightmares and wakes up each morning in the forest, falling deeper into freshly dug graves beneath her. As the line between dream and reality collapse, she unearths a horrifying secret buried in the woods and herself. So the couple, quarantined at this cabin near the woods, it kind of correlates to fond memories made there. Raya's isolation is enforced because bringing something home could kill her husband in his current condition. Paul is being bedridden and requires Raya to feed and clean him, often using him more like an oxygen mask, actually. So this condition is not recalled, and I'm not sure if they ever give to why, but flashbacks show he's a nice guy with a good personality. And Raya's friend Amy, portrayed by Tracy Toms, suggests that Raya break her routine to try and stop her from waking up in the woods to see if that'll break her sleepwalking. But Amy is possibly married to Raya's boss, Derek, portrayed by Eugene Bird, who helps Raya mark a pattern on a map of where she wakes up. So for some mystery stuff here, Raya notices missing posters for women at the store, and it suggests that Raya investigated what is happening. Guilt may be setting in, and she might be intentionally ignoring something she knew. So this is definitely a character study of Raya and her deteriorating mental state. The beginning is disorienting, but felt like it was working in its film to advantage to do that. Raya Miles gives a strong performance and carries most of this. Toms is solid as the best friend who helps with exposition, since Raya is an unreliable lead. The filmmaking aspects, like cinematography framing, were good, capturing the bleak, isolated winter setting near Christmas, and this successfully builds a eerie sense of dread. While the mystery may not be complex, the revelations are fairly impactful. So my rating, though, for Our Happy Place, I gave a 7 out of 10. And then position number 87 is going to be Whole. I have 2 mini reviews. One was 293, and I gave it a rewatch, so episode 308 for the second. So this is following con artist Kevin, portrayed by Marco Planton, and Mia, portrayed by Leah Kokorajic, who they seduce and rob wealthy women. The target here is Emma, portrayed by Darja Kiran, but Mia's jealousy leads her to hitting Emma with a flashlight, and the couple mistakenly believes they have killed her. They drive to a remote forest to bury the body, but Emma wakes up and escapes. Starting a deadly game of cat and mouse, this focuses on character development interactions as they navigate this ordeal in the isolated. So something that I really like here is that this blends the lines between reality and hallucination, leaving the true nature of events open to interpretation. So the isolated wooded setting may be interpreted as a potentially supernatural place or a manifestation of madness, drug-induced revelations, or enlightenment. Mia's jealousy drives her actions, and she hallucinates an evil version of herself and repeatedly returns to a tree with a carved symbol, which could be rage or a forest entity. So Kevin eats what I'm assuming at least is poisonous mushrooms, which cause him to hallucinate, and he encounters a forest entity, suggesting a theme of nature's retaliation bordering on eco-horror. And I also think that Emma's, as her drive to survive kicks in, her turning savage and resources, and finding weapons was good. So the cinematography and framing are definitely something to credit for effectively capturing the setting. The effects appear to be mostly practical, with any potentially CGI integrated seamlessly. Soundtrack and music design contribute to building the atmosphere and bringing the woods to life. I think it is a compelling horror experience from Slovenia, standing out as a psychological depth and character-driven narrative. It focuses a well-executed and thought-provoking film that benefits from a second watch for sure. So my rating here for whole, I gave a 7 out of 10 to. And then coming in at number 86, Hunting Days. This was a mini review. I watched it twice. First was on 272, then the other one was 285. And this one here is set in Canada. I wanted to make sure I knew that out there. But this follows as Nina's car run out of gas in a desolate road. We have Kevin, portrayed by Frederick Milner Zovi, rescues Nina with gas, and then Nina, I don't know which, I'm just going to say Nina from now on. But Nina and Kevin had met previous night where she was performing as a stripper for Kevin and his friends. Kevin brings Nina to the remote cabin with his friends LP, Bernard, Philippe, and Claude on a bachelor's hunting trip. Nina is allowed to stay after a vote and undergo an initiation, some hazing. Another stranger, Dubos, portrayed by Nobi Nadaye, is also brought to the cabin by Kevin. LP accidentally shoots Dudos in the shoulder. Now, he refuses to go to the hospital and his wounds worsen. The group must decide how to handle the situation. So this has definitely got some interesting type themes here. First, we have groupthink and the fragility of society when isolated, referencing Deliverance. So initially, we have some toxic masculinity, but subvert stereotypes by accepting Nina after initiation. When a decision needs to be made about Dudos, the men bring up Nina's profession and social standing, and she disagrees with them. I appreciate how this avoids over-sexualizing Nina's character outside of explaining why she ended up there. So I think that the visuals, cinematography, and framing capture the isolated feel. Director Anik Block's use of symbolism, visual storytelling, and blindfolds is appreciated. This has some visually stunning dream sequences where Nina sees herself as a witch on a pyre. I'd also give credit here to Nahima Ricci's performance as the highlight, with the rest of the cast like Marcel, Milner Zovi, Beaupre, Landry, Janos, and Ndaye also receiving positive mentions, and I know I mispronounced at least half those names, probably all of them. But I think that this one I would recommend seeing for its visual, atmosphere, and underlying concepts, and I give Hunting Days a 7 out of 10. And then another one from Rain Dance Film Festival coming in at number 85 is going to be Sharisti. This was a mini review on 299, and this takes place in India. We have 3 children of Nareev, portrayed by Orko, Kamali, portrayed by Nazia, and Mugda, portrayed by Kasab. Now, young Nareev, who dreams of being a photographer, steals a camera and then leaves the slums, preventing Kamali from coming with him. In the present, Nareev, portrayed by Sumit Thakur, is a struggling journalist photographer who wants to take artistic, grittier pictures, but the gallery wants him to shoot beauty of India. He returns to the area that he's from, where children like Jitin, Ami Rudden, who plays that person, and his sisters Nargis pick through burning landfill trash. Kamali, now portrayed by Indriya Tiwari, works as a nurse, and her brother Mugda is now Debdeep. So Nareev gets an opportunity to go to Sector K, is an area at the base of the Himalayas where people have gone missing or being driven mad by the sound called the hum. Nareev goes with a guide of Dilip, portrayed by Ravi Dujip, an old sheep herder, and his grandson to find and potentially photograph what's happening. So I like this one, particularly as a compelling and thought-provoking character study of Nareev. I think that Thakur's performance and the exceptional cinematography, which captures both the beauty of the Himalayas and the greenness of the city, this is more of a drama mystery with some folklore used effectively. It does kind of borderline into horror with some of the things they do, but I rather enjoyed this one and gave Sharisti a 7 out of 10. And then at position number 84, I have The Drowned. This was a mini review on episode 307. And the synopsis is, after stealing a priceless painting, 3 men arrive at a secluded safe house by the sea to find their 4th accomplice, Denise, portrayed by Corinne Wicks, missing, leading them to wonder if one of them is responsible or if a sinister presence at the water's edge. The 3 men are Eric, portrayed by Alan Kelton, Matt, who is portrayed by Dominic Volemi, and then we have Paul, who is Michelangelo Fortuzzi. Now, the group is later joined by a trio of women of Opal, portrayed by Laura Lemon, Noe, portrayed by Sandri Celeris, and Pixie by Lily Catalifo. So this has horror elements that there could potentially a creature here. Whatever we're getting here, though, is rooted in Greek mythology, and I originally thought it was going to be like a siren or mermaid, a little bit differently from that. Strengths: effectively build suspense with a tense atmosphere in an isolated setting and feature solid acting performances, especially from Kelton. Now, the cinematography, sound design contribute to the isolated feeling and building tension. This is slow paced. It kind of made me struggle to keep my attention. The reveal of the monster's nature relies on the audience's external knowledge of a specific painting, and I think it's a minor drawback without at least giving it just a little bit more here. But regardless, I gave this one a 7 out of 10. Then at position number 83, I have The Dead Thing. This was a featured review on episode 279. So this one's about a young woman, Alex, portrayed by Blue Hunt, who has lost in a series of meaningless connections until she falls for a charismatic and sensitive man of Kyle, portrayed by Ben Smith Peterson. Now, he conceals a dark secret that turns her affair into a dangerous obsession. So Alex meets men through dating apps like Tinder or Bumble. After a magical evening with Kyle, he ghosts her, leading her to stalk him. Alex lives with Cara, portrayed by Catherine Hughes, and works with Mark, portrayed by Joey Millen, who has a crush on her. Now, the situation changes when Alex sees Kyle with another woman and learns another secret that turns everything upside down. So this is one that I saw on Shudder. It is a modern take on dark romance and explores themes of navigating the dating world, toxic relationships, and incorporates supernatural aspects into the horror realm there. So I could connect with Alex regarding the struggles of dating, finding a genuine connection, and being ghosted. This explores toxic relationships when, Alex and Kyle meet again and his jealousy leads to violence. Also, Alex stalks Kyle, suggesting that toxic relationships is a two-way street. Hunt is great in this lead role. Smith Peterson is solid in his. The real charm here is John Carna, who plays Alex's new co-worker of Chris, who is charming and plays well with Hunt. So this is well made. The best parts are the cinematography, framing, and editing, including an early montage. The use of reflections in mirrors or windows is a highlight, as an interesting touch that feels borrowing from mythology. There's some limited effects, but practical ones were used where possible. So I don't think this is a great film, but I think it's exploring some interesting ideas and themes. So my rating here for The Dead Thing, I gave a 7 out of 10 to. So at number 82, I have Butcher's Bluff. This was a mini review on episode 280 and 294. So this is a modern take on 80s slashers. A group of students who are Roger, Nicole, and Derek attempt to make a documentary about the legendary killer, the Hogman. And this one is being portrayed by William Instone. Now, they get more than they bargained for. The Hogman is thought to be a mentally disturbed boy who escaped from a nearby institution. Now, the townspeople know the lore and tend to stay away from the woods. So I'll just go ahead and run through some of these people. I've already said, Instone, he's portraying the Hogman. Michael Fisher is my favorite character in this one. He's portraying Roger. We have Paige Steakley portraying Nicole, Jimmy Huang portraying Derek, Dakota Millett portraying Bobby, Santiago Sky is Jay, Kayla Anderson is Tina, Samantha Holland is Samantha, Paul T. Taylor is Sheriff Joe, and in the cold open we have Jeremy London as Chris, and then we also have some good cameos here like Mrs. Carpenter is Brink Stevens, Jed is Bill Oberst Jr., and Gary is Sean C. Phillips. So positives, this is feeling like it's paying homage to 80s slashers like Friday the 13th. The characters are distinct, and I enjoyed the performances, especially from Fisher. Now, this has a great setting, a cabin near the woods in a small town, impressive brutal kills, which were likely done practically. The cinematography, framing, and killer's pig mask were appreciated. My major issue, this runs too long. This should have been trimmed by 15 minutes to get it down to closer to 90 minutes. I feel like if they would, this ends with a potential setup for a sequel, making it kind of feel incomplete. But if you're a slasher fan, I would give this one a watch. I think you might enjoy it well enough. And my rating here for Butcher's Bluff, I gave a 7 out of 10 to. And then another one from Rain Dance Film Festival is going to be D4 Melody and American Nightmare. So this one is following a disturbed young man who decides his life would have more meaning if he was a serial killer. He terrorizes Los Angeles, sinking deeper into madness while trying to find meaning in the meaningless. So the narrative style here is kind of similar to like Bret Easton Ellis's American Psycho, which the lead character finds a copy in a public library box. This is presented as the diary of that lead character and making a recap of his life when he's gone. So the killer is being portrayed by writer-director of Joshua Rivera. He is obsessed with pop culture, horror films, and music. He has been clean from drugs and alcohol for 6 years, but relapses. This character is suffering from depression and could potentially be bipolar or just manic. So then there is this character of Freddy, portrayed by Sean Weiss, a reoccurring guy who torments the killer. Freddy was the killer's agent when he was a child actor. The killer claims that Freddy molested him, but the sister doesn't believe it. So then there's a teacher here of Carolyn Mitchell, who is portrayed by Carolyn Mitchell. The killer finds her along the way, and they have a deep connection. He tries to avoid her so he doesn't kill her. She works as almost like the final girl in the final act. And then we also have our main character's sister, portrayed by Brianna Wagner. She avoids talking to the killer avoids talking to the sister. He doesn't believe the claims about Freddy. So this one is an art house film, a tough one to talk about. It's a wild and surreal romp that just feels like you're inside the head of somebody with a mental disorder. This is visually stunning, some great cinematography and framing, mostly practical effects with some CGI fitting when it needed to, because it's something you can't do without it. Sound design and music were effective in building the atmosphere. Rivera is a credit here for taking on the role of the madman and having the unique insight as a writer-director. I think the acting with the rest of the cast here was, solid across the board. This is an interesting one with people who have issues or political topics or just manic and hard to follow narratives. If you have any of these type of things, I would avoid this one, but I thought this was kind of just a weird little film that I was glad to check out, and I gave it a 7 out of 10. And then another one from Nightmares Film Festival is The Curse. This one is following our lead character, this would be a featured review then on episode 311, but we're following the lead character of Riku, portrayed by Yukino Kaizu, as she attempts to intervene after seeing a disturbing social media post from a friend, which leads down a dark path that she is convinced there is more going on. This follows Riku as she is the next target after her roommate is cursed, leading her to Taiwan with her ex-boyfriend, played by Yu, to seek help from an exorcist and the sister of the original cursed person. So this is presented like a new take on J-horror, focusing on social media as a way for a spirit to target people. Has elements like Ringu, The Grudge, Shudder, and The Wailing. So this is a modern twist on J-horror with some of the tropes by centering on the influence of social media. I think the story is compelling. Through the elements can feel cheesy at times. It successfully builds tension and delivers violent, bloody, and gross out scares. I think it's kind of a commentary on internet trolls, to be honest. So filmmaking aspects, including cinematography and sound design, are solid. I think the performances by Kaizu and Yu are kind of leading the way here. I have some gripes about for more character development for the lead, and maybe get rid of some of the uneven CGI, but still enjoyed this one, and I gave it a 7 out of 10. Then at number 79, inside that top 80 here, I have Our I Heart Willie, which was a mini review on episode 277 and 292. So this one, we're following a group of friends as they step into a deadly mousetrap where pure evil seeks to harvest their skin in a horrific story of the most beloved cartoon character of modern times. So this one is made, of course, it's one of the Steamboat Willie films as it entered public domain. The killer is a Steamboat Willie character who is inspired by a deformed mouse boy thought to have died at 16 in a fire. Our main group that we follow is Nico, portrayed by Micho Camacho, Daniel, portrayed by Sergio Ragatol, Nora, portrayed by Maya Luna, and then Jess by Daniela Porres. Now, they visit the home of Willie to film an episode for their YouTube channel about exploring haunted locations. Nora is an expert on the lore of Willie. So the killer wears a Mickey Mouse mask with the mouth sewn shut, mirroring a variation of the cartoon shown in the beginning. The killer also wears shorts with mouse buttons like Mickey, and then Vaughn, who plays that character, brings some good size to that role. So some of the standouts here, the cinematography, framing, and sound design. I also like the use of the Flight of the Valkyries in the soundtrack. I do wish we would see a little bit more of the kills on screen. This features more like torture, but doesn't show that either. I think this is one that, if you want to see one of the more, these things coming into public domain and everything like that, it's better than I expected. Not cheesy and taking a standard approach. Luna was a standout for the acting performances, and I gave I Heart Willie a 7 out of 10. And then at number 78, I have Wolfman. This is, of course, the one from this year. This was a featured review on episode 273 and a mini review on 286. So this begins in 1995, detailing a hiker going missing and an illness that the indigenous people of the area call face-like. So the opening section features Grady Lovell, portrayed by Sam Yeager, and his son Blake, portrayed by Zach Chandler, living off the grid in a remote farmhouse. Grady is hard on Blake, emphasizing caution when hunting before they're chased by the animal from the synopsis, which is kind of wolf-like. The story then jumps 30 years into the present, where we have the adult Blake, portrayed by Christopher Abbott, as he is a writer caring for his daughter Ginger, portrayed by Matilda Firth. Now, Blake and his wife Charlotte, who is Julia Garner, who's a journalist, are experiencing marital difficulties. After learning his long-missing father has been pronounced dead by the state of Oregon, Blake suggests a trip to the old house to reset. Blake, Charlotte, and Ginger are driven off the grid location by Derek, portrayed by Benedict Hardy, who warns them not to be out after dark. Now, a beast standing like a man appears, causing Blake to swerve, crash the truck, and injure himself. While getting his family to the house for temporary safety, the injury to Blake might be an infection, and there might have been more than just glass that cut. So I think I've seen all 4 of Lee Winnell's films because he's the director here, and this is the second update to a Universal classic that he's done following The Invisible Man. So this shifts focus from Blake as the lead to Charlotte becoming becoming the main character and the protector of their daughter after Blake is attacked and begins to change. That's kind of important because this is a redemption story for her and features a switch in their parental roles with a commentary that it's never too late to change and that being a parent requires stepping up. Commentary in the film includes the idea that Blake became his father despite trying not to, and reading about breaking gender roles being forced by circumstances, and then the obvious theme of a beast within us all. I would consider this to be like a modern gothic film due to the cinematography, framing, and use of shadow, soundtrack, and design. It shifts from a monster movie to a body horror film with creature elements. The Wolfman's look has a different but practical, and the body horror elements were cringe-inducing. The complaint that I've seen is that it's too dark, and I see that as intentional, showing what Charlotte and Ginger see while hiding and contrasted with Blake's distorted vision in the dark after he loses his humanity. I think the acting performances, particularly from Garner and Abbott, were highly rated in my opinion, and then Ben Pendergast bringing the creature to life was good. I think this is a different take on the Wolfman concept, and I like that. I think the setting is also good, and the commentary and acting work. Gripes include here the pacing issues around the middle, and I think the title might draw too much criticism for why it's not as well liked. My rating, though, for Wolfman, I gave it a 7 out of 10. And then the penultimate spot on this section of the list is going to be Death of a Unicorn, which was a featured review on episode 288. So this one here, we follow a father who is Elliot, portrayed by Paul Rudd, and his daughter Ridley, portrayed by Jenna Ortega. They accidentally hit and kill a unicorn when heading to a weekend retreat. The father's billionaire boss, Odell, portrayed by Richard Grant, at the retreat wants to exploit the unicorn's miraculous curative properties. The unicorn's blood is found to have healing properties when Ridley's acne clears up and Elliot's allergies disappear, and he no longer needs glasses to read. The group decides to see if the unicorn's blood can cure Odell's cancer. The creature was not as dead as they initially thought, and it wrecks a car. The group realizes that only a finite amount of the curative substance, which leads them to selling it to the highest bidder. Other unicorns show up later to get their revenge. So I appreciate the practical effects, cinematography, and framing. The practical effects were well done, especially when the other unicorns show up and the film becomes just a bloody mayhem. This offers a commentary on the corruption of humanity, capitalism, and the for-profit medical profession. Now, I didn't love all the CGI, but understood it was likely necessary to bring the mythical creatures to life. The acting performances from the main cast here of Ortega, Rudd, we have Will Poulter, Grant, and Taya Leone were strong points. And I think that this is just a fun horror film with a good balance between whimsical, absurd premise and being played kind of straight at times. So my rating, though, for Death of a Unicorn, I gave a 7 out of 10. And then the last film for this section of the list at number 76 is Scurry, which was a mini review on 309. So this follows two strangers, Mark, portrayed by Jamie Costa, and a woman he thinks is Sarah, portrayed by Emilia. Now, they become trapped underground when the city is attacked by a monstrous threat. Badly injured with limited resources, they must navigate a treacherous, narrow tunnel to find an exit. So Mark's entry, he calls his wife and he falls into a hole caused what he thinks is by an earthquake. After a crashing helicopter forces him to free himself from the collapse and then moves deeper into the tunnel. He finds a woman, and there's a purse with a wallet bringing the name of Sarah and a camera. He uses the camera for light and revives an unconscious woman he mistakes to be that woman. So she has a leg injury, scoffs at Mark's belief that it was an earthquake as she knows more than about what's going on. They eventually realize that creatures broke out of the earth, possibly the source of the quakes from earlier in the week, and they are behind, forcing them to keep moving, So then the two characters butt heads due to the earthquakes, belief, and lack of trust, which causes friction. This is a continuous obstacle like flooding, a collapsed tunnel, and their initial stories might not be entirely true. They ultimately need each other to survive. So this falls into a tense creature feature experience. Gave me vibes of Cloverfield and The Tunnel. It's not found footage, but Mark uses a camera for a light source and night vision. It is kind of using that one-shot aesthetic effectively with clever cinematography and screen darkening to hide cuts. There's a claustrophobic underground setting and diegetic sound enhance the atmosphere. The monsters are a blend of practical and CGI effects. I praise that despite some of the noticeable computer moments that did take me out of it. This jumps right in, and we have an invasion where the characters, the audience, know nothing about the monster, so there's that terrifying atmosphere. And this is essentially a two-person show featuring two strong performances from Costa and Emilia. Now, their characters' fluid shifts between protagonist and potential villain roles are intriguing, raising questions about the truth of their backstories. Supporting characters include people at the beginning and soldiers at the climax. So my rating, though, for Scurry, I gave this one a 7 out of 10. So I'm going to go ahead and go rest my voice really quick as I get you over then to 75 through 51 of my top horror films from 2025.
Are you tired of the coffee crash? Still jittering an hour after your morning cup of coffee? Listen, I used to drink 5, 6, 7 cups a day to just keep going. The anxiety, the stomach pains, the afternoon crash, it was brutal. Then I discovered Rise Coffee, and everything changed. Rise has less than half the caffeine as regular coffee, but here's the magic. It contains 6 organic mushrooms, including cordyceps, lion's mane, and others that naturally sustain your energy without the jitters or crash. We're talking sharper focus, immune support, better gut health, and calm, sustained energy that lasts all day. Plus, it's organic, vegan, and has 0 added sugars. Unlike other mushroom coffees, Rise is USA grown in California. A full spectrum of mushrooms per serving that actually works. Here at Pod Nation, we only partner with brands we actually believe in, and Rise Coffee is the real deal. Head to risesuperfoods.com and use promo code PODNA15 for 15% off your order. That's PODNA 15 for 15% off. Ditch the crash, fuel your day the right way with Rise Coffee.
And welcome back. So this part of the list here is going to start my top 75, and I'm going to begin with a TV show, The Trouble with Tessa. This is a mini review on everything that's like 312, 313, and 314. I actually ended up doing a full review that I got posted out there as well. But this is a television series with episodes about 20 minutes long each, total in 2 hours in length, and it's very compelling and binge-worthy in my opinion. So this follows a disgraced documentarian of Tessa Fowler, portrayed by Katrin Nugent, who rents a rural house to escape the city. The town has a strict curfew that requires her to be inside as a siren sound. She finds a box of old tapes in the basement, including one to capture a murder on it. The tapes were recorded by a previous resident named Amelia, who is Casey Hartnett. Now, Tessa investigates the town's dark past and secrets. Her flight to the town was due to a lawsuit against her and her partner by a politician after she released incriminating information during a previous documentary, which is kind of interesting because he was funding this thing and then they found some stuff that was shady. So Tessa Fowler, she's the protagonist who is fleeing the city, like we were saying, begins the investigation into this murder. Then she has a neighbor here of Betsy, who is portrayed by Maria Wolf. Then there's Amelia, as we were saying, the previous resident of Tessa's rental house who recorded the tapes. There is Simon, portrayed by Tasso Mikarolis. This is the person who shows Tessa the rental house. And there's Aaron Slotsky, portrayed by Dennis Kahlo. This is actually Tessa's producer, and he's actually a producer and writer of this show. He kind of worked a lot behind the scenes. There's Sue Ann, portrayed by Tina Ann Brock, who's a local librarian. Freddie Crane, portrayed by Alexander Platt. A name Tessa gets while looking into some old newspapers, and this person becomes very important to the rest of the investigation. There is Dave, portrayed by Cordell Jomi, who is the local pub tender, and then there is Robert, portrayed by John R. Smith Jr., a local Tessa encounters at the pub, and then there's the Bone King. Now, in this one, this is portrayed by Corey Deanne Crowley, an entity from local folklore. So I think this successfully blends mystery and folklore. It features elements of an isolated community, thriller, a tight-knit community that doesn't like Tessa's investigation, and the tension of this mandatory curfew. Local folklore surrounds the entity called the Bone King, who is said to live in the surrounding woods. So I actually really think that Nugent's performance is great here. This ability, or the series' ability to hook you, and ultimately, I'm hoping it gets a second season because I rather enjoyed this one. And I gave The Trouble with Tessa overall a 7 out of 10. Then at 74, I have Daydreamers. This was a mini review on episode 286. This is a foreign horror film from Vietnam about vampires. So the legend here is that we have ancient vampires that were hunted in Europe and they fled to Asia about 400 years ago. Now to survive, they decided not to feed on humans to blend in, maintaining peace for years. Now this revolves around a younger group of vampires attempting to reclaim supremacy, breaking the rule to not kill humans. The central characters are brothers Nahat, portrayed by Tran Nguk Vong, and Marco, portrayed by Thuinen Nguyen. So Nat is a reluctant vampire who wants to be human again and falls for a human person named Ha, portrayed by Trin Theo. Now Marco has to embrace being this monster and falls in love with the vampire leader Treo, who is portrayed by Chi Pu. Now the term Daydreamers refers to a group of vampires who wants to walk in the sun again. And then we have some key themes here of class, showing that both rich and poor vampires and humans. So I thought this was a solid first film that I've ever seen from Vietnam. This is wild and visually well done, with some great cinematography and framing that captures the natural beauty of the setting. Borrows from different sources and has a style that feels like Hong Kong Chinese films, with people like flying around and doing action stuff. I like the acting, the social commentary, and the use of mirrors to show that vampires don't cast reflections. Runs too long. It's around 2 hours. I would recommend that if you want to see a little bit different take on vampires, because this is, foreign, as I was saying. And I end up giving Daydreamers a 7 out of 10. And then coming in at number 73, I have Cloud. This was a mini review on episode 301. So this one, we're following our lead character of Ryusuke Yoshi, who resells goods online under false pretenses to make a profit. He declines a promotion from his factory boss, who is Takimoto, portrayed by Yoshi Arakawa, because his ambition is to resell full-time and not work a normal job. Now Yoshi quits and then moves to the country to become doing what he's doing here full-time, hiring Miyaki, who is portrayed by Amami Okiyama, as his assistant. Now his former boss Takimoto shows up at his new house. There's some mental illness there, and it's later revealed as he plays a larger role in the story. But Yoshi's girlfriend, Akiko, portrayed by Kotoni Furukawa, moves in with him, but soon becomes bored and afraid after a car engine part is thrown through their window. We also have a police officer here of Hojo, portrayed by Toshihiro Yashabi, who starts asking questions when Yoshi goes to the police. Miyaki discovers an online forum of people, including Soyochi Tonoyama, who is portrayed by Masaki Akihori, who are looking for Yoshi due to dishonest reselling in his practices, stuff like that. So this one here, not necessarily a horror film, but it's definitely psychological, and it kind of borders into some of that stuff. It's more of a dark drama, and it explores consequences of Yoshi cheating people and selling fake items. We also have this character of Yoshi exploring capitalism as his attempt to circumvent the system. I would say that Masuki Suda's performance as Yoshi is something that was great and stoic, showing a character who is calculating but becoming increasingly panicked. I would also say Okiyama's portrayal of Miyaki is there because of starting off aloof and becoming more calculating. I think that the cinematography and framing are great, expertly capturing how Yoshi's life goes, from being in cramped Tokyo to constrained into the country as people seek revenge. My biggest issue, this runs too long as well. At just over 2 hours, I think it could be trimmed under 105 minutes and just work a little bit better, but still enjoy this one. I think it's kind of an interesting, especially if you want more of a crime grounded type film here, and I give this one a 7 out of 10 as well. Then at number 72, we have Coyotes. This was a mini review on episode 308, and this one is about a family that is trapped in their Hollywood Hills home and fighting for survival while being caught between a raging wildfire and a pack of savage coyotes. So our main family that we follow here is Scott, portrayed by Justin Long, the husband and father who is an aspiring comic book writer. His wife is Liv, portrayed by Kate Bosworth. Now, she's bothered that Scott is home, but not necessarily present. And then we have Chloe, their daughter, portrayed by Mila Harris. And I will also say some other people here. We have Kat, portrayed by Catherine McNamara, who is seen at the very beginning of the film, sets everything up there. Then we have Devin, portrayed by Keira O'Donnell, an exterminator called because the family is hearing noises in the wall. Then there is Trip, portrayed by Norbit Leo Butz, who is an odd neighbor that is friends with our main guy here, Scott. There is Julie, portrayed by Brittany Allen, an escort who accidentally shows up at the family's door. There is Tony, portrayed by Kevin Glynn. Actually, Trip, now I'm thinking about, is the one who invites Julie, and things get messed up there. Tony, who is portrayed by Kevin Glynn, is Scott's friend and a neighbor who was actually attacked by coyotes. And there's Sheila, portrayed by Norma Navinia, who is Tony's wife. So I watched this one because Justin Cook reached out with a screener, and this is an animal attack film. I'm a sucker for these type of ones, and when it's done correctly, at least. This one feels similar to Crawl, the setting being moved to Florida from Florida to California. The coyotes replacing alligators in a wildfire instead of a hurricane. I appreciate the premise of Scott, an unhandy homeowner facing survival challenges with his family, because I was unhandy when I first moved into my home, and I've kind of had to learn things in order to save money. So this one has slow pacing, which is lessening the urgency with this fire threat. I do like the brutal attack sequences with the animals, the realistic-looking blood, and the visual effects of those animals as well. The carelessness of people who leave doors unlocked and allowing coyotes to sneak in is terrifying. I also think the cinematography, framing, sound design, and music are fitting for what was needed for the atmosphere. I think the acting for the most part is solid across the board, especially Long and Bosworth as the married couple. That add realism to the story. And for me, I just think this is an effective animal attack film, despite the pacing issues, and the brutal attack sequences and the strong acting definitely elevate with the tension. So my rating here as well is going to be a 7 out of 10. And then ending out here for this part is going to be Predator Badlands. This was a mini review in episode 315. This follows a young predator, or their actual race is the Yutja. This one's name is Dek, who is an outcast from his clan and considered a runt by his father. To avoid execution for his failure to be a great hunter, he chooses to hunt the Kalisk, a creature feared to be even by his father, actually. His journey takes him to a lethal planet, Genna, where he reluctantly forms an alliance with Thea, a synthetic human gathering data for the Weyland Yutani Corporation. So Dek, who's our runt protagonist, I appreciate the fresh perspective here of this Yutja trying to to prove himself against his father's harsh expectations, which deviates from the typical narrative where the predator is always in control. This planet of Genna is kind of like a lethal like Australia, where various deadly plants, animals, and monsters adding tension from the environment. Weyland-Yutani Corporation. This is noted as like an Easter egg for fans tying in with the theme of capitalism, which is a paramount of the Alien franchise where this company is from, actually, that series. So this team has sent synthetics, including Thea and her counterpart Tessa, both being played very well by Elle Fanning, to explore the wildlife. So deviation from lore here. This one, usually like I was saying, the Yutjas are typically supposed to hunt alone, making Dek's alliance with the synthetic Thea a minor deviation from the Yutjas' typical code. I think the acting, though, especially from Demetrius Schuster, Kolo Montangi's performance as Dek, and Fanning's double duty as Thea and Tessa, I think those were both great. The cinematography, framing effects, a mix of CGI and practical, and the attention to the Yutja language are also something that I think were strong points. So I think this is compelling and a fresh addition to the franchise. I think it effectively blends Weyland-Yutani's corporate greed with the lethal environment of this planet, and I think that if you like this franchise and you just kind of shut your brain off, roll with what they're doing here, don't expect a whole lot. I think it's kind of a fun one that does some good things, and I just enjoyed it for what it was. So my rating here for Predator Badlands, I gave it a 7 out of 10. Then the last film for the 70s is going to be Drained. This was mini reviews on episode 274 and 288. This is about Thomas, portrayed by Rodrigue Aldenton. I might be mispronouncing it, I do apologize, but an unemployed artist who is captivated by the alluring Rhea, portrayed by Madalena Belleru Ion, who conceals her true nature. Their intense affair takes them to a sinister turn when Thomas becomes gravely ill. Rhea is revealed to be a vampire, and the title Drained acts as a double entendre, referring to her draining of Thomas's blood, as well as financially and physically. So I got this as a screener thanks to Kim from Dominion 3, and Level 33 Entertainment is putting this out. I appreciated this as like a horror romance, but not like a romance in the traditional sense. This is almost codependency is what we're looking at here, but the concept of vampirism as an allegory, similar to how it's been used for drugs since the 90s, but you're getting that added layer of Thomas's infatuation with Rhea. I found the acting to be solid across the board, including Aldington and Thomas, Ion as Rhea, Conway as John, and Dixon as Thomas's mother. The cinematography, framing, practical effects were all good. I think my biggest issue here, the computer effects, like the CGI, didn't look great. This runs a bit long and meanders near the end. I still recommend this as kind of like it's a back-end potentialist. As you could tell, it definitely fell very far down to 70 for me. I think it was kind of a fun little film for what it was. It's exploring some interesting things, doing some things in different ways and everything like that, and I gave this one a 7 out of 10. Then coming in at number 69. Nice, is going to be Clown in a Cornfield. This was a featured review on episode 294 and a mini review on episode 309. So this is set in a fading Midwestern town of Kettle Springs where Frendo the clown, a symbol of past success for the corn syrup company Baypin, reemerges as a terrifying scourge. The events of the film are bookended by a flashback to 1991 party. There's a party going on back then near a barn and a cornfield where two people are killed by somebody in a clown suit after finding a Jack-in-the-Box toy. So our main character here is Quinn Maybrook, portrayed by Katie Douglas, and her father, Dr. Glenn, portrayed by Aaron Abrams, who moved to Kettle Springs after Quinn's mother and Glenn's wife passed away from an overdose. Dr. Glenn becomes a family doctor as he could no longer work in the emergency room. Quinn joins a group of popular but problematic teenagers led by Cole Hill, portrayed by Carson McCormick, whose great-grandfather founded Baypin, and whose father, Arthur, portrayed by Kevin Durant, is the mayor. So the teens also include Tucker Lee, portrayed by Ao Zolenki, Ronnie Queen, portrayed by Verity Marks, Janet Murray, portrayed by Cassandra Potenza, and Matt by Alexander Martin Deacon. Now, they're viewed as troublemakers. They make horror videos of them killing their friends using Frendo, the Baypin mascot, as a scary figure. Now, the older generation, including Sarah Dunn, portrayed by Will Sasso, and Mr. Vern, portrayed by Bradley Zawatsky, are hard on the teens because their videos are followed by the burning down of a mill causing job losses. So teens start to target by a real killer clown who's hiding Jack-in-the-Box toys around. So I think this is solid enough with, being a modern update to the 1980s slasher. It excels in the small town atmosphere and generational conflict. The small town setting, struggling local economies, and friction between modern teens and older citizens is appreciated. Katie Douglas, I think, excels as the lead. The filmmaking aspects feature strong practical effects with minimal CGI, an unsettling look of Frendo the clown, and inventive kills using farm tools like the reaper, pitchfork, bow and arrow, chainsaw is disorienting with the cornfields. Minor confusing elements exist regarding the town's secrets, but I can also kind of just roll with things at times. But for me, I gave Clown in a Cornfield a 7 out of 10 as well. And then I'm going to go real quick here because Marshmallow is coming at number 68. This is one I just covered on the previous episode, so I will direct you over there to check out a mini review for that one. And that one also was a 7 out of 10 though. And then coming in at number 67 is going to be Pig Hill. So I did a mini review of this one on episode 304. I also got to see this at the Gateway Film Center because this was shown at Nightmares Film Festival as well. So the synopsis is we are following Carrie, portrayed by Rainey Qualley, who is obsessed with the local legend of the pig people of Pig Hill, revolting creatures who breed and cause havoc. Her interest intensifies as the 10th woman, Emily Barton, portrayed by Emila Kotos, goes missing. Carrie begins writing a book about the people of the hill and the 10 missing women. She later discovers the truth of the pig people after she is taken and plunges into a nightmare. So this explores the idea of like weird hybrid pig people living in the wilds of the hill and plays with expectations of generational trauma. So the story features pig-like creatures who kidnap women for procreation and pleasure. I kind of get that they're trying to play up the ideas of like The Hills Have Eyes or of The Offspring. It also explores cult-like activities reminiscent of the Satanic Panic era, and things aren't as they seem. Qualley delivers a strong performance as the determined lead. Shane West's snarky role was a pleasant surprise. Shiloh Fernandez plays an overbearing, disliked character, but his performance works for that role. So for me, I think the practical effects as being brutal and effective, the cinematography and framing are noted for capturing the small town feel, and helping with realism of the effects, the sound design, and musical selections also add to the atmosphere. So this is a unique and disturbing horror experience that excels in its portrayal of the unsettling pig people lore and exploration of generational trauma. And for me, after both watches, this solidified for me as a 7 out of 10. And then coming in at number 66 is going to be 213 Bones. I actually got to check this one out from Raindance Film Festival. So this is 2 years after the opening sequence where a couple is brutally murdered by a fast figure. It then focuses on Bristol Falls College, where anthropology professor Kelly, portrayed by Colin Egglesfield, gives his students a unique exam, assembling a skeleton from loose mixed bones. The students, including Lisa, portrayed by Luna Fujimoto, Brent, portrayed by Hunter Nance, and Clyde by Mason Kennerly, make a grisly discovery. When a couple of classmates go missing, a real bone is found on a desk. The body is found in the library. They then get picked off one by one, but they must figure out who the identity of the gruesomely masked bone cruncher murderer is. Other main characters involved in the mystery include Sheriff Bracco, portrayed by Ernest Keith Walker, and Laura, portrayed by Francesca Barker McCormick. So this is a slasher film at its heart. It's set in the 90s, utilizing subtle clues like pagers, old cell phones, era-specific music, and posters and comments about being stuck in the 80s to create a nostalgic feel. And I appreciate the slow burn horror, as this film also has a sub 90-minute runtime, which I love. So this employs like a classic slasher tropes and features a solid cast. It almost has like a Scooby-Doo or a Agatha Christie feel with its mystery, especially when Candace, portrayed by Tony Weiss, accuses Clyde of being the killer. Potential victims finding like a bone before they're being attacked, which correlates with their anthropology class. The cinematography, framing, soundtrack, and design were effective. The killer's mask, which resembles like an ancient stone head, was a standout for me. The strength here with this one lies with its well-developed characters, compelling whodunit, and memorable killer design, though a limited range of gruesome kills. So my rating, though, I actually enjoyed this one, like I was saying, and I give it a 7 out of 10. And then up next here I have Don't Trip. This was a mini review on episode 315, and this one we follow our main character of Dev, portrayed by Matthew Sato, is fired by his boss, and then we have Jane, portrayed by Pell James, is sending his screenplay to a rival agency coordinator. So Dev ignores his girlfriend, Monica, who is portrayed by Olivia Royer. Now, she gives advice to create his own content, like for TikTok or YouTube. Instead, he decides on a plan to befriend Trip, portrayed by Will Sennett, the son of a powerful producer, Scott Lefkowitz, portrayed by Fred Melamed, in order to get his script to the father. So Dev encounters Trip at a party where Trip mistakes Dev for somebody in the program and asks him to attend a meeting to hide his relapse from his father. Dev is then bullied and gaslit into hanging out with Trip, making Monica frustrated. So this situation ends up changing when Dev brings up a screenplay leading Trip to invite him to a party at his dad's house, only for Dev to arrive and find nobody else is there. This examines the difficulty of getting into Hollywood and the impunity of powerful people, culminating in a horror genre when Trip finally snaps. So some of the key people here, of course, Dev, a naive yet determined writer who is struggling and seeks acceptance through the wrong channels. Trip being a nepo baby who is a convicted drug user and known delinquent, suspected of causing his girlfriend's disappearance. He is portrayed as an unhinged and volatile but potentially eccentric character. So I got this screener as an independent film here from the writer and director of Alex Kugelman. So this offers a sharp commentary on the cutthroat nature of Hollywood and the powerful elite. I think that this is compelling performances of Sato and Sennett, and this is a relevant, often uncomfortable, and an effective genre bender with a terrifying third act. And then my rating here for Don't Trip, I gave it a 7 out of 10. And then coming in at number 64, The Red Mask. This was a featured review on episode 311 because I got to check this out at Nightmares Film Festival. So this centers around a queer screenwriter of Alina Green, portrayed by Helena Howard, who is hired to write the final Red Mask slasher film. Facing pressure and death threats due to the online backlash over her being a lesbian and fears she will make the series woke, Alina and her fiance, Dietz, portrayed by Inanna Sarkis, retreat to a secluded Airbnb. The Red Mask series is a slasher franchise similar to like Halloween or Friday the 13th. The tension between Alina and Dietz, who is the sister of the Airbnb owner Jerry, is strained because Alina shared their engagement on social media, which Dietz did not want to do due to her religious father and hoping that she could break it to him before it was out to the public. So the couple is visited by uninvited guests of Claire, portrayed by Kelly Garner, and Ryan by Jake Abel, who claim to have reservations. Claire and Ryan are massive Red Mask fans and become intrigued by a game Alina and Dietz have been playing to solve the screenplay issues. The situation spirals into a deadly fight when the couples decide to play a terrifying game to figure out how to make the new film work, which becomes a competition to reenact the original's epic climax. So this is a slasher at heart, but closely resembles more of like a home invasion film like Funny Games or The Strangers due to a limited cast and setting. It's a sharp meta-horror film that offers smart critique of toxic fandom and the modern requel or legacy sequel. It is an interesting look at franchises. This film critiques and pokes fun at the idea of like a woke slasher. The strength of the film is in its effective tension building, the isolated setting, the well-portrayed dynamic between two couples, and meta-commentary in the writing. The cameos here by James A. Janis and Chelsea Rebecca were a fun addition. The notable issues that I have were like a brief scene of some poor CGI, but not ruin anything. It's just something that kind of took me out of it for a minute. But The Red Mask, I rather enjoyed this one and gave it a 7 out of 10. And then coming in at number 63 is Super Happy Fun Clown. This one is mini review episode 305. And this synopsis is a battered former wonderkin who, to escape a life of oppressed obscurity, weaponizes her obsession with clowning, serial killers, and classic movie monsters into a night of shocking infamy. The story is a character study of Jennifer, who, pushed to her limits, finds a morbid path to notoriety. It starts with a hostage situation where Detective Marshall, portrayed by Nicole Hall, demands the release of her partner Barnes, who is Matt Lacey. So this jumps back 20 years to 2004 to show our lead Jennifer, played as a child by Violet Ray, who I believe actually is the daughter of the director. As a child, she is artistic, intelligent, but has a demanding mother of Deborah Maddock, and shows an early interest in serial killers, horror movies, and a park clown. So, in the present, Jennifer, portrayed by Jennifer Seward, is working a dead-end job that she hates. She has a negative bank account and dresses up as a clown at the park for joy. Her husband, portrayed by Dan Daly, is a disbarred lawyer who stays at home. She eventually snaps due to poor treatment from him and her mother. Her soul-crushing job and her dedication to serial killers and classic movie monsters, she plans a Halloween night that she believes will grant her infamy and immortality. So this actually is a Halloween slasher film. Seward excels in her performance, portraying a character barely clinging to the sanity before breaking. She uses her subtle facial expressions and body language to convey emotion. I'd also say that Hall, Lacey, and Maddock are also effective. This has a low budget, but its solid cinematography and practical effects definitely carry this. It includes nods to horror fans, such as like the inclusion of public domain horror films like House on Haunted Hill and actors mimicking iconic monster moments. The only issue that I notably had was the repetitive nature before the kills start, which slightly hurts the pacing. Typical of slasher films, just kind of in general, just how to build things up at times. But for Super Happy Fun Clown, I gave this one a 7 out of 10. And then coming in at number 62 is No Tears in Hell. This was a mini review on episode 303, and this is set in Alaska's winter darkness where a mother and son transform their house into a nightmare, drawing people in for nefarious reasons. So this is loosely based on a Russian serial killer, Alexander Spetsev, who killed between 1991 and 1996. The text at the end of the film explains his true story basis. So these events, though, involve targeting women and children with torture and rape. So the main characters here are Alex, portrayed by Luke Baines, and his mother, Gwen Van Dam. And Alex runs a trading post and a homeless camp and lures victims by setting up robberies. The mother helps dispose of the bodies and lures victims such as Patricia, portrayed by Gabriella Westwood. The mother warns Alex that he's getting sloppy after encountering Vicky, portrayed by Tatya Marjanovic, and Trish, portrayed by Audrey Neal, who are not the homeless targets. The usual ones they go after, that is. So the character study here of Alex exploring his abuse by his father, who is Ilforia, and his mother's role in empowering him. Alex's voiceover narration attempts to justify his actions by discussing how capitalism caused the area to struggle. The film humanizes Alex slightly, though it is noted that his views on homeless victims they're like less than people. I think that the technical execution here, citing brutal, realistic effects, good cinematography and framing, and fitting sound design and music, the performances are described that I have here, like Baines. He, along with John McDonald, who played the younger version of Alex, effectively portray the tortured character. Van Damme, Marjanovic, and Neil also perform well, and the victims, just across the board, are convincingly conveying fear. So this runs too long, being over 100 minutes, and I think that if you get it down to 90, it would just run tighter and work so much better. So for me, no tears in hell, I gave this one a 7 out of 10. And then coming in at number 61, I have Saturnalia. This one here was a mini review on episode 295. I got a chance to see this one thanks to Rain Dance Film Festival. So the inspiration here is Italian giallo films from the 1970s, with the opening kill being a direct homage to Suspiria. So this one, we're following a newcomer here, Miriam Bosconi, portrayed by Sophia Anthony, to a prestigious boarding school who realizes the institution and its cruel headmistress, Miss Hemlock, portrayed by Velvet, are a front for much evil amid the disappearance of students. So this is definitely like Suspiria and like Phenomena. So Miriam lost both of her parents in a mysterious accident. She is shown around by an RA of Holden Sachs, portrayed by Dante Blake. Her roommate is Hannah Blankenship, portrayed by Amaria Dion, and she is bullied by Kathleen Brooks, portrayed by Maddie Scheip, and then Nancy Miller, portrayed by Morgan Messina. Miss Hemlock punishes students severely for breaking rules. For example, like Holden whips Hannah's legs with a riding crop because Miriam was late to a fitting. The title refers to an ancient Roman festival honoring the god Saturn, who is Kronos in Greece. The students learn about mythology, including Saturn eating his children. Miriam befriends Hannah and Holden. Students go missing, including Hannah. Miriam sees a group of older men and a mysterious person in a white mask come to the school one night, and then she tries to escape. Miss Hemlock harbors a dark personal secret. So it's an interesting watch. I recommend it as a variation on like deadly boarding school films. The acting was solid. The cinematography, framing, lighting, and effects were all done well, though the lighting felt forced at times, definitely trying to pay homage to like Italian cinema. I enjoyed the reveal of the truth of this very odd school, and I end up giving Saturnalia a 7 out of 10. And then the last film here for the 60s is going to be A Mother's Embrace, mini review on episode 306. So this one I got to see as a screener, but it came to Screenbox here. And this is set during the massive 1996 Rio storm, where firefighters attempt to evacuate a collapsing nursing home, but the mysterious residents have sinister plans. So this follows Anna, portrayed by Marjorie Astino, as an adult. So back in 73, also in Rio de Janeiro, Anna, who was portrayed at that point by Nunez as a child, and her mother, Christina, portrayed by Chandeli Braz, experience unsettling events, including Anna being given tainted milk, fainting at a carnival attraction upon seeing a fetus, and waking up in her apartment engulfed in flames and her mother unresponsive. This is a very traumatic experience, of course. So then in the present, Rio is an adult firefighter returning to work after an incident. She is part of Diaz's team with Roque, portrayed by Reynaldo Machado, and Moria, portrayed by Rafael Candio. Now, she denies that her mother's death, who she claims she was estranged from, played a role in this incident because her mother just recently passed away. So there's a nursing home here responding to a call about an unsafe place. The team is initially denied entry by the owner, Dracula, portrayed by Angela Rebello, but Ulysses, portrayed by Javier Drolis, eventually let them in. The building is decaying, the atmosphere is worsened by the odd residents and the rain. Anna discovers Ulysses' daughter, Leah, portrayed by Maria Volpe, and she sees somebody resembling her mother here. So some of the strengths: this is a compelling claustrophobic horror experience. Its strengths include claustrophobic atmosphere contained by the flooding surroundings, cinematography and practical effects highlighting the building's disrepair, sound design, music that help build the tension. The integration of themes like redemption and a haunting past is also praised. This also feels a lot like Baskin. I did want to say that, with being isolated and stuck in a place like this. So Astino, she shines as the lead, portraying a redemptive journey to succeed where her mother Braz failed. Volpe is well suited as Leah, and Drolis and Rebello effectively convey that creepy atmosphere. Despite the 90-minute runtime, the pacing felt off, as it failed to maintain full attention at times. So I think that the mother's embrace idea here, this occurs at the beginning when Christina is holding Anna in the apartment burning. Anna's attempt to save Leah in the nursing home is seen as like a redemption arc, trying to do what she felt her mother failed to. The film features a cult and a ritual and a creature feature element. We get to see tentacles pretty early on, and the reveal of the mystery here is a variation on kind of like a classic story that we would see. So my rating here for Mother's Embrace, I gave this one a 7 out of 10. And then coming in at number 59, I have Shelby Oaks. This was a mini review on episode 313. So this one is, we follow a woman, Mia, portrayed by Camille Sullivan, as she has a desperate search for her long-lost sister, Riley, portrayed by Sarah Dern. This search becomes an obsession when she realizes that a demon from her childhood might have been real. So Riley has been missing for 12 years. I think that Riley was last seen filming herself looking terrified with loud noises and barking dogs outside of her room. She actually films like a YouTube show with her friends as they do like ghost hunting stuff. So Mia's search for her sister has strained her marriage to her husband, Robert, portrayed by Brendan Sexton III. A strange man named Wilson, portrayed by Charlie Talbert, shows up and does an unspeakable act, and he has a tape in his hand labeled Shelby Oaks, and it contains unedited footage of the show that Riley was making with her friends, Laura, portrayed by Casey Cole, Peter by Anthony Baldessari, and David by Eric Francis Melagrini. So the show is called Paranormal Paranoids, and the group investigated haunted places in Ohio before disappearing in Shelby Oaks. This was a town that's kind of all but deserted now. Mia seeks out a Detective Burke, portrayed by Michael Beach, and Martin Jacobson, portrayed by Keith David, who was the warden at the prison in Shelby Oaks, for more information, and actually kind of starts to connect dots from there. So Mia connects Riley's night terrors to Wilson being locked up, which leads her to look into their childhood. This blends found footage with a more traditional narrative style, and some key themes here is like folk horror elements, generational trauma, and a missing persons case. Me and her husband are also struggling to have a baby, so something to. So this did do its Midwest premiere at Nightmares Film Festival. I didn't see it then. I actually went to the Gateway Film Center to watch it the following week because I didn't know it was coming to the center. I actually think I went and saw VHS Halloween instead. So this successfully blends found footage with traditional style. The cinematography, framing are effective, and practical effects are good. This relies on jump scares, but excels on still building atmosphere. Camille Sullivan's performance as Mia is the real star of all this. Some CGI elements fall short, and it just didn't connect with me how I was hoping to, and I gave Shelby Oaks a 7 out of 10. And then at number 58, I have The Blade Cuts Deeper. So this one was a mini review on episode 314. The synopsis that I wanted to kind of do is very short here. It says, content has consequences in this Giallo-inspired slasher. So this begins with narration from John Abbott, portrayed by John Truer, and he's a showrunner for this true crime television show. The episode discusses about a crime where a sniper dubbed the Widowmaker killed a pregnant woman. John is at a festival screening of this episode and comes out with the actor from the reenactment, Olivia, portrayed by Kristen Japp. Now, John is a jerk who is annoyed by the low turnout and kicks Olivia out of his car, forcing her to walk home because he has to go to the office to do some stuff, and it's out of his way to go to her place now. She later becomes the killer's first victim when she is seen watching her house. The killer is the same person who spooked John at the Q&A. The killer, a maniac wearing black gloves and fueled by trauma, goes to the studio where post-production is being done. And this undercurrent is like a critique on capitalism, as John's true crime show exploits real victims for profit. John is also harsh on his production team, including the head of security, Rita, portrayed by Lindsay Bennett Thompson. And then there's editor Nathan, portrayed by Saul Murphy. Other production team members of the episode are included in the artist Gil, portrayed by Lucy Renton, and writer Jackson, portrayed by James Podmore. So once again, this is a Giallo-inspired slasher that successfully blends subgenre conventions with meta critique of true crime media and capitalism. Giallo was what sparked the slasher film, so there's also that. So this has some strong points are the Giallo elements. It excels in its stylistic choice, strong cinematography, and brutal practical effects. The studio setting is fitting, which explains the killer's motivations. So some complaints that I have is it's inherently slow-paced, which is common for the subgenre, and the killer was also easy to kind of figure out as it doesn't really truly try to hide it. We have an ensemble cast that has some solid performances, with Truart being the lead, Japp Murphy, Bennett Thompson, Renton, and Podmore as a solid potential victims as well. So for me, The Blade Cuts Deeper, I give this one a 7 out of 10. And then number 57, Uncontained. I did this as a mini review on episode 280 and 296. So this one is an infected individual film, similar to like 28 Days Later, where the infected people attack others, but the overarching genre is zombies. It's set in an isolated, snowy, wooded area. It's set during a lockdown with subtle lines indicating the martial law is in place. The main character here, Dan, portrayed by Morley Nelson, is a mysterious drifter who arrives at an isolated high-tech house where a boy of Jack, portrayed by Jack Nelson, and his sister Brooke, portrayed by Brooke Nelson, are lit. Now, other characters include Donnie, portrayed by Brent Zimmerman, and his wife Melanie, portrayed by Courtney Blythe Turk, who initially stay to watch over the children. They don't really want them to, but that's what they're going to do, and then something happens there. But we have Brett Carson, portrayed by Peter O'Meara, is a villainous character who defies the lockdown to find his daughter and is hinted at leading a militia. And that daughter is, of course, Melanie. And the film blends genres starting as horror, transitioning to drama, and then tragedy, and finally into action. So I found this to be a solid independent take on the Infected film. Our writer and director here of Morley stars in this film alongside his real-life children, Jack and Brooke, and his wife, Nicole, who are all, working together here in different things, as Nicole is actually the mother to the two children in the movie. The production quality is credited with being effective cinematography, framing, and mostly practical effects. My main issue, this could be trimmed slightly to run tighter, is it goes just a bit too long. I would definitely recommend this, though, to fans of this subgenre for sure. So my rating, though, for Uncontained is going to be a 7 out of 10. And then number 56, as we start to whittle this down even more, is going to be Shaman. This was a mini review on episode 295 and 310. I got to see this one because it was a screener that I got to see from Rain Dance Film Festival, and this is the first film I've ever seen from Ecuador. So this is about a missionary family who are converting an indigenous community near a remote volcano, and it's one of those stories where she must come to terms with her own faith after her son is possessed by dark forces. So we're following Candace, portrayed by Sarah Canning, and Joel, portrayed by Daniel Gillies, missionaries who are helping a local priest of Father Meyer, portrayed by Alejandro Fajardo. So their son Elliot, portrayed by Jet Klein, is told not to enter a cave because of a curse, but goes in any way to retrieve a toy airplane. He loses his grandfather's watch inside of the cave when he flees after hearing something. A local shaman, Lisandro Morales, does not like the missionaries and still clings to their ways. Elliot panics when his mother Candace asks him about his missing watch for his confirmation ceremony, causing him to return to the cave where he is injured and sees dead guinea pigs and scorpions. Candace finds Elliot sleeping in the shaman's hut. The boy is quite ill, vomiting blood, and Candace is ready to blame the shaman for her son's state. This explores the possibility that dangerous entities could be older than Christianity being involved. So some themes here. This is a folk horror film that explores pagan ideas and the clash between new Christianity and old indigenous, pagan ideas, as the ways are split in the village. It also delves into the themes of faith, misguided anger, and the struggling to maintain public appearances. I also think that this has some strong cinematography, particularly the volcano and remote village setting. The unique shamanic religion and that features guinea pigs is actually kind of fun to kind of see play out. So the acting, especially from Canning and Klein, are solid. The unsettling sound design and effective jump scares contribute to the atmosphere. For me, though, this is a bleaker ending it's actually bleaker than I initially remembered, so I did appreciate that the second time around. So for me, though, it becomes generic and relies on unconvincing CGI when it comes to the possession type stuff. Not usually the biggest fan there for the most part. It's just hard to outdo The Exorcist. So my rating, though, for Shaman, after both viewings, I've solidified my rating here as a 7 out of 10. And then I'm going to jump over the next one. It's number 55 is Night of the Reaper. I just covered this on episode 319 as a featured review, so I will direct you over there to check that out if you want to hear more about this film. Then at position number 54 is going to be Dark Match. This was a featured review on episode 280 and then a mini review on episode 295. And this one is a small-time wrestling company, Saw, accepts a lucrative gig in a backwoods town but discovers the community is run by a mysterious cult leader with devious plans for their matches. So this wrestling company here, we have Misbehave, portrayed by Aisha Issa, the leader, a heel wrestler who has dreamed of becoming champion, and is seeing Joe, who is Mi Joan Lean, portrayed by Stephen Oak, the current main star. Then there is Lazarus Smashley, portrayed by Leo Fafard. There is Kid Humble, portrayed by Mitchell Clark. Thick and Thin, portrayed by Jonathan Leapin and Justin Lawrick, a tag team. There's Enigma, portrayed by Mo Jabari, and Rusty, who is Jonathan Cherry. Now, he runs the company. He's not a wrestler. He is more of the promoter. So some other wrestlers here, we have Kate the Great, who is Sarah Canning. There's Wicked Wolf, portrayed by Andrew Lewis, and the Bad Badger by David Mercer. The villain here, the mysterious cult leader, is a former opponent of Joe who went by the name The Prophet. Chris Jericho, real life name Chris Irvin, and he is now called the leader. So the cult's plan is he's annoyed by people thinking professional wrestling is fake, and he makes the matches to the death in a ritualistic sacrifice style, with each one corresponding to an element: wind, water, earth, inferno, and a mystery match. The leader's compound is inspired by groups, I would say, like David Koresh or like Jim Jones. So I love the concept of incorporating a cult, rituals, and wrestling. The credit here would be the atmosphere, cinematography, practical and brutal effects, the clever names of the wrestlers. The action performances were good. Og as Mean Joe Lean is stealing the show here. I also think that if you are a horror fan who loves wrestling, I would check this out. So my big issue that I had in the first watch is that the wrestling feel filmed, though they don't. It wasn't as bad the second time around. The fourth match, though, does feel rushed, and the ending felt tacked on, and I just wanted a little bit more to let it breathe and kind of do some things. It's not horrible in any stretch, but just kind of how it sits with me. But either way, I think my rating here for Dark Match has solidified itself as a 7 out of 10. And I'm also going to go brief here for number 53 as well, because I just covered this in my stretch here of the last 5 episodes. I don't want to keep, repeating myself on some of that stuff, but Dangerous Animals is next at number 53. Gave that one a 7 out of 10. Go over to 318. I did a mini review for that over there. And then the same thing is at 52 is Match. I did a featured review on that same episode. Gave that one a 7 out of 10. So go over to 318 if you want to hear more about both of those films. And then the last film for this section here is going to be Control Freak. This was a featured review on episode 281, and then a mini review on episode 297. And this is following a motivational speaker who is tormented by an unrelenting itch on the back of her head. So some of the key characters here, we have Valerie Vi Wynn, portrayed by Kelly Marie Tran. This is a lead character who is a motivational speaker, as we were saying. She is very successful and preparing for a world tour. She is married to Robbie, and Vi is secretly taking birth control despite her husband's desire for a child, and her husband is Robbie, portrayed by Robbins. Now, he works as her public relations team. He believes that her growing problem, including the itch, are due to stress. Then there's Crystal, portrayed by Kelly Johnson, is Vi's manager. She needs Vi's birth certificate to the world tour paperwork to be completed and everything like that, but Vi doesn't have it and she has to find it. So this leads her to go back to talk to her aunt Thuy, portrayed by Kyu Chin. Now this is Vi's aunt who runs a nail salon. She visits her to find the missing birth certificate. Then there is Sang, portrayed by Tone Lee, who is Vi's father, a recovering drug addict who is now a monk. Vi seeks him out at his monastery. He has an image hanging on his wall of an entity he calls the Shanxi, which bothers her. So this is where the itch in the Shanxi then. This Vi's persistent itch worsens to the point where it's bleeding. She even uses a file to try to satisfy that feeling, and she begins to wonder if there's an evil entity following her, which her father calls a Sanshi. Now, she fears demonic possession, but her doctor worries that the itch is more psychosomatic due to stress, and the entity is manifested by Stanley White Jr. as the body with Fo Kuok as the voice. So some themes here that I really like is that it explores like the character's psyche and whether her experiences are real. It functions as a character study of Vi, detailing the pressures of success and cultural expectations. Cultural aspects include familial pressure to succeed, the financial situation of her aunt, and her ignoring familial and religious duties. Elements of sexism are also present, such as Robbie feeling that Vi lies to her to help her. And then I think here that this pairs well with a 2006 film of Bug that was directed by William Friedkin, as both explore the lead's character's psyches. And then I think that this has some clever editing, which seeks Vi's motivational talks with her descent into madness, showing the duality of character. I also like the use of shadows, the use of ants, and CGI represent the evil entity. The practical effects for the entity, the sound design for the spirit's creepy voice and music. The third act contains brutal things that I found unexpected and cringeworthy. So for me, I thought this was a compelling and nuanced horror film that blends a psychological exploration with supernatural elements while maintaining ambiguity. Then this leans towards a genuine supernatural threat due to unsettling hints. And my rating here then for Control Freak, I gave this one a 7 out of 10. And then what I'm going to go ahead and do here is rest my voice, and I'm going to start to kick off my top 50 horror films for 2025.
I'm Dean, I'm the dad.
I'm Laura, I'm the mom.
And I'm Arthur, I'm the son.
And together we are...
Family Plot.
Plot Podcast is the best history podcast that we can make.
Like intellectual pancakes for the soul.
I've been called the cool dad you want to take a road trip with and learn about history from.
One of our listeners said, listen to me was like Mom reading you a bedtime story full of cool history, and I am here for it.
And one of our reviewers called me the snarky brother they wish they had.
So join us to learn some cool stuff,
to hear some fun banter and wild tangents.
And we are unabashedly LGBTQ friendly and trans positive and supportive.
And remember,
when you listen, you're our
family.
So join us and occasionally some very cool guests
for the Family Plot Podcast.
Available wherever you get your podcasts.
So let's kick off that top 50, and I'm going to start with Hard Eyes. And this is going to be, welcome back. But this is a featured review that was on 276, and then a mini review on episode 290. So this centers around the Hard Eyes Killer, or HEK, who has been stalking and murdering romantic couples on Valentine's Day for several years, striking in Boston and Philadelphia before moving to Seattle. So the opening scene here, we have a cold open where Patrick, portrayed by Alex Walker, proposes to Adeline, portrayed by Lauren O'Hara. The killer shows up, murders the photographer, and Patrick giving chase to Adeline. So the main character is Allie, portrayed by Olivia Holt, a co-worker of Monica, who is Gigi Zambado, who recently broke up with her ex-boyfriend Colin, portrayed by Ben Black. So Allie meets Jay Simmons, portrayed by Mason Gooding, a marketing savant who is brought in by her boss Carolyn Kane, who is portrayed by Michaela Watkins, to try and salvage Allie's nationwide advertising campaign that bombed. So Jay asks Allie to work over dinner. After dinner, though, Allie sees Colin with his new girlfriend and kisses Jay and gets in a car to make Colin jealous. So the HEK sees this and targets Allie and Jay, believing them to be a couple. So I think this is a fun blend of romantic comedy, rom-com and slasher, and it works well as both. It leans more into being a rom-com. The chemistry between the two leads, Allie and Jay, are great. Allie's character's trauma comes from her father passing away when she was young, making her worried about falling in love. Jay's trauma is that he gives too much in a relationship and he's left each time. So the slasher aspects are effective and a great cold open that kills that ramp up and more brutal than expected. So the killer's weapon here is a long machete and crossbow with arrows incorporated in the lore of like St. Valentine. I love that part. Cinematography, framing, and sound design are positives. This uses effective non-reliant jump scares. Other cast members include Jordana Brewster and Devin Sawa as detective investigating this killer. And then my main gripe is the killer's reveal is a little bit weak. Not a cheat necessarily, but still rather enjoyed this one, and I figured it might have been a back end of my top 25. Definitely fell much farther than that. As for Hard Eyes, I give this one a 7 out of 10. And then coming in at number 49 is The Monkey. This was a featured review on episode 278 and then a mini review on episode 293. So this follows twin brothers Bill and Hal, both played by Christian Convery, who find their father's old monkey toy in the attic, which leads to a series of gruesome deaths. The brothers try to throw the toy away and grow apart over the years. So we have a cold open here that's a lot of fun in the pawn shop where Captain P.D. Shelburne, portrayed by Adam Scott, tries to return the bloody toy, believing that he's destroyed it. The P.D., the father, never comes back, leaving his wife Lois, portrayed by Tatiana Maslany, alone with their sons. Hal, the narrator, is bullied by his brother Bill and others at school. When they find the toy, it appears broken, but Hal continues to see it, and their babysitter is the first casualty at a hibachi restaurant. After Hal wishes his brother was dead and winds up the toy, the siblings are forced to move in with their Aunt Ida, portrayed by Sarah Levy, and Uncle Chip, portrayed by our director here of Osgood Perkins, as they decide to seal and hide the toy monkey in the family well. So in the present, Hal, now played by Theo James, has distanced himself from his son Petey, portrayed by Colin O'Brien, and the mother Laura Menel, to protect them, only seeing his son once 1 week a year. So Hal's plans are derailed when his brother contacts him about their aunt's death and wants Hal to find the monkey. Bill, who is struggling with mania over the lives he has lost, may be playing with this toy, putting Hal and Petey's lives at risk. So I've read the original short story by King back in high school, that's Stephen King that is, and I was intrigued to check this out. So I actually have watched this the opening weekend it came out, and then again with my wife when it was on VOD. So this is more of a comedy than I would expect, but it hurts the tone a bit. I guess it's done by design to avoid being too dark and set it apart from the other cursed toy films. So we're getting kind of like a blend of a cursed item with Final Destination. The deaths that are from like Final Destination those are great. They're fun. So the acting is quirky and fits the tone of the film from there. So I thought that Theo James and Christian Convery as Hal and Bill at different ages were solid. So this one, I actually listened to the Average Reviews podcast ahead of like writing my second review of this one. I didn't realize that Perkins, some of the things they share about the director make me understand more of why he approached it the way. The story's absurd and it needs to be grounded a bit more, but with the present day plot and the comedy, it needs to be reined in slightly. But I think the cinematography and framing are good. It helped hide the seams of the effects, and the CGI is forgiven due to cutting away for the most part. They do use a lot of it though still. But my rating here for The Monkey, I gave a 7 out of 10. And then for number 48, I have The Damned. This was a feature review on episode 270 and then a mini review on episode 283. And this one it's set in the 19th century where a widow in an impoverished Icelandic fishing village with an impossible choice during a cruel winter after a ship sinks off the coast. So our main character here is Ava, portrayed by Odessa Young. and she is the lead character and widow. There's Ragnar, portrayed by Rory McCann, who runs the company. There's Daniel, who is Joe Cole, who is Ragnar's son. There's Helga, portrayed by Shaiben Finneran, a woman who believes an entity called the Draugr is haunting them. Now, other company members here are Henkin, portrayed by Thurgood Convery, Jonas, portrayed by Lewis Gribben, Skulky, portrayed by Francis McGee, and Aaron, portrayed by Mikael O'Glane. So this was the first film that I watched for 2025. I found it to be an interesting folk horror film and noted, the setting, cinematography, and acting, especially from Young, were the best parts. This is a slow burn and a character study. I like the filmmaker's decision here for the ending. Didn't love where it went. This one, though, I still enjoyed it, and I'm glad that I gave it another watch. I just don't like how it gives us one thing and then kind of undoes some of the things, but I gave this one overall 7 out of 10. And then at number 46, I have Bird Eater. This was a mini review on episode 295, and this one, a bride-to-be is invited on her fiance's bachelor party, but when uncomfortable details of their relationship are exposed, the night takes a feral turn. So this one is listed as horror on Letterboxd. I don't necessarily think it is in the traditional sense. It's more of like a look at toxic people and relationships, a drug-fueled nightmare, and character study. The tension is high, and this is uncomfortable and bleak, so that kind of does make it kind of fall in there. But our main characters were focusing on Louis, portrayed by Mackenzie Fernley, and Irene, portrayed by Shabana Aziz. Their relationship is toxic. It stems from a past accident where Louis got a scar around his ear and Irene stopped driving. Louis also gives Irene a pill at night, which she passes out from. A comment that I was made about Louis might only be marrying her so she can get her visa to stay in Australia. So for me, the cinematography, framing, and sound design are highlights. This is a surreal, and that also helps contribute to that atmosphere. This is a well-made one overall, but for me, this one's challenging and divisive. I credit the acting here of Fernley and Aziz for bringing their characters to life. There's also just weird things that kind of happen between the people here where buttons are pushed, things are said, things just get kind of weird and everything like that. But if what I say, it's hard to kind of talk about because it's more about just kind of seeing these interactions and everything. I think if you sounds interesting, give this one a watch. I actually gave Bird Eater, this is going to be a bump up in rating here, so I gave this a 7.5 out of 10 after both watches. And then at number 46, I have Loner. This one I got to see from Raindance Film Festival. So this one is an inspiring vlogger who goes on a wilderness retreat to a cabin in the woods and is held captive by an ancient natural force. So that character that we're following is a main guy here of Angus Maddock, portrayed by Charlie Robb. Now, he won a trip to a cabin in the woods in the UK after spamming an Instagram account. Angus is out in the woods to take a break from social media and is struggling with a tragedy. It looks like the death of his girlfriend or somebody that he wanted to be his girlfriend, something along those lines. So he sets up cameras to vlog about surviving in the wilderness, but he's not really good at the survival skills. On his way to the cabin, he passes an Eve Compton, portrayed by Kat Johns Burke. Now, the dark elements begin when Angus hears spooky things like breathing and screaming and growling while recording at night. Eve bangs on the door at one of these evenings, begging to be let in, saying something is after her, but Angus, terrified, tells her he can't, and she runs into the darkness. Angus later finds blood on leaves, strange rocks, and Eve's backpack, and his axe, food, and cabin are ransacked. Weird things keep happening. His drone malfunctions when he tries to fly a note out, and finds a book that might be aligned with there might be an entity living in these woods. So this is an interesting little found footage film. It's, a character study of our lead Angus, showing his descent into madness from grief, isolation, and guilt after making this tough decision. This feels very inspired by the Blair Witch Project and the lore that the series develops, that is. So for me, Rob's performance as Angus he makes him likable and funny. The filmmaking is effective with great cinematography, framing, and sound design that help to build the atmosphere. The sound design also includes real nature sounds mixed in with unnerving, unexplained ones. I think the potential supernatural angle and folk horror vibe, and this allows the viewer, though, to come up with their own conclusion. So for me, this is, if you like a slower burn, I would recommend this one. And yeah, this one, like I said, rather enjoyed, and I gave Loner a 7.5 out of 10. And then coming in at position number 45 is going to be Your Host. This was a mini review on episode 304. This one stars Jackie Earle Haley. Just want to say that there. But the synopsis: 4 friends are trapped in a sadistic game show and are forced to outwit a twisted serial killer while racing against time. Every move they make brings them closer to either freedom or a gruesome fate. So this is definitely taking inspiration from the Saw franchise for like torture for a reason aspect and using like a game show narrative. I like incorporating that aspect into it. It reminds me of another one that I watched last year as well. So for our host here, Barry Miller, portrayed by Haley, is a former game show host who is now seeking revenge. He has a standout performance. So the friends that are the main cast that are being tortured are James, portrayed by Jamie Flatters. The jerk of the group, it's his father's cabin that they're at in the beginning. There's Anita, portrayed by Ella Ray Smith. She's the lead. She seems nice, and Matthew has a crush on her, and Matthew is David Angland, who's the nice guy. He's got some shocking reveals, though. And there's Melissa, portrayed by Joelle Ray. And the initial victim to kind of set the stage is Jake, portrayed by Tom Clancy. So this is a compelling and brutal horror film. The filmmaking, I think it's well made and effective, mostly practical effects, lightly enhanced by CGI. The warehouse basement setting with the grunge lighting is excellent. I think that this has some good pacing as the story's revelations kind of get revealed. The ending, I like it for its brutal nature, and the punishment made me cringe in the best way possible. And then this exposes like the dark secrets of characters, giving them increased moral ambiguity as we go on and things kind of get revealed. So the backstory of the host is heartbreaking, but also states the narrative. It kind of pushes this like slippery slope narrative that I don't necessarily know if it works in this day and age at this time, but I'll digress on that. So for me, I gave Your Host a 7.5 out of 10. Then I'm going to go very brief here with number 44, which is the parenting, because I did a mini review on episode 320, so I'll direct you over there if you'd like to hear more thoughts about that one. But I did give the parenting a 7.5 out of 10 as well. And then at position number 43 is going to be 28 Years Later. This was a feature review on episode 298 and then a mini review on episode 307. So this is set 28 years after the rage virus hit the United Kingdom, which has been quarantined. Different European countries' navies have successfully patrolled the waters to contain the infection, allowing life to go on for survivors on a small Scottish island. So this follows 12-year-old Spike, portrayed by Alfie Williams, who lives with his parents Jamie, portrayed by Aaron Taylor Johnson, and Isla, portrayed by Jodie Comer. Isla suffers from severe mood swings and confusion. Jamie plans to take Spike to the mainland to teach him scavenging, which upsets Isla because she thinks he's too young. And the mainland mission reveals secrets, wonders, and horrors as both the infected and other survivors have changed and mutated. So the infected evolution. So these have evolved and now kind of have like bloated types, insect foraging crawlers, the familiar thin type, and then these new intelligent, dangerous leaders called elf. So the survivors are isolated on a Scottish island that can be accessed only by a causeway or like a land bridge at low tide. They have devolved into almost like a medieval society within the quarantine zone. So we have Spike, who is Williams, a 12-year-old who only knows like post-apocalyptic existence. There's Jamie, portrayed by Taylor Johnson, who is his father, is a boisterous but human and makes a decision later on that he ends up regretting. Isla, who is portrayed by Comer, is Spike's mother, who is dealing with an unmanageable ailment that we'll learn about more as things go on. There's Sam, portrayed by Christopher Fulford, an older islander who reveals the fire Spike sees belongs to an eccentric doctor. Then there's Jimmy, who is portrayed by Rocco Hayes, and the child in the opening scene does, that is. His father's a local priest who gives him a rosary. Other supporting characters are Ralph Fiennes as an odd, disconnected character. There's Edvin Rudding as Eric, and a cameo by Jack O'Connell. So what I love here is the world build. I love that they have this infection has been contained to the UK. That was effective. Unlike what was expected with the prior film of 28 Weeks Later, this contrasts older characters with a teen who only knows this post-apocalyptic world. And for me, I think this is it's a worthy continuation that delivers a compelling and expanding narrative. It excels in its ambitious world building, the evolution of the infected, and the strong family dynamics. It stumbles for some of the stuff, though. There's some stylistic choices and some jarring comedic ending. Editing also felt like it was set up for the next film only, without sufficient resolution for this one. Despite some minor issues, it's an immersive atmosphere, solid performances, and intriguing new threats, making this one a recommendation. If you're more like the dedicated fans, I am kind of curious to see where things go, so I will say that. But I end up giving 28 Years Later a 7.5 out of 10. And then at number 42, we have The Draft. This is a mini review on episode 307, and this one here I got to see it as a screener when it was coming to Screenbox. So this is about 5 college students who spend their weekend at an old remote Dutch villa. The group has survived a battle of wits against unseemingly undefeated almighty terror. The group includes Bundi Murat, portrayed by Heather Chaliz, who is their driver, Wati, who is Anastasia Hergozova, who is in the front seat with him, and then there's Ani, portrayed by Putri Anjani, Bundi's girlfriend. There's Amir, portrayed by Wiener Waja, who is recording everybody on camera, and then there's Ewan, portrayed by Andin Abdul Hakim, the bearded character. So upon arriving, they meet Mang Da Ding, who is Ernata Kusama, who stays in a room near an old well. He's kind of like the caretaker here. So this place has no electricity. Overnight, Bundy is stabbed in the eye, which Ani claims she did not do. The car has all flat tires when they try to flee. And then this starts as a cabin in the woods feel, but shifts to a group. It actually shifts as the group, particularly Amir, try to figure things out. So for me, this plays with it blends familiar genre tropes with meta commentary. It explores the theme of like fate versus free will. Amir, an inspiring director and horror film fan, points out elements of Indonesian horror similar to films like The Queen of Black Magic or Satan's Slaves. This also feels inspired by meta horror films like New Nightmare, Scream, or like Cabin in the Woods. Cinematography, framing, and sound design are effective here as it creates good atmosphere. The effects appear to be mostly practical or seamlessly use CGI. The cast, I would say, is limited. They perform well. And my favorite, though, would have to be Winner Waja portraying Amir and Adnid Abdul Hakim portraying Iwa. So for me, though, this one just kind of goes off the rails a bit in kind of the best ways possible, but I end up giving this one a 7.5 out of 10. And then for number 41, I'm going to go very brief here because it's actually a mini review earlier on this episode of Cannibal Mukbang that I gave this one a 7.5 out of 10. So yeah, go back to the mini reviews if you would like to hear a little bit more. And then number 40 here. The Invisible Half. This was a mini review on episode 295 and 312. This is one that I got to see thanks to coming to Rain Dance Film Festivals. I got screeners for it and everything like that. But the synopsis is that we are following Elena, portrayed by Lisa Sierra, who is a half-Japanese high school girl struggling with her identity. She discovers that she's being watched by a monster that can only be seen through her smartphone and hear through her earphones. So some of the key themes and plot points. There's some identity and bullying here. Elena, who is part British, lives in Japan and deals with identity issues and bullying, being called a gaijin, who is a foreigner or outsider. So technology in this entity it effectively uses technology as the entity is only audible through a smartphone and earpiece. The entity's face is wrapped up in bandages similar to an appearance like a mummy. Elena's mother cracks her daughter's phone screen, which foreshadows potential danger. So then Elena, portrayed by Sarah, is a stoic character who conveys depression and alienation. There's Akari Yamamoto, who is portrayed by Miyu Okuno, Elena's classmate who is fascinated by British culture, but her insecurities create fiction with their friendship. Then there's Nayan Ito, portrayed by Runa Hirasawa, a classmate who is targeted worse by the Mean Girls and is rumored to be named after her parents wanting a cat instead of a little child. Nyan believes she is followed by a dark entity, and Elena later starts to act like her after finding her phone is cracked. So I thought this was a thoughtfully crafted horror film that blends elements of J-horror with contemporary social commentary. Director Masaki Nishishima effectively utilizes technology. The film supported by strong performances, excellent cinematography, and unsettling sound design. And I think that the cinematography, framing, and sound design were actually excellent, so I don't know why I repeated that twice, but here we are. And my rating then for The Invisible Half, I gave a 7.5 out of 10 to. And then number 39 is one that I believe more people are going to have next year on their list, is going to be Tinsman Road. This one I got to see at Nightmares Film Festival. It's a featured review on episode 311. This is set in the backwoods of New Jersey. It is about a young man named Robbie Lyle, portrayed by Robbie Banfitch, who navigates the mystery surrounding his long-missing sister, Noelle, portrayed by Salem Belladonna, and their family home. So this is presented as like raw footage filmed by Lyle. And then Robbie returns home to his mother, Leslie, portrayed by his real mother, Leslie Ann Banfitch. Now, she's struggling with Noelle's disappearance. Leslie has not told Robbie that his sister went missing originally, as he was in Hollywood, Los Angeles, pursuing filmmaking, and thought that he upset his sister, and that's why they weren't talking. Leslie believes that Noelle is still in her room, citing the dining room lights flicker when she says Noelle's name, or making things that her daughter liked, and a music box belonging to Noelle goes off randomly at night. Robbie starts a search for answers, looking through Noelle's tapes of her singing and playing piano and interviewing locals like Heather, portrayed by Heather Middleton, and Nancy, portrayed by Nancy Bujanowski. And this kind of happens at this road that is Tinsman Road, the place where his sister disappeared. So he also interviews Keith, portrayed by Keith Bixby, who owns part of the woods by this road, and Officer Middleton, portrayed by David Feckenty. And this is kind of part of the search here. So the film is in the style of found footage similar to The Outwaters, but this is a more grounded journey of discovery. And this one is a slow, mostly consisting of Robbie interviewing people and looking through Noelle's room. It could be seen as boring by some viewers just because there's not necessarily a lot happening, but things are important that are going to be shown here. So this is a character study of Robbie and Leslie, who are dealing with grief in different ways. Supernatural elements are presented with rational alternatives, such as faulty wiring for the flickering lights and malfunctioning old music box. I think the authentic performances of Robbie and Leslie are the immersive found footage style, effective sound design, and subtle practical effects. For me, though, this is starkly different yet compelling follow-up to The Outwaters, and you could almost correlate them in kind of similar ways, but this swaps cosmic horror for deeply personal, grounded exploration of grief and mystery, and that's something I definitely appreciated, and can't wait to give this one a rewatch. So for me, Tinsman Road, I gave a 7.5 out of 10 to. And then for number 38, I'm going to be very brief because I did a featured review on episode 320, but that's going to be Silent Night, Deadly Night. This is the remake here from 2025, so I'll direct you over to that episode if you'd like to hear more about it. And then coming at number 37 is going to be Final Destination Bloodlines. I did a featured review on episode 296 and then a mini review on episode 314. This centers around a college student, Stephanie, portrayed by Caitlin Santajuana, who is plagued by violent reoccurring nightmare. She goes home to find a person who can break the cycle and save the family from an inevitable grisly demise, or at least she hopes she can. So this actually begins in 1960 with the main death that we get to kind of kick everything off. Iris, portrayed by Breck Bassinger, and Paul, portrayed by Max Lloyd Jones, at a new restaurant on top of a Space Needle building. Iris has a premonition that sets events in motion after noticing odd things like the building being finished ahead of schedule and the restaurant being overbooked. The nightmare Stephanie is having is linked to the past event, Iris's nightmare, which Death uses to torment Stephanie to close the loop. Stephanie is looking for her mother's box of items and later learns the nightmare from Aunt Brenda, which sets a new nightmare in motion for her as Death finally gets to Iris. So this is highly entertaining and a welcome return to form for the franchise and a fun, brutal, and thoughtful horror romp. The opening, set in the Space Needle building, is one of my favorites in the series now, utilizing the space well and featuring some brutal deaths. The central theme of futility of fearing death as Iris and Stephanie's mother, Darlene, both try to defeat death, bringing only tragedy and fear to the family. And it's not letting uncontrollable elements like eventual death dictate one's life. I think that Ioana is praised as a solid in her role. This includes one of Tony Todd's final performances, which was tearful and love send-off that he was allowed to do and say whatever he wanted, and how he does it is perfect. The cinematography and sound design are strengths. The subtle setup of Rube Goldberg-style death sequences is effective, though some of the CGI is not great. For me, this film had better connected Iris's actions to later events, similar to what Final Destination 5 did. I think that would help to fully cultivate the backstory just a little bit more and make everything kind of come together even more than what it kind of did. It does well, though. So my rating here for Final Destination Bloodlines, I gave a 7.5 out of 10 to. And then I'm going to be brief here because next I have Good Boy. This is coming at number 36. I did a featured review on episode 309 and then just another mini review on 320. I'll direct you to both of those if you'd like to hear just a little bit more, but I'm not going to delve much farther than that. Gave Good Boy a 7.5 out of 10. Also going to gloss over here number 35, which was Black Phone 2, because I did a mini review on episode 312 and then another mini review on the last episode of 321. I like this one. I don't know if it's as good, but I definitely think it has some good things going for it. Black Phone 2, I gave a 7.5 out of 10 as well. Then at position number 34, I got to check out at Nightmares Film Festival, so feature review on episode 311, which is going to be Landlord. This one is, we have a bounty hunter portrayed by Adama Abrason, who moves to a rundown apartment complex and is forced to protect an orphaned boy named Alex, portrayed by Cohen Cooper. And then some key characters here, we have this bounty hunter who's unnamed. She, does some interesting things here, like she rents an apartment to conduct a stakeout, but does it in cash, so there's no paper trail. She's trying to retrieve this briefcase. She's bitten in the neck by a person who survives being shot in the head. So then we have Alex, who is portrayed by Cooper, a boy whose mother is attacked in the film's opening. He is later seen being bullied and ends up with a broken arm. So we have Christopher, portrayed by Lance Gerard, the manager of the complex, who cleans up the mess from the attack and is seen following the bounty hunter to a farm. He is to be turned by John. And then we have Connor, who is Jay Barrett Cooper, the local sheriff involved in the events, who is looking for the bounty hunter and Alex. We also have John William Lawrence, portrayed by William McKinley. He is the one who's after the bounty hunter and needs Alex taken care of before things get out of hand. So this one starts out as a crime thriller. There's some darker elements, not a horror film at first, but it does well in blending and be going into that as things progress on. So for me, this one, the rundown apartment complex is inspired by the writer-director here of Remington Smith's upbringing, is effectively captured, becoming a character in itself. The film weaves its themes of social commentary and the dark side of capitalism. Abrason is very good as her powerful central performance and carries the film. Cooper and McKinney also deliver fitting performances. I think the cinematography, framing, and atmosphere are some things that are also very good here. The creature effects, blood and after effects of the attacks are mostly practical with some little CGI. Then the supernatural elements are cleverly revealed, supported by compelling creature lore and excellent practical effects. So Alex is the first to believe and write down what he knows about this creature and kind of where things go from there. But for me, I rather enjoyed this one. Can't wait to give this one a rewatch at some point. And for me, Landlord is going to be a 7.5 out of 10. And then up next, I have Ketchup on Waffles. This was a mini review in episode 297. I actually got to check this one out as a screener thanks to my buddy Aaron, who was doing an interview with the director and writer, who is John Thiessen Jr., as well as the star of Ian O'Boyle. And yeah, it was fun talking to them and everything like that. But the synopsis here is, we have 3 mass attackers terrorize customers in a college town diner late on a Friday night. The leader orchestrates increasingly brutal murders and inflicts psychological and physical torture over several hours. The premise is noted to have stemmed from a Reddit post about the combination of ketchup on waffles, and people who enjoy this are considered to be psychopaths. So this was an intense and disturbing character study, and recommended for fans of extreme horror. So for me, it's not recommended to everybody due to its graphic and unsettling nature. So what I will say is this combination of found footage, as a guy in the blue is carrying a camera, and a more conventional but swaying cinematic style. The attacks are framed just off screen, with the sound design and practical effects building atmosphere and realism. O'Boyle, who plays the white attacker, is described as a menace and terrifying. Then we also have Shazaras Morano, and if I mispronounce your name, I do apologize, who is Abby, and I think her portrayal as how broken she's getting by these events as we go to the climax. But this is definitely a comparison of things like Man Bites Dog, Funny Games, and Trash Humpers. So for me, though, Ketchup on Waffles, this one I am also kind of interested in revisiting and would like to get a physical copy at some point. That Ketchup on Waffles, I give a 7.5 out of 10 to. Then number 32, I have Snatchers. This one was from Raindance Film Festival. The synopsis is, a pair of lifelong friends who attempt to make money by selling a fresh corpse's organs, but encounter a problem when she wakes up on the operating table. So our main character here is Jane Doe, or one of our main characters is portrayed by Hannah Mackenzie. She's a corpse that wakes up. She tells different manipulative stories to the two friends. So we have Wolfie McFarlane, or Mac, who is portrayed by Craig Alexander, is one of the friends who appears to be a doctor, possibly a pathologist. He struggles with his daughter's death and becomes protective over Jane. Then there's Jason Fetz, who is portrayed by Justin Hosking, who is the other friend who is a body snatcher and gets Mac involved. He is in debt to some bad people, and he's actually attracted to Jane. So got to see this as a screener, and I blindly kind of saw it from just kind of looking at the poster and knowing that this was horror. Or it kind of is horror. It's a compelling character study that focuses on ambiguity and psychological depth. Feels inspired by the autopsy of Jane Doe, but toned down on the horror aspects. So this still classifies, even though it's not listed in my opinion. The ending is open to interpretation, suggesting a logical explanation like a neurotoxin causing suspended animation, or a supernatural one like a demon or a zombie, or it's called just being characters' heads. But credit to the strong performances from Mackenzie Alexander and Hosking. And then I like the strong cinematography, framing, and limited but realistic effects like the milky eyes of this character and the visual storytelling of Jane's tales. But yeah, rather enjoyed this one here and gave Snatchers a 7.5 out of 10. And then coming in at number 31, I have Thinestra. This is also one I got to see from Raindance Film Festival. So this one, we have a young woman takes a new weight loss pill, and the fat she sheds returns in the form of a bloodthirsty doppelganger. So our lead character is Penny, portrayed by Michelle Macedo, and she struggles with body image issues, a mindset learned from her mother who used eating as a coping mechanism. Now she works touching up photographs for Niels, portrayed by Brian Husky. So then the drug. Penny, who is far from obese but sees herself that way, is given a mysterious weight loss drug called Thinestra by a model she talks to. So some side effects. This has a vicious one, causing Penny to become ill, vomit, and leak fat, which is some gross body horror, and it's kind of greasy practical effects. Each dose causes her to lose over 10 pounds. The transformation is that Penny rebrands herself as Penelope, who is actually portrayed by the twin sister of Michelle, Melissa Macedo, and she's gaining confidence, but also becoming rude and eventually transform into a feral monster with uncontrollable hunger who attacks people she loves. So we have Michelle portraying the timid Penny, and then Melissa, who plays the aggressive Penelope. Other cast members include Husky as Niels, there's Shannon Dang as Chayla, who is the makeup person, and there's Gavin Steinhaus as this kind neighbor Josh, and then Norman Maldonado, who is Penny's mother. And then this one explores body image, societal pressures, the unreal expectations of women. This is probably going to draw comparisons to The Substance due to having like miracle drugs with some dangerous side effects. I do think the practical effects, including the leaking fat, blood, and Penelope's monstrous feral transformation, with ears that look great, are some of the stuff that are great, or I think they're effective and visceral. The cinematography, framing, sound design, and soundtrack are all commended. Both Michelle and Melissa are great in bringing this character to life with some nuanced portrayals. I think that the minor quibble of not fully buying into the initial portrayal of Penny's body issues, noting that Macedo's body size wasn't overly noticeable on screen, the change between the two, and I don't mean that as a negative thing, but it doesn't work for me watching this. But this is still compelling, grotesque, and thought-provoking character study that leaves a lasting impression with its blend of body horror and psychological drama. So my rating for Thynestra, I gave a 7.5 out of 10 to. And then as we wind down here to leave the 30s, I have Body Cam. This was at Nightmares Film Festival, so featured review on episode 311. This is the other one that was done by Brandon Christensen and Ryan Christensen. So the synopsis: two police officers, Bryce, portrayed by Sean Rogerson, and Jackson by Jamie M. Kalika, investigate a domestic dispute that results in an accidental shooting. To avoid public backlash, the officers attempt to cover up the shooting, only to discover they're being watched by more than just cameras. So this is a horror film that blends social commentary with cosmic Lovecraftian horror. It's filmed in the found footage style with a meta element concerning Officer Bryce's body cam footage. Some key themes here are like police corruption, racial bias, as Bryce is a racist, Jackson is black, and the plight of the homeless, inspired by news I'm assuming from like big cities like Portland, Oregon. So I found this to be compelling and unsettling experience with strong performances from Kalika and Rogerson. The atmosphere is trippy, realism were effective, although I had some minor gripe with some of the CGI near the end. This is another one that I wouldn't be shocked. I know it's coming out here in 2026, so this one I wouldn't be shocked to see on more people's list going forward, but for the next year, that is. But my rating here then for Body Cam, I gave a 7.5 out of 10 to. And then at number 29, I have Ash. This was a feature review on episode 287, and then a mini review on episode 301. And this one is following a woman of Raya, portrayed by Isa Gonzalez, who wakes up on a distant planet to find the crew of her spaceship viciously. Her investigation into the massacre sets off a terrifying chain of events. Now, Raya is a botanist and part of a team terraforming the planet. So some key characters here, we already said Raya. And then there is Adheed, portrayed by Iko Uwas, who's the captain of the team. There's Brian, portrayed by Aaron Paul, a member of the team who is in orbit. He's a pilot. And then there is Clark, portrayed by Kate Elliott, Kevin by Belula Coley, and then Davis, portrayed by the director here and writer of Flying Lotus. So Ash is more of a straightforward narrative from Flying Lotus of his works that I've seen. So this mixes surreal elements with like a narrative that borrows from movies like Aliens and Identity. So the plot functions as a murder mystery driven by an unreliable narrator whose memory is compromised due to medical issues in a hostile environment. That hostile environment where the air can drive people insane helps to build the atmosphere, which includes elements of cosmic and survival horror. Kind of inspired by video games as well, I'll say that. But the action performances, especially from Gonzalez as the lead, is solid. Practical effects are good. The CGI is less impressive, though it didn't bother me with the second viewing, but I do love these just atmospheric things that we see with like bright colors and everything when they're outside on the planet. I did see this on VOD originally, and then due to not being able to see this in the theater, but I did end up watching it on Shudder the second time around. And then for me, if you're a fan of sci-fi, horror, and like cosmic stuff, I would recommend it from that point of view. So my rating here for Ash, I gave a 7.5 out of 10 to. And then coming in at number 28, I have The Rule of Jenny Penn. This was a featured review on episode 283, and then a mini review on episode 298. And we're following a former judge, portrayed by Stefan Mortensen, portrayed by Jeffrey Rush, who is confined to a secluded rest home after a stroke. Trapped in a stroke-ridden body, he must stop an elderly psychopath, Dave Creeley, portrayed by John Lithgow, who uses a child's puppet to abuse the residents with deadly consequences. So Stefan Mortensen is portrayed by, like I said, Rush, a harsh presiding judge who suffers a stroke during a tirade in court, which lands him in a nursing home. He is rude to the staff and residents and has difficulty adjusting. His constant complaints are ignored as staff believes his declining mental state is the issue, making him the boy who cried wolf. We have Dave Creeley, portrayed by Lithgow, the villain and a resident who is a bully. He uses a grotesque puppet that looks like a gutted baby doll for a dark version of a ventriloquist act. Dave steals food, physically attacks residents, and mentally abuses them as well, sometimes easing the torment if they comply. Then we also have Tony Garfield, portrayed by George Hinar, who is Stefan's roommate and former national team rugby player who is bullied by Dave. So this is a horror film, though it borders into other genres, and it might not be strictly in this one, but just kind of the stuff he does is terrifying. This is a character study of Stefan and Dave. It explores the fear of aging through Stefan's perspective, whose subtle details like his inability to draw a clock revealing his declining health. This also highlights the fear of elderly abuse made into terrifying by the victims who diminish mental capacity. I think that Rush and Lithgow are great. They're excellent portrayals of their roles. Hinar is solid as he's also solid with his past as a rough sport athlete contrasted with his inability to defend himself now. Cinematography and framing are a credit here for effective showing what Stefan sees versus the truth and capturing the nursing home atmosphere. The use of blackout surreal moments where Stefan loses time adds to a nightmarish element. A minor issue, though, is some of the people that I know through like podcasting and stuff, I don't necessarily agree with some of the issues, but there is like a lack of cameras, and it's a second-rate facility, so I could be conveniently adding to the security issues, but I can also understand where they're coming from. This is a compelling and nuanced character study with some strong performances, and I actually gave The Rule of Jenny Penn after both watches here a 7.5 out of 10. Then the penultimate movie for this part of the list is going to be Grafted. This is at number 27, of course. Featured review on episode 277, mini review on episode 291. This one is about a bright and socially awkward exchange student who takes her craving for popularity to horrifying heights. So this is like a mad scientist body horror film. It also works as a character study of our main character of Wei. It deals with real issues like bullying and wanting to fit in. And I think the performances here by Joanna Soon portraying Wei and then Jared Turner as Paul, they are both somebody to give credit here too. And then I also think that Jess Hung, who is Angela, and then Eden Hart as Eve, the practical effects are good. Combination of both practical and CGI. Cinematography, framing, and sound design also help here. So I'm glad I checked this one out. I enjoyed the story the more the second time around. Some slight issues with the narrative structure where we have that there is this her and her father, the Wei character and her father, they both have these like birthmarks. She wants to get rid of them, so they're trying to create the synthetic like humanistic thing that they're creating here, and it has horrifying things, and then what she ends up doing with it when she kind of gets to it is just terrifying. But for me, Grafted after both watches, I solidified it for me as a 7.5 out of 10. And then for the last film on this part of the list is going to be The Surrender at number 26. This was a featured review on episode 292 and then a mini review on episode 305. So this is a difficult mother-daughter relationship is severely tested after the family patriarch dies. The grieving mother then hires a mysterious stranger to try and bring her husband back from the dead. So the family consists of Robert, portrayed by Vaughn Armstrong, Barbara by Kate Burton, and their daughter is Megan, portrayed by Colby Minifie. So Robert is dying from cancer, and Megan is there to help with the care. Barbara and Megan have a strained relationship. Barbara turns to pagan ideas and hires a mysterious man portrayed by Neil Sandilands to perform a ritual to bring Robert back, which requires complete commitment and cannot be stopped once it starts. So the family functions largely as a family drama and the character study of Megan and Barbara exploring their relationship and the role of memories. So the horror here is reserved mostly for the third act, after the characters and their tensions have been established and some dark stuff happens that goes into cosmic horror. So this is a compelling family drama that builds, like I said, tension toward a horror-infused third act. It falls short on the promises and seems to lose its way a bit near the end. But I do like some time loop stuff that we get that kind of, that's where it really kind of made me sit up in my seat, but it doesn't land it. This excels as a character study, though. I think that Menifee is strong in her performance as the estranged daughter, and then Burton as the cold mother. Cinematography, makeup, sound design, and eerie lighting are also very effective. So my rating here is going to be a 7.5 out of 10. So I'm going to go ahead, get you over to a very brief break, rest my voice and everything like that before I jump into my top 25 horror films from 2025.
Pod Nation TV has you beamed up with Out of This World award-winning podcast found exclusively on Pod Nation TV. Download Pod Nation TV for Roku and Fire TV. Pod Nation TV, Out of This World.
And welcome back. So what I'm going to do here, then the first two are going to be very brief here because they're both documentaries. So the first one at number 25 is going to be Chain Reactions. This is an interesting one because this is surrounding Texas Chainsaw Massacre. We hear from some pretty kind of interesting people about how that movie influenced their lives and everything like that. I did a mini review in episode 310, so I'll direct you over to there to check that out if you are curious. But I gave Chain Reactions an 8 out of 10. And the next one I got to see at the Nightmares Film Festival, which was a feature review in episode 311, which was a Serbian documentary. Of course, a documentary about a Serbian film. This one actually kind of is quite interesting. It's a very good companion piece because it kind of talks about different things they did with like the filmmaking, how things work, talking to different actors, the filmmakers. So they do it over different eras and time periods and everything like that. Just kind of see its lasting legacy and everything like that. But a Serbian documentary, also an 8 out of 10. That one is one that's definitely kind of a curious one to check out. But then coming in at number 23. Not necessarily a horror film, but I'll kind of get into that. But it's The Mother, the Menacer, and Me, also at Nightmares Film Festival. So featured review episode 311. This one is following Eddie Matthews, changed by James Austin Keir, who is a hopelessly stuck in a dead-end job and is forced to move in with his disapproving mother-in-law of that. She's actually portrayed by Lorraine Bracco. Eddie is trying to achieve his Hollywood dream, urged on by his imaginary villainous companion, the Menacer, who wants to be brought to life. And this is like a pilot to a TV show that he's creating about killing Karens. This is like the show they're doing. So Eddie and his best friend of Joe Adcock, portrayed by Alfonso Caballero, are doing the show, like I was saying, which features a vigilante hero, the Menacer, voiced by Steve Plashin. Eddie is married to Anna, portrayed by Christine Spang, and they move in with mother-in-law Nancy, portrayed by Bracco. They have a son, Billy, portrayed by Kellen Tetlow, and another child on the way. Eddie is working as an online salesman for President Bobbleheads. His dream looks achievable when there's to get into this film festival with a grand prize of a development deal, but he faces several challenges while rushing to get his show ready. The story is described, for me, I thought it was a heartfelt tale figuring out what is important to you. Not traditional horror. It's more of like a quirky coming-of-age comedy where the lead character is a horror fan making a horror television pilot. So for me, it's surprisingly heartfelt and emotionally resonant, which caused me to tear up. So for me, I could feel a connection to the main character, Eddie, due to similarities. Both of us in our 30s have 2 children, love horror films. Eddie's wife, Anna, is very supportive like my wife is. Now, I don't necessarily have a mother-in-law, Nancy, who comes around as well. She does in this like this thing. I guess you could kind of say that one of my exes who thought it was stupid for me doing movie reviews and everything like that, which I'm still doing, so here we are. But the acting is top-notch. Keir as Eddie, Spang as Anna, Bracco as Nancy are all solid. They're all pretty great, I'm going to be honest here. I like Tetlow as Billy. And we also have a funny Leah Remini cameo. Cinematography, framing are all good to capture the small town setting. The scenes of them working on the horror project capture the necessary essence, and the props, mask, and soundtrack all fit. This is well-crafted story about chasing dreams, navigating family dynamics, and figuring out what is, your priorities in life. So I actually gave The Mother, the Menacer, and Me an 8 out of 10 as well. So then coming in at number 22 is also from Nightmares Film Festival of Queens of the Dead, the last one I got to see there at the festival. So featured review in episode 311. This one is drag queens and club kids battle brains-craving zombies during an outbreak at their Brooklyn drag show, setting aside personal issues to their distinct abilities against the undead. So this is a zombie satire. This, for me, felt like a flamboyant Shaun of the Dead or like a queer Shaun of the Dead. So our director here, Tina Romero, George A. Romero's daughter, is paying homage to his work. The green color of the zombies was noted by Nina West, who was in attendance and doing a Q&A, as homage to Romero's Dawn of the Dead. So this is actually interesting in that this was primarily made up of people in the LGBTQ plus community, which you don't necessarily see, and that'd be the cast and crew and everything. The acting, I thought, from Jaquel Spivey and Katie O'Brien as the excellent leads. Quincy Dunn Baker provided some great comic relief. I also love that we have Nina West, Ricky Lindholm, Margaret Cho, Eve Lindley, Cheyenne Jackson, and a cameo even by Tom Savini. West, who plays Jinsey, is originally going to only do like a voice stuff here, but joined the cast when schedules kind of end up working out. This also has a LGBTQ plus focus, you could tell. Sharp social commentary. The zombies milling around the club on their phones watching TikToks or Reels is noted as a poignant laugh akin to the zombies being driven to the mall in Dawn of the Dead. Thought the soundtrack as a highlight, featuring a remix Day of the Dead score, the fantastic drag performances with on-point makeup and costumes later in The Escape. The zombies add glitter to make them fabulous. Zombies also walk slowly, similar to the director's father's, movies. I thought that does lessen the threat a little bit. I forgive it, though, as it wasn't necessarily the focus. Being set in New York was kind of good things there. They're trying to get the last ferry out of the island, so I do appreciate that. Some of the character stuff here. Sam, who is portrayed by Spivey, is an orderly and a former drag queen, which causes friction with Dre. And Dre is Katie O'Brien, who's the DJ. There's Barry, who is Dunn Baker, Lizzie's brother, a plumber who comes to help unclog a toilet. He's an outsider to the scene, though. Jinsey, portrayed by West, is practicing her routine at the nightclub. She's also Sam's mentor. Lizzie, who is Lindholm, is a nurse who is Dre's partner. Nico, portrayed by Tomas Mateos, is a backup dancer. There's also Jax, who is Samora La Perdida, a backup dancer and Jane's dealer. There's Kelsey, portrayed by Jack Haven, planning the event here. Jane, who is Lindley, a patient struggling with transition. And then Jimmy, who is Jackson, the bartender. And there's also Yasmin, who is Dominique Jackson, supposed to be at the event, but bails on them for, some reasons that we get to see play out. But Queens of the Dead, I gave this one an 8 out of 10. It's a lot of fun. Then coming at number 21, it's on this one as a mini review here, so episode 322, K-Pop Demon Hunters. I actually had a lot of fun with this one, so go over there and check out my thoughts with it. Not necessarily a horror film, but I think it kind of goes dark enough with some of the things that they're playing with in that one, but I just wanted to kind of go ahead and just let you know. And then coming in at number 20 here to kick off this section of the list, White Guilt. This was a mini review on episode 299. This one made its world premiere at Raindance Film Festival. This is primarily a drama at its core. It is labeled as a horror film on Letterboxd. It's a sharp gut punch, I will say that, and a violent, visceral chiller for our troubled age. So this follows 11 affluent white individuals, mostly in their 20s and 30s, who travel on a bus to a remote location hoping to ease their white guilt. At this location, the roles are reversed, where the white participants are treated as if they were slaves, while the masters and overseers are black. So we have Sarge, portrayed by Dempsey Bovell, as one of the overseers who takes his job very seriously. There's David Lauder, portrayed by Theo Watt, a participant who doesn't fully take their situation seriously, and boasts that the place used to belong to his ancestors who owned 86 slaves. He is driven by deep entitlement and ultimately reveals profound racism. We also have Ellie Koch, portrayed by Freya Crompton, a participant of Scandinavian descent who is often paired with David. There's Sally Williams, who is Tamika Thompson, a half-black participant who insists on participating, which makes the guards pause. She is affluent and scolds Bola when he tries to befriend her. Then we also have Kat, who is portrayed by Stephanie Da Silva, an overseer who also takes her job seriously. There is Stefan, who is Malik Kadu, an overseer who pauses and rethinks things when he has a moment to use his power to his advantage. There's also Bola, who is Chima Akpa, a new hire guard who initially views this as just a job, but his joyful outlook turns dark when his newfound power causes him to seek revenge after an interaction with Sally. So this is a thought-provoking and impactful, delivering a powerful message on contemporary societal issues. It offers a sharp commentary on performative allyship, entitlement, and complexities of power dynamics. This is a product that excels in its filmmaking with great cinematography and framing, and is elevated by strong performances, especially from Watt and Crompton. So for me, though, White Guilt, I actually gave this one an 8 out of 10. This is one that I don't necessarily know if I'll ever revisit, just because I don't know if there's anything additional I'll ever get out of it, but this one is one that I do think people should see at least once, just because it is such a powerful film. And then at number 19, I'm going to be quick with, is Strange Harvest. I did a featured review on episode 303 when I got to see it at the Gateway Film Center. Also just did a mini review on episode 318. I'll direct you over to both of those if you'd like to hear more. This is an interesting little found footage mockumentary film that does some interesting things with like being true crime, but like actually fictional, but looking at the true crime subgenre type thing over there, but also mixing in some cosmic horror on top of that. But that is one that I gave an 8 out of 10 to as well. And then at position 18, I have Jimmy and Stiggs. This was a mini review on episode 303, and this is an out-of-work filmmaker, Jimmy Lang, portrayed by Joe Begos, spiraling into a bender after receiving bad news, during which he claims he was abducted by aliens. So fearing that the aliens have returned, Jimmy contacts his estranged friend Stiggs Randolph, portrayed by Mercer. I'm not really sure, Matt Mercer, and to help him prepare for war. Now, the falling out between the former filmmaking partners was due to Stiggs choosing to get sober. Jimmy's experience is like floating above his bed, unable to move his limbs, and losing a stretch of time. It's similar to other claims of alien abductee John Redgrave, portrayed by James Russo, that is from an old interview. So Jimmy prepares for the aliens by getting weapons, including a chainsaw, large knife, machete, and a shotgun while drinking, smoking, and just snorting drugs right and left. So this opens a question of whether the alien encounter is real or if they're like hallucination out this like drug-fueled bender. Now, I think that the events are real, but I enjoy this element of doubt. So Stiggs only believes Jimmy and breaks his own sobriety when Jimmy is blacked out. This was shot in Begos' own apartment where he lives. All the effects were practical. This is an achievement because of the small budget and just the quality of filmmaking effects. So this is genius filmmaking where they use like a shotgun when it was fired, pressing it against something to create a spray of blood instead of using CGI. I love that. The aesthetic is gritty while at a relentless pace and soundtrack. The aliens as the villains are vulgar throwback to like the 1950s. I'm just a fan of Begos in general. This one, I've seen a few of his. I've seen like Bliss, VFW, Christmas, Bloody Christmas, and Almost Human. The only one I'm missing so far is The Mind's Eye. And this isn't going to be for everybody because it has like some extreme vulgar language. That's something that he kind of does throughout. This also, I mean, the type of characters I could also see, they're not like, they're less professional filmmakers, like the people in the movie itself. But Begos' talent for practical and compelling storytelling, this is a must-see for fans of independent horror, especially if you're a Begos fan. So my rating here, then, for Jimmy and Stiggs, I give it 8 out of 10. Then at number 17, I have Borderline. This was a featured review on episode 285 and then a mini review on episode 302. So this is set in the 1990s Los Angeles, where a bodyguard is protecting a pop superstar and her athlete boyfriend from a relentless stalker. So we begin some voiceover narration here from the stalker of Paul Durison, portrayed by Ray Nicholson, as he's expressing his dislike for stories that start at the end, which is exactly what we're doing here. So it briefly shows Paul and the pop star Sophia, who is portrayed by Samara Weaving, as they're getting married. And then we shift back, like I said, this is from this all is in the 90s. So, but then Paul stabs Sophia's bodyguard, Belle, portrayed by Eric Dane, at her mansion after Belle tries to make him leave. 6 months later, Paul is in a mental hospital. And then Sophia is dating Devontae Rhodes, portrayed by Jimmy Fales, a basketball player recently traded from the Portland Trail Blazers to the Denver Nuggets. Belle survived the attack and is at home now with his daughter Abby, portrayed by Yasmin Kelders, but planning to return to work soon. And the plot darkens when Paul escapes with his thanks to his childhood friend J.H. Calhoun, portrayed by Patrick Cox, and then fellow escapee is Penny, portrayed by L.B. Baptista. So then Paul's plan is to find Sophia, who he believes is the love of his life, and marry her. The plan, and may also, like this, involves murder. So not typically the biggest fan of horror comedies, but I enjoyed this one. This more towards comedy, although it does include some horrific elements as we kind of go along, kind of exposing a grounded reality here of celebrity stalking and obsession. I also like the more serious tone with mental illness, and a comment from Belle's daughter Abby suggesting an incident at a Sophia concert explains Paul's behavior. This satirizes the 90s with the joke referencing Madonna's Stalker, and a scene where Sophia and Penny perform a duet of a Celine Dion song, which in this world Sophia sings. The filmmaking here does well capturing the era, and the cinematography for the mostly practical effects as well. Weaving and Nicholson were great. Fales adds some unexpected depth to this basketball player character, and a late scene poking fun at Dennis Rodman. So Dane is also highlighted here as being great as the bodyguard. So my rating, though, for Borderline, both times it really solidified this rating here for an 8 out of 10 for me. And then at position number 16, I have Frankenstein. This was a mini review on episode 316, and it's Dr. Victor Frankenstein, and this is portrayed by Oscar Isaac, as an egotistical scientist creates a creature in a monstrous experiment that ultimately causes the undoing of both the creator and his creation. So the plot structure is framed from the beginning in the Arctic, where a hurt Victor is found by Captain Anderson, portrayed by Lars Mikkelsen, and his crew. Victor recounts his story in the first chapter, and then the creature, portrayed by Jacob Alardi, tells his side for the second. And so Victor Frankenstein here, his motivations are to conquer death that stems from his mother dying during childbirth of his younger brother, which he blames on his father, Leopold, portrayed by Charles Dance, a renowned surgeon. Victor is determined to surpass his father's abilities. And the creature is a patchwork appearance, which I prefer as it aligns more with the novel. Alardi's height is explained by Victor choosing longer limbs for more area to work. And then we also have Harlander here, portrayed by Christoph Waltz. He ends up becoming Victor's benefactor, who funds his research after Victor impresses him at a university hearing. Then we have Elizabeth here, portrayed by Mia Goth, as William, who is the younger brother to Victor. That's his fiancée, and is revealed to be interested in science as well. She and Victor have a forbidden courtship, but she remains loyal to his brother. And some other supporting roles here, we have Christian Convery, who is Victor as a boy. We have Rafe Harwood, who is William as a boy. And then there's Felix Kammerer, who is the adult William, who is getting married to Elizabeth. We have Ralph Ineson portraying Professor Crimpy. There's David Bradley, a blind man that the creature befriends. That's from the book as well. Then we have Peter McNeil and Bern Gorman. So Guillermo del Toro's direction here is just visually stunning, capturing the gothic atmosphere in the time period with his use of steampunk for sci-fi elements. I also like the creature design, that's excellent, and the main drawback is just overly long, but that's just kind of the nature of this story. So my rating, though, for Frankenstein here, I gave an 8 out of 10. This one and Jimmy and Siggs were the two that I was hoping to get a rewatch in before the end of the year. I ended up running out of time and everything like that, but yep, that's why those two fall in these two positions here. And then for the top 15, starting with Companion. This was a featured review on episode 275, and then a mini review on episode 289. So I originally saw this the Monday after its opening weekend in the theater, and then gave it another one when it hit HBO Max. And for this one, we start with a dream of who it's Iris, portrayed by Sophie Thatcher, is about meeting her boyfriend Josh, portrayed by Jack Quaid, at a grocery store. They are traveling in Josh's self-driving car. That's where she wakes up, actually, after she was having this dream. They're going to a lakeside estate belonging to Sergei, portrayed by Rupert Friend, for the weekend trip that they're having. So the group includes Kat, portrayed by Megan Surrey, Patrick, portrayed by Lucas Gage, and Eli, who is portrayed by Harvey Guillen. After a night of partying, the next morning, Iris goes to the beach alone, where Sergei joins her. Their interaction turns violent, resulting in death, which is the event of the synopsis. That I didn't give that there. It's that something kind of happens here, a series of events that kind of go crazy and everything like that. So when Iris comes back inside, she's covered in blood, and the truth about her and the group's underlying issues are revealed, and things just get worse. So this subtly introduces technology as playing a major role, such as Josh's self-driving car and the high-tech modern cabin, which helps to normalize the concept for later reveals. I think this explores social commentary on toxic masculinity, bullying, and misogyny, although I do think some of the stuff that gets explored here is a bit ham-fisted. I also think that the exploration of technology and the reliance on it, as it's very relevant as we think becomes more advanced, and I mean AI is kind of becoming a huge thing as well. I mean, even before this film came out. So I think the acting here is good across the board. I think that Thatcher nails her difficult role, and then Quaid's portrayal and development of his character is good. This successfully captures the isolation of the setting with good cinematography and framing. I think the effects use a good blend here of CGI and practical effects, and then, fitting soundtrack. I enjoyed this one both times that I watched it. It's a solid premise. We have good acting, especially from Thatcher and Quaid, as I was saying, and overall just strong filmmaking, and I appreciated it more after a second watch, and that's why it solidified for me here in this position for Companion being an 8 out of 10. And I'm going to go very brief here because I just covered this one recently, and it's going to be Him. This one was a featured review on episode 308, and then I did a mini review on episode 319. I'll direct you over to either of those ones if you'd like to hear more, but I gave Him an 8 out of 10 as well. And then at position number 13 is going to be Frowaka. This is one that was a featured review on episode 291 and a mini review on episode 304. And we are following Shu, portrayed by Claire Monelly, a nurse of palliative care student whose present life is disoriented by a past trauma, and well as her mother just passed away. And she is called away for a placement with an elderly woman named Pieg, portrayed by Brittany Noctane. I mispronounced that name, I'm sure. But the story starts in 1973 when Pieg's wedding to Dahathi, portrayed by Michael O'Glaine, where Pig is later seen in old age suffering from dementia and hallucinations, and I should also say Shu's mother killed herself. So this is an Irish folk tale that is seeming to be about fairies and how they take people and what humans can do to get their loved ones back. Pig believes that fairies took her to the underworld back at her wedding day. So then the title actually translates to roots, suggesting that evil is rooted in Ireland and its manifestations of familial trauma. This blends supernatural with themes of generational trauma and mental illness. Shu's mother had a similar history to Pieg, suggesting a possible family mental illness. It explores Ireland's history of mistreating women by not believing them, is presented both by Pieg and Shu. And I think we have some strong performances here, especially from our leads of Noctane and Monelly. I also think that it excels in the sound design and evocative cinematography, creating an unsettling atmosphere and tension. There's a lot of stuff with hallucinations, but we're not sure what they're seeing, if it's real or if it's in their head. This has that unreliable narrator's perspective and making it unclear whether events are supernatural, like I was saying, or are they more due to mental illness. So my rating, though, this was solidified after both watches as an 8 out of 10 as well. And then coming in number 12 is going to be another brief one because it's actually covered earlier on this episode here of VHS Halloween. So I'll direct you earlier into this episode, but I gave this one an 8 out of 10. And then just missing out on the top 10, coming in at number 11, is going to be The Ugly Stepsister. This was a featured review on episode 289 and then a mini review on episode 303. And let me kind of run through some of our main characters. We have Elvira, portrayed by Leah Myron. She's our main character. And then her mother is Rebecca, portrayed by Anne Dole Torp. And then Agnes is the stepsister who, I'm not going to give away who she actually is and everything, but she's a very important character, portrayed by Thea Sophie Lochnaeus. And then we also have Alma, who is Elvira's younger sister, portrayed by Flo Fagerly. Then there's Prince Julian, portrayed by Isaac Kamroth. And then Isaac, who's a stable boy, portrayed by Multi Gardinger. So this one is a dark retelling of the classic fairy tale Cinderella, told from the perspective as one of the wicked stepsisters, Elvira. So Elvira, as she battles against her gorgeous stepsister in a realm where beauty is supreme, resorting to extreme measures to captivate the prince amidst a competition for physical perfection. So this begins with Elvira, her mother Rebecca, and her sister Alma arriving at the manor owned by Otto, portrayed by Ralph Carlson, whom Rebecca is slated to marry. Now Otto's daughter is Agnes. And then Otto dies of a heart attack the night of their marriage while they're at dinner, and Rebecca discovers that he is broke. Now she mistreats Agnes, spending the little money that they have for Elvira's beautification, braces removal and like a nose job. So Elvira can attend a ball thrown by Prince Julian to find a bride. Elvira and Agnes are sent to a finishing school run by Sophie von Cronenberg, she's portrayed by Cecilia Frost. And then at the school, Madame Vanja, portrayed by Katarzyna Herman, gives Elvira a tapeworm egg to help her lose weight. So the protagonist Elvira is initially naive and happy-go-lucky, but the good nature is broken by bullying, abuse at the finishing school, and she becomes disillusioned when she finds that Prince Julian is rude. Agnes, initially kind, is nicknamed Cinderella during Elvira's beautification, and finds help from the supernatural. Agnes is in love with a stable boy named Isaac as well. So we got some like body horror modification that explore themes of disordered eating and body image issues through body modification for beauty. Elvira undergoes a nose job by Dr. Esteteke, portrayed by Adam Lundgren, and initially acquires a tapeworm. So then this explores beauty, societal pressures, and corrupting influence and ambition from there. Rebecca is greedy. She only was marrying Otto for wealth, and he actually did the same thing, so they both thought they were rich. Rebecca punishes Agnes by claiming the lack of funds for Otto's burial while spending it on Elvira's extensive beautification. Rebecca relies on Elvira to secure a rich husband, and it's actually gross because Otto is rotting in this room that he's left in. This is definitely genre-bending horror, specifically used in body horror. Relies on effective practical effects with some seamless CGI during use for like enhancements, body mods, and the iconic Cinderella elements successfully made me cringe at times. And then the cinematography framing effectively hides the seams and craft shots that convey Elvira's self-consciousness. And I think this runs a bit too long. Trimming this 10 minutes I think would greatly benefit it, but regardless, both times I watched this, I have solidified that The Ugly Stepsister is an 8 out of 10. And then coming in at number 10. I have Opus. This was a featured review on episode 284 and a mini review on episode 299. So this one here, we're following a writer of Ariel Acton, who is portrayed by Ayo Ababiri, who travels to the desert compound of a pop icon, Alfred Moretti, portrayed by John Malkovich, who disappeared years ago. Surrounded by Moretti's cult of sycophants and a group of fellow journalists, she soon discovers his twisted plan for the gathering. So Moretti is a famous singer comparable to like Prince, Elton John, or like Michael Jackson. Just hasn't produced a new album in almost 30 years. The few that are selected here to hear his new album before its release include journalist Acton. Then her boss is Stan Sullivan, portrayed by Murray Bartlett. The talk show host Clara Armstrong, portrayed by Juliette Lewis. Paparazzi photographer Bianca Tyson, portrayed by Melissa Chambers. Influencer Emily Katz, portrayed by Stephanie Tsunagami. And then we also have Bill Lotto, portrayed by Mark Severstein. So Ariel is portrayed as an anomaly by the retreat, lacking the fame of the other guests, and her boyfriend Kent, who's portrayed by Young Mazzino, describes her as like mid because she's had a normal middle-class life without significant hardships. The cult members call themselves levelists. The phones are confiscated at the Desert Gateway, of course, and the only one who notices when people are going missing is leading to her unease is Ariel. So then I think this is intriguing for a 2025 horror film, as we have some heavy hitters like Malkovich and Lewis, and I got to see this on VOD for the first watch, and then my rewatch I actually did on HBO Max, I believe. So it's unsettling tone and gradual reveals I think were more rewarding the second time around for me. I love the concept of a cult operating in the middle of the desert with a star as a figurehead. And there's some similarities here to like Midsommar, Jonestown to an extent, and like The Menu. Midsommar, just a lot of it because you have a cult and a lot of it's in the daylight. I think that Ebabiri's performance, noting her growth as a timid character, and then Malkovich, who he brings such an oddness to this role that works so well. And I appreciate the cinematography, framing, art house vibe, as well as the soundtrack design, but was limited but great or effects that were used when we got that. So this is going to be a first bump up in rating here that I had in a while, as I gave Opus an 8.5 out of 10. And then for the next one's going to be one of my little hidden gems here. At number 9, I have Dewey Shaw. This is one that was a mini review on episode 293 and 306, as I got to see this as part of Rain Dance Film Festival. So this is an anthology that doesn't have a wraparound but has 4 segments. First, we have Prayer Time. A group of college students vandalize a temple for money, which triggers violent supernatural events that sync with daily Islamic prayer times. This is my favorite segment. It's got some solid acting, practical effects, and creative cinematography and framing. Then 2 is Good Luck. A fortune teller struggles to find a donor for his mother's kidney transplant. After 2 fortunes result in him being beaten up, he breaks the forbidden rule of reading his own. And then this one has some good idea of why fortune tellers are forbidden from reading their own fortunes. And then we have Antara. A timid housewife questions her reality after an accident, believing her husband might not be the man she married. And this one uses time loops and explores traditional religions, suggesting her husband might be the devil. This one also had some good cinematography, framing, and practical effects. And then the last one is a little bit more whimsical, and it's Bishara. This is my least favorite by the slightest of margins. It's set in a small village of singers and just people who are very artistically inclined. The little girl has no singing ability, and she has to figure it out and achieve this by her 8th birthday, which is the next day. This one's more whimsical and features a great musical numbers and connection almost to the story here of Adam and Eve. So this concludes for me here that this is an impressive anthology that successfully blends traditional South Asian folktales with modern horror, maintains a consistent quality across the diverse narratives, and subtly weaves in themes of religion and human nature. And I rather enjoyed it, and that's why I give Dewey Shaw an 8.5 out of 10. And then I'm going to be very brief on the next 2, because number 8, I have Weapons. This was a feature review in episode 302 and a mini review in episode 320, so I'll direct you to over both those episodes if you'd like to hear more, but I gave Weapons an 8.5 out of 10. And the next one that I have up here is going to be number 7 is Stranger Things 5, Chapter 8, The Right Side Up. This was a mini review earlier on this episode, so I'll direct you earlier to my mini reviews. And I also gave that one an 8.5 out of 10 as well. And then coming at number 6, I have Presence. This was a featured review on episode 274 and a mini review on episode 287. The synopsis: a family becomes convinced they are not alone after moving to their new home in the suburbs. So first, let's start with the genre debate. People are saying, is this a horror film or not? There's arguments that the elements are not exclusive to the genre. I personally consider it to be, but I agree that this is more of a family drama, and I consider it more like a modern gothic film as well. So this is shot entirely from the perspective of the Presence. I appreciate the practical route that they took with filming this and bringing that to life. It makes you feel like a fly on the wall. I like the minimalist approach, which is not surprising since it was made by Steven Soderbergh. So the cinematography, framing, and visual storytelling, top notch. So the characters are Rebecca, who is Lucy Liu, that's the mother. Chris, portrayed by Chris Sullivan, that's the father. And then there's their son, Tyler, portrayed by Eddie Madej. He's kind of a bully, and he's also a very good swimmer, so his mother is really kind of putting a lot of eggs in his basket. Then there's Chloe, portrayed by Kalina Liang. So Rebecca is the most successful parent here and loves Tyler more than Chloe, a dynamic that plays with gender norms. Rebecca is the one driving the move, so Tyler, a great swimmer, can attend a good school. Chris is more of the loving parent, focused on Chloe due to the loss that she's gone through. 2 friends passed in away abruptly, one that she was very close to. Chloe's the only one who feels the presence, at least initially. Then there's also Lisa, portrayed by Natalie Wolams-Torres, a character with second sight, who mentions that spirits don't experience time in a linear fashion. I love that because I believe time is a flat circle. So the actor performances are the strength here. All 4 of them are great. And I think that this one, I know this actually, is a very divisive film. For me, I rather enjoyed a lot of things that it was doing and gave it a 0.5 out of 10. And then coming in at number 5, I have Bring Her Back. This was a featured review on episode 297 and a mini review on episode 315. And this one, after the death of their father, siblings uncover terrifying secrets within the secluded home of their new foster mother. So this one I thought was a compelling and unsettling character study that successfully blends elements of family drama, psychological manipulation, and effective body horror. This is the follow-up to the Filippo brothers, and like the previous one, Talk to Me, it deals with like rituals of communicating with the dead. So look at some of the key characters and some of the plot points here. We have Andy, portrayed by Billy Barrett, and Piper, portrayed by Sora Wong. They're the siblings who are forced into foster care after their father's death. Piper is partially blind. They have a phrase, grapefruit, which means the other person needs to drop the lies and tell if there is something they are hiding. So then there's Laura, who is portrayed by Sally Hawkins, the siblings' new foster mother, and a former counselor. She had a daughter named Kathy, portrayed by Misha Haywood, who was also blind and drowned in their swimming pool. Now, Laura is manipulative and repeats the abusive cycle with Andy that he also kind of experienced with his father in just kind of a different way. We have Oliver, portrayed by Jonah Wren Phillips, Laura's son, who is described as an odd boy, and he's abused by his mother that will kind of see as things go on. Like, she locks him in a room and stuff like that, and there's more to it, but I don't want to give away. So we also have Wendy, portrayed by Sally Ann Upton, the siblings' caseworker. So we have some themes here that are dealing with trauma of losing a child, and it's centered on trauma, grief, and loss. It effectively conveys anxiety through gaslighting. There's some great, brutal body horror effects, particularly involving Oliver and then the ritual that's being done here. And Sally Hawkins she's great here as somebody who seems normal and everything like that, but might actually be a horrifying monster. And Barrett is excellent as a resilient fighter as well. So that's why this is coming in, starting off my top 5 here, as I gave Bring Her Back an 8.5 out of 10. And then coming in at number 4, I have The Long Walk. This was a featured review on episode 307, and then a mini review on episode 317. So this is set in a dystopian alternate America ruled by a totalitarian regime after I believe another civil war happened. So we're at an annual contest called The Long Walk, in which a group of teenage boys must maintain a certain walking speed or face execution only until one survivor remains. So one male from each state is selected for the event, which is claimed to be voluntary. The participants must maintain a speed of 3 miles per hour. If a participant falls behind the required speed, they receive a warning. 3 warnings can accumulate at a time before execution. 1 warning is removed if the participant walks for an hour without getting warned. Stepping off the road results in an automatic killing. The winner receives money and 1 wish, and the event is run by the Major, portrayed by Mark Hamill. So the nation, which is financially ruined by war, started the game to reduce the population, inspire citizens, and satisfy a morbid curiosity for public executions. So some of the key people we have here: Raymond Garrity, portrayed by Cooper Hoffman, the lead character who was selected for the event. Well, actually, he volunteered, obviously. But then we have Peter McVries, portrayed by David Johnson, Garrity's friend that he meets during the competition. There's Ginny Garrity, portrayed by Judy Greer, who is Raymond's mother. William Garrity, portrayed by Josh Hamilton. Now, he's the father who is punished for showing forbidden art to his son, and kind of started some of the things that are happening here. It is a downward spiral. The Major is a person who runs the game, of course. Some other walkers that are important are Arthur Baker, portrayed by Tut Newitt, Hank Olson, portrayed by Ben Wang, Gary Barkovich, portrayed by Charlie Plummer, and Stebbins, portrayed by Garrett Waring. So this is a terrifying, plausible character study about endurance and the mental, physical toll of the competition. I think his strongest performances here are Cooper, Hoffman, and Johnson. The cinematography effectively captures the bleak Midwestern setting as somebody who's lived all of his adult life in the Midwest. And this is a powerful, impactful, cinematic achievement that successfully translates the author's chilling vision, as this was written by Richard Bachman, a.k.a. that was a pseudonym for Stephen King. Most everybody knows that, so I just kind of wanted to act like I was, something cheeky there. But yeah, I gave The Long Walk an 8.5 out of 10. And then coming in at position number 3, Together. This was a feature review on episode 301 and then a mini review on episode 316. So this is a body horror film. It is a compelling and disturbing exploration of a relationship pushed to its limits. This one offers some interesting allegories and commentary, and I can also see it being compared to The Substance, noting that The Substance for the mainstream has really brought body horror into the limelight, but yeah, that's about where it ends for me. But this is focusing on a couple of Tim, a musician portrayed by Dave Franco, and Millie, a stable teacher who is portrayed by Allison Brie, real-life married couple. Now, in the movie, Tim and Millie have been dating for 10 years and are at a crossroads as they move to the country. It starts out at a going-away party where Millie's best friend, Kath, expresses doubt about their relationship. Millie takes a new teaching job at a rural high school. While Tim agrees to go, he also agrees to join up on an upcoming tour with his friends. Now, Tim is dealing with trauma and mental instability after finding his deceased parents. Millie is frustrated because they haven't been intimate since they died. Millie befriends Jamie, who another teacher at her school, who tells her about the trails in the nearby woods. While exploring those, Tim and Millie get caught in a downpour and seek shelter in a cave. By accident, that is. In the cave, Tim drinks water from an odd pool, similar to two dogs we saw in the cold open. And then when they wake up, their legs are stuck together. And the need for them to be together grows until they're almost inseparable. And the cave is described as looking like a church with like bell and pews. It's connected to a search for a missing couple. Jamie remembers the building before it sank into the ground as well. I'll just go ahead and say the acting here, Franco and Brie are just excellent, making their characters' relationship feel authentic, especially since they're married in real life. And in this one, it looks like they're having major issues. Damon Harriman is good as the new friend whose untrustworthiness emerges as things goes on. And the cast is just strong. I think we also have some good cinematography and framing, effectively capture the contrast between Millie's love for the country house and Tim's feeling of imprisonment. Great combination of practical and CGI effects, which they definitely get cringe-inducing, so there's good there. And then excellent sound design and a fitting soundtrack, in my opinion. So Together is going to be my next bump up in rating here, as I gave this one a 9 out of 10. And since we're in the top 5, I don't necessarily always like to do this, but because I just covered this one as a mini review early on this episode, number 2 I have, my runner-up, is Keeper. That was a featured review in episode 317, and now a mini review here on this episode, so I'm going to just leave it brief and just kind of direct you to earlier in this episode so I don't get redundant and repeat things, but Keeper, I gave a 9 out of 10 to as well. Now, if you've been following my reviews or my ratings throughout the year, this shouldn't come as a shock here because this is the first time I've given a 10 out of 10 to anything, so spoilers there, but Sinners. Feature review in episode 290, mini review in episode 319. I know this is kind of falling into that range, but because this is number 1, I'm going to go ahead and run through things. Synopsis: twin brothers trying to leave their troubled lives behind return to their hometown to start again, only to discover that a great evil is waiting to welcome them back. So as twin brothers, both being portrayed by Michael B. Jordan, are Smoke and Stack. So this is a genre blend, starting as a period drama set in the 30s South, and then turning into a creature feature horror film. So this is also like post-slavery during the Jim Crow era. We have themes of deep-seated racism, oppression, colonialism, religion, with biblical names like Elias, Elijah, and Jedediah. And then we also have like community, generational trauma, and the transcendent power of music. Smoke and Stack. They were former World War I veterans who worked with the likes of Al Capone, returned to open a nightclub. Then we have Sammy Preacher Boy Moore, portrayed by Miles Canton, the son of a preacher who is going to the Twins' juke joint to play music. Then we have Mary, portrayed by Haley Steinfeld, an old acquaintance of the Twins. Remick, Jack O'Connell, a villain who is given sanctuary by Ku Klux Klan members and take advantage of that. So originally saw it's the Gateway Film Center. And then also got it during Christmas on 4K. So this is a captivating cinematography of one musical sequence in particular, featuring diverse global dancers like Native African, futuristic DJ, rock guitarist, twerking women, and Asian dancers. And then we also have creature effects that were good. The use of music was great for capturing the vibe and building the atmosphere. Jordan's dual performances as the twins is possibly his best. Canton, who has an amazing singing voice, and then Steinfeld's adult role were some of the things that were very good. And I only mean adult role there because I remember seeing her in things like Pitch Perfect. So O'Connell is a charismatic villain, and the supporting cast offer a lot of depth. So for me, I think this is powerful. Highly original genre film, even though some people are going to question me on that one. Yes, this does feel a lot like From Dusk Till Dawn, where we have literally this idea of one thing switching over to another. I'm going to leave the comparisons there, but I think it skillfully blends a compelling period drama with a sinister creature feature and serves as an unforgettable cinematic experience. In my opinion, if you don't, that's fine. It is what it is. So for me, like I said, Sinners, 10 out of 10. So what are your thoughts on this list? Are there anything that you think I have too high? Is there anything that you think I have too low? If you wait and listen to the outro, there's ways you can get a hold of me, because I would definitely be interested to hear anything you have to say. So let me go ahead then and get you over to one last break before I close out the show.
Hey, I'm Jill, the host of the Murder Shelf Book Club podcast. Every other week, I feature a true crime book by one of my favorite authors, telling you the story with respect for the victims and loved ones. But I don't stop there. A psychology educator who's also studied serial killers, I analyze the cases and I endeavor to explain the whys. Why do people do this? Told in trilogies, Part 3 is dubbed Second Cast, where I cast a wider net going into some surprising, bone-chilling directions. Cold cases, homicides, missing persons, serial killers, and stories from history. These both fascinate and appall us. This is a true crime book club, so read with me or let me read for you. Join the Murder Shelf Book Club podcast and see what I'm pulling off the murder shelf next.
And welcome back. So if you'd like to send me any sort of feedback, anything you want read on the show, or any screener requests, anything like that, you can send those to journeywithacinephile@gmail.com. If you'd like to read any of my written reviews or see any of the old past podcast episodes, all of that is being stored over at Journey with a Cinephile. That is my blog, and that's going to be horrorreview.webnode.com. If you'd like to follow me and become friends on Facebook, it's going to be David Garrett Jr. is my name over on there. There's going to be a link in the show notes. And then if you'd like to follow me on Twitter, it's going to be Buckeye from Mish. And then if you'd like to follow my Letterboxd page, where I have all of my reviews, whether that is going to be horror or non-horror, that's going to be David OSU is my name on that. Instagram and Threads, I'm David OSU87. Over on my personal Instagram page, you might see some of my family stuff every now and then whenever I remember to post something. My wife is much better at it than I am. But then if you'd like to follow the Journey with a Cinephile Instagram, that's going to be Journey with a Cinephile, all one word. And then also direct you, if you'd like, to the Discord channel. That's going to be the Nightclub Discord, but I have a page over there. And there's also some other great pages of other shows and them kind of messing around and everything like that. Do highly recommend if you want to go ahead and check that out. And then the last thing I'll actually say here, if you would like to listen to the show a day early, this is always going to be streaming over there on the Pod Nation TV app. So I will have, once again, a link in the show notes for that if that is something that you're interested in. So yeah, there's some great stuff here. There's some great shows on some of these other networks and stuff. I highly recommend checking them out. And for my next episode is going to be starting to actually do my New Year, New Movie stuff here. So the movie that was selected by the randomizer is going to be The Initiation. I believe it's from 1984. And I'm going to go to the Gateway Film Center to check out We Bury the Dead. So I'll figure out what I'll do here for a double feature later, but those will be the two feature reviews. Then my rewatch here is going to be, for Scouring Through the Six, is going to be The Beast with Five Fingers. I believe this is from 1946. And then I'll also have some mini reviews. I'm not really sure what will be selected yet. I haven't got any screeners like that or anything, but it'll end up, I'll figure something out from there. But I think that's all I need to hear say for this outro, except that wraps up this episode of Journey with a Cinephile, a horror movie podcast. Thank you for joining me on this exploration of horror cinema. If you enjoyed the show, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and follow along for more deep dives into the macabre. Until next time, keep watching horror, and remember, fear is just a frame away.
It had been a wonderful evening, and what I needed now to give it the perfect ending